Alright, my ping is out, so I guess we can just do like a little bit of banner while we wait for everyone to show up.
So, thoughts on Furtive Chase?
Yeah, about that perk. I think it's the greatest perk of all times.
It is! I've been saying
Thoughts
this.
on Monstrous Shrine?
Oh,
That's OP. We don't need to talk about that perk.
yeah, that's meta
Yeah,
right
That one's
there.
overpowered. Straight overpowered.
Stronger than Rune Undying.
Absolutely. 100%. Like, people dying faster? No, not too much. It's too much. It needs to nerf.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should only be 1%.
Like legit, how'd this make it to live servers, bro? For so many years.
I don't get it, man. Yeah, I don't get it. And Zanchin Tactics, dude, like, I can't believe this. The devs, I don't know what they're doing.
Alright, so once we hit like the 2-minute mark, I'll just go ahead and go over the intro. Or you know what? I'll just do it now. Let's get it out of the way. So welcome on in, everybody. Tonight will be the first podcast for the Auris podcast. So tonight it is November 14th, and it is 8 p.m. So I'll just introduce myself a little bit. So I'm Vampire_Toothy. I'm primarily Killer Main, and I've been playing since 2017. And for the most part, I've always had a lot of fun with DBD, and I've always wanted to see this game go in a better direction. And recently, the reason why I've decided to put this podcast together is because I feel like the game isn't necessarily going the best direction possible, but rather than do a sit and complain about it, what I've done is I've grabbed a bunch of knowledgeable players, which tonight we have 2 killer players, 2 mixed players, and 2 survivor players. And we're going to be talking about the direction that the game is going in, and how we can steer in a better direction. So we'll be covering topics such as recent killers, recent maps, recent perks, the direction the community is going in, and of course the PTB content as well. So, with that being said, would everybody like to introduce themselves in order? So let's start off with you, Ceptz. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I know. Okay. Hi, I'm the only Ghostface main in existence. And, yeah, I play Ghostface a lot. Thanks, that's all I need to know.
Alright, awesome. And, Ryder said hi, Zim.
Nice.
Which, speaking of Zim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone. Name's Zim or Zimnex. I'm one of the 3 Legion players. You know, the smallest, but you know, obviously the best, of course.
Ah, of course, the best Legion player.
Of course.
And Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am Sistakaren. I play mostly Survivor, but I also have like almost 10k chainsaw hits in Billy. I'm super altruistic, and so I have like also my weird like fact is that I have my like top 5 in protection hits or something. And then yeah, I've been playing since 2016. I have 4k hours in this game. And so I have a lot of experience. But I actually feel like this game is on the upswing from after Deathslinger and Bbekahh came out. So, well, I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Awesome. And Bbekahh, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, so I'm Bbekahh, if you couldn't get that. I am a mixed player. I main Survivor for like 1,000 or 2 hours, and then I decided to, get a taste of the other side, and I've been playing Killer very frequently. And I mean Huntress and Pig, and those are my girls. So I guess that's it, really.
Now I've thought of it, I sure probably covered the killers that I play a lot. Whoops. Alright, so we'll go over on to Siptonic. Would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, sure. What's going on? My name's Siptonic. I got about 4,500 hours in DBD. 98% of it or so is in Survivor, so I don't play much killer. But I promise I'm not entitled.
Awesome. And HamdaN, how about you?
I'm HamdaN. I have just under 5,000 hours in the game. I started early or late 2017. And I do play competitively for Team Sweater Force. And I am happy to be here.
Awesome. So without further ado, let's get started up on our topics for tonight. So, the first thing I would like to go over is the perks in this game. So, the perks that both survivors and killers have oftentimes are big game changers. They can change the way that a match gets played out, and they can change play styles. Basically, perks have the power to make a match feel really unique and allow everybody to have a fun time. However, for the longest time, I think we can all agree that we've been seeing a lot of the same perks, and it doesn't really change up a whole lot. Or if something does change, it's because something significantly stronger got released, or, something that really got everyone's attention. And of course, on top of new perks, we've also seen perk changes. For instance, in this recent patch, we saw an update that changed perks such as Mindbreaker, Thanatophobia, Trails of Torment, which is probably my favorite of the few that got changed. We also saw like mechanical changes to certain perks such as Surge, and you get the whole deal. So one of the big things that I want to talk about though is when it comes to these perks, obviously there are a few favorites that a lot of people will come to use time and time again. And of course, I do believe that one of the biggest examples of a perk that recently became meta was Undying, because people have been pairing it up with Ruin. And so what I wanted to do is go over what we all think about the current perks and what do we think about the meta right now.
Boy, starting off with a banger.
That's right.
Yeah, like my opinion, like as a heavy survivor man, I knew even as a survivor that totems weren't in exactly the best spot. I knew the RNG spawns were sometimes very rough, and it was almost worthless to run some of these hex perks because they were just gonna go in the first 10 seconds. But at the same time, I don't know if the way Undying works was the way to take it. I think on killers who are heavily oppressive in the 1v1, having multiple ruins like that, I think might be a bit too much. Like if I were to change Undying in any way, I would have it only as one replacement, and that would be Undying. Like for example, Undying itself wouldn't be a totem; it would just replace the one totem, like Ruin.
One idea that I heard that I actually really liked when it came to Undying is that basically imagine like this. Imagine that it replaced one individual hex totem once per trial. So imagine you were running only Ruin, right? So it would only respawn Ruin once. But say that you were running Retribution and Ruin, it would respawn both of those hex totems once. So essentially, you keep the power that Undying was supposed to have, and in return, it encourages you to run multiple hexes if you want to keep the power of that build. So that way, once you do get rid of it, you have a very powerful build, but you keep the risk of once it's gone, you have nothing else to fall back to. And I heard that idea, and ever since that, I've been in love with that idea. Because
Honestly, it's not too bad.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's a good way to do it. But they really should just, especially when they're reworking the maps right now with like the whatever they called it, their little thing they're doing with their reworking all the maps. They should really be revisiting where totems are, because I've noticed, especially on Macmillan, totems are still like bad. It's like they were before, which
I
they
don't
should have definitely been fixed up a bit.
maybe, but I don't know. I just feel like over the years they've gotten like very, very, very. They're so much improved than they used to be. I remember back in my day, but like early on, right? Like you could spawn and in like the circling animation, you will see a totem. Like you see one, like, oh, okay, there's a totem. Let's go get it right away.
Yeah.
And there still are spawns like Asylum, for example, like the original Asylum map where they can spawn in like the middle of that field and you literally see it halfway across the map, right? Like that I get. But so many of these totem spawns right now are like crazy or like pretty good. Like I feel like the totems are honestly in a decent place. Like I can't think of many that are really ridiculous like they used to be.
To be honest, like I think that with totem changes, I think that they should just change like some of the locations and keep some so that every map has like I wouldn't say predetermined. I guess so, but they can change them where it is. Because some maps your totems could explode in like 1 second, and you guys your perk. Or some maps you'll literally never find it the entire game. I don't think a totem should be. I mean, like obviously it's gonna be RNG which totem it is, like of course, because hex, but there shouldn't be some totems where like, oh, I got it for all game, mid game, or it blew up in the first 2 seconds.
The way that I look at it is that I think Tofu actually had a video on it recently that I think explains it really well, where it's like, so I don't think you brought up this part, but when it comes to totems, you're never really going to have a perfect spawn, because no matter what, people will always find out all the spawns, and eventually, there's going to come a time where people will memorize that. However, as Karen said before, the totem spawns have improved. Like, obviously, you do have the colon farm maps where, like, there's nothing but corn, so, of course, you're going to see those very easily, or, like, on, what was it, Disturbed Ward, the oldest of the two Asylum maps.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'll have it out in the open, because those are just very open maps in general, right?
Yeah, they're very barren. There's not much to hide, if there is anything to hide it.
Exactly. So, you have the idea that there's this extremely powerful effect that is locked behind the idea of, yeah, this is very powerful, but once it's destroyed, you no longer have it. You lose your perk slot. And totems were balanced around that idea, right? And so, because you have Undying, it kind of like breaks that idea up a little bit where now you have those very powerful effects, but yet now you also can't get rid of those effects either until the game's essentially over.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as like Ruin Undying
Yeah.
goes, in discussion of like meta perks, I actually, even though I might get some flack for this because I'm a Survivor forehead, but I don't even really mind Ruin Undying the way it is now. But I primarily, I Swift a lot, so it's not really that big of a deal. But I see where the issue lies, and it lies within any strong perks, is against solo queue survivors. If you know what you're doing as a killer, I mean, you're just farming free points at that point. It's really tough to balance the game around stuff like that, I feel.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
In regards to like, I guess the overall discussion of like meta perks, going back to actually something I believe Tofu had brought up a while ago is he wouldn't mind seeing the game and a lot of the perks get updated quite frequently. Strong perks nerfed, weak perks buffed, changed, etc. Something that the community doesn't even need to test on the PTB. You can always revert the changes, but obviously I think the biggest hindrance there is, their programming, their code, and their overall engine. So
Just to like keep the game's meta shifting and keep things fresh like every week.
right.
I know Fortnite. I know especially with one game that did that a lot. Like every week they'd update something, change something, switch out something, and it did keep the game fresh for a very long time.
Yeah, one of the biggest
obviously,
complaints-
but it also worked. It kept the game interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like one of the biggest complaints I have just in terms of perks is the meta has been the same forever. Like I think Undying has been the only meta change for however long.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't seen like on watching a lot of killer streams, because Killer watched killer streams, shocking, but like there really hasn't been too much variety. Like killers have like the same set, and I'm also very curious on perk changes if like the same people like change the perks, right? Because I know Thanat was changed where they removed the like the healing debuff, but they put it on totems, right? So imagine you're a four team, right? All of you are injured. You like have sloppy, so then just fix the Thanat problem, but then you have a debuff on totems with Ruin Undying, right? Like, I don't know. That sounds really unfun, like, even as a killer.
Yeah, that's actually one thing
Yeah.
I want to bring up, which is perk
Yeah.
synergies, right? Because the way that I see it is that the devs wanted to they wanted to have a lot of perk synergy. They've been designing perks to actually have more synergy with each other, and they've also been trying to make it so certain perks don't have synergy. So for instance, anything that has the Oblivious effect will not synergize with Infectious because Oblivious means that you're no longer technically in the killer's terror radius. So like they've been trying to make these limitations of what will synergize and what won't, and I feel like one of the big things that I've noticed that made me question like the direction of the game a lot is that here they have two perks that are paired up together that the community doesn't really like going up against, where it's like you have Ruin Undying. Nobody likes that because they have to break a bunch of totems, which isn't always possible in solo queue, and then what happened here is that they made Thanatophobia apply to totems, and then this is also at a time where Thrill the Hunt still exists. That also slows down totems, and I actually did the math on it where if you have Thanatophobia at its highest level of strength, and you have Thrill the Hunt at all 5 tokens, it actually brings your totem cleansing speed down to 56%, or was it 54? It was one of those two numbers, and it brings up the time to cleanse totems down to well, actually up to 25 seconds from, I think, the usual 12 seconds.
And legitimately, depending on what killer you could play, that's just downright oppressive.
Of course. And the thing here is that, like, they knew that these perks were going to be a problem, but then they changed the Thanatophobia to be in a way where it basically makes totems take longer to cleanse. And not only that, but they also made Surge apply to regressing generators as opposed to allowing to, let's say, activate on powered downs as an example.
Yeah, this is what I was saying earlier. I legit wonder, like, the people that like rework perks. I wonder if they talk to each other or they're the same person, or like where's the because I think that like running like Ruin Undying with the Nat and Surge, like I wonder if they thought the people would do that. Like they must have, right?
The topic of you talking about like if they talk about like reworking different perks, I feel like they don't because I feel like We're Gonna Live Forever is a perfect example of the fact that they didn't know themselves that we already got stacks from flashlight saving, palette saving. And they thought they were like buffing Wiglif, but in reality, the only thing that they did was just add the heal speed. And one thing too we found out is like you also get stacks from head-on saving too, which I didn't know was a thing, but they didn't include that in the new rework either. Like I don't think they actually know what their perks do.
Yeah.
I think they do sometimes, but like I do think their mistakes happen, right? Like with Wiglif, for example, like you could go early in the flashlight save and still get a stack. It's pretty dope.
Oh my! And like whenever they're hooking, like have you
Yep.
seen that bug with
All you
that?
have,
Yeah.
all you have to basically all you need to do is blind when the killer is carrying a survivor. Like you don't have to actually be safe for to get stacked.
Yeah.
You just have
I
to
know
get the blind
behavior.
off, like
Yeah.
while the killer's carrying a survivor.
I know behavior isn't like exactly a small company, and they were 2016, right, Karen, like back in the day. But legit, I wonder if they have a team that talks about perks, and if so, how did some of the changes like slip by? Like, you know what I mean?
I think they
Changes.
definitely do, because I know, like, for example, like some of the cooldowns of some of the perks, like they definitely do on purpose to kind of prevent like quote
Yeah,
unquote
yeah. I'm not
abusing
saying
them. Like
there's
for example, like any means necessary. I know for a fact the cooldown was really long on that because they were concerned that people be trolling the whole game
yeah, and then
with
like
that
they
perk,
changed.
and then they realized that okay, over time maybe we kind of like overdid it. So there's that, right? So I know they definitely do. Like I think that so even if the decisions like might be like misguided from people who have experience like us, like I know they know they had the conversations.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
can agree with that.
I
Because
think
like
what you're trying to say is. Oh, sorry, go on.
no, I was just gonna say. No, I totally agree that because like I know that they think about things like on different perks. Just some changes slip by. Like with Nemesis, when Nemesis first came out, and especially a problem. I think it was the sole reason they got changed. But with Legion, you could just stab someone with your power and then Nemesis them, and they would bleed out because Deep Wound didn't work, or like the timer still went down when you were running, right? So they assumed
Oh
you're gonna be in
yes,
the killer
oh
heartbeat.
yeah, I
You remember
remember.
that?
Yeah, for
Yeah, yeah,
Freddy
yeah, yeah.
too. Like when
Yeah,
you
yeah.
get chased
Freddy
by
and
Freddy when
Legion
you're
legit are the
asleep,
reason
that was some
yeah, yeah.
really fun times in this game.
So
Yep.
I wonder like how that like stuff like that, like you think they'd think about that, like, oh, maybe putting Oblivious on a perk where you stun a killer with Legion and Freddy in the game, maybe like just I know things get through and I know they have a team, but just like I wish they'd check it a tiny bit better. Or just get
I,
community feedback, you know what I mean?
yeah, but I think sometimes though, like I think like I do think that the people who do test it aren't hyper nerds like we are, at the same time too.
Yeah,
Like
they're not like theory, we make the game, we're not like theory crafting, we don't have like thousands of hours to do, we gotta make it.
yeah, exactly. I think sometimes, right? It's like they problem like when you're too close to the situation. Sometimes like you need to take like a bunch of steps back, but sometimes like you're too into it. And that's kind of what I would envision sometimes happens with
Yeah,
it, but I don't know. But I think as human beings, but just thinking about how human beings work.
Now, one thing I do think we should probably consider is I think Coconut actually brought up something in the chat here where it's like, do you think that they might not be considering all possibilities because there's a lot in this game and like let's just put it this way, right? This game has been around for like 4 years now, and there's been a lot that's been added onto it. For instance, this is no longer the game that just has Trapper, Hillbilly, and Wraith. Although I would love for Hillbilly to be a 1/3 chance of me getting him every single game. I would love that. But, it's no longer that kind of a game, right? It no longer has a few perks in the pool, in the the pool that you can grab from. It no longer has a select few maps. It's a much larger game, and I feel like, do you think that perhaps the devs weren't ready to have a game as large as this? So like, they're not really thinking about every single possibility. Like, where do we think they're at
Honestly,
with that?
I don't think Dead by Daylight and behavior in general was ready for how big of Dead by Daylight was actually going to become. Like, obviously, when you make a game, you assume it's going to succeed, but I don't think behavior and their team was properly prepared for how actually huge Dead by Daylight is. Think of like the Fog Whisper program and just like some of the big streamers and how many viewers they pull and just how many like people are influenced by them. It's just like I don't think the behavior has an entire team to just be like we need a team for perks, art, like all the they're just some. I'm sure they overlap, like some person that comes up with a killer idea also like codes the game or like something like that.
I
Y-
mean, I
Yeah.
was told that they only intended to sell about 10,000 copies when they were designing the game, hence why they used, I believe, blueprints for their engine.
Yeah,
So
blueprints.
they definitely didn't foresee their game blowing up as much
No,
as it did.
not only that, right? Like, is this grown exponentially? Like, I just remember, like, when I was first starting out playing, right? Like, you see, like, 10K people playing at a time would be be pretty high, And like, I'm just looking now, it's like, it's not an event week or anything like that. You have like 33K people playing,
Also,
like, that's
Karen,
crazy.
remember in 2016 when you're on like the Toronto, right? Like you knew everyone, right? You
Hell
just-
yeah,
yeah, you literally
exactly.
you knew everyone, and now you're like, oh, it's like XX, like like Nia Slayer on console. Like there was such a big community back in the day because of how small the game was. Because I just known that like obviously Ken, like everyone back then, right? Or your
Well, I
homies.
could snipe people so easily back then, like so
Right?
easily. I could
And now
snipe
I'm
people as
like, oh
killer.
my god, I saw
And
my
now, are
friend
you
once in
kidding me?
10,000 games. Yeah, right? You know what I mean?
Exactly. It's exceedingly rare, and like it's exceedingly rare to play somebody like nowadays. And then you're like crying when you do. You're like, oh my god, this is so awesome.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, like there's a
Yeah,
lot of
like,
people.
I've had so many situations where like I'm trying to like snipe a friend or something like that just for fun, and they go through like 10 matches, and I'm just still trying to get in their lobby. I haven't played a game in like an hour, still trying to get in their lobby.
Yeah.
It's painful.
I
Like,
actually,
for
oh, you can go.
Okay. So like for me, like there's a few people that I would consistently see before, like crossplay for instance, and then like what ended up happening actually is like one group that I would consistently see is, which I think HamdaN is familiar with this group. Actually, by I think I mean he is definitely familiar with this group. Instant Dodge, and
Oh,
you
the
know,
ID boys, yep.
yeah, and I would love seeing them in my games because it was actually like good survivors, right? So it was like a change in like how I had to play, and then after crossplay hit, it was like, wait, where did they go? They're
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, though, because cosplay, the player pool for Survivor just became so big.
Mm-hmm.
So like, because I know on console there's much more survivors than killers just due to frame rate. So to find people on Survivor anymore is very hard. It's just a coin flip nowadays.
Also,
Not
like
only
they changed
that,
the servers too. The servers are like sort of like pretty sure it's like impossible to get someone in New York if you're on West Coast.
not
Yeah,
only
Oh
no,
that,
yeah.
Yeah,
Actually,
no, Weston
completely
needs
forgot
way
about
too
that.
not only that, but there's also this thing where like the console player base is significantly larger than the PC player base. For instance, the devs had said that for every PC player, so like the PC player is the equivalent to like the amount of console players per console. So like considering the fact there's multiple consoles, and then you also have this thing where there's new consoles they're putting on as well that are quickly catching up, like the Switch. There's significantly more console players than there are PC players.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me because consoles are more accessible, I think, than a really good computer for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to spend maybe like what $400, $500 on a console, but to buy like a $3,000 PC is not exactly easy for a lot of people. So
Yeah,
it makes sense to me.
and also the fact that both Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and like all those are all combined into like one category of console. So
Yep.
there's gonna be way more of them. Even they can't even tell them apart. There's so many more of them.
Exactly. Although I do notice that we kind of got a little bit sidetracked from the perks. Do you want to keep on talking about this, or should we go back to the
Well,
perks?
I actually had something in regards to like when we were talking about Wiglif and maybe like the devs' awareness or potential lack thereof in regards to some things. I right away everyone kind of wanted to give behavior flack. I think that because that's the popular thing to do in regards to they didn't know flashlights or pallet saves didn't give stacks. Honestly, I think that's more just still a marketing thing, possibly the way that they relayed the change to the perk. Because if people read the perk, maybe they don't think that it gives stacks. Now, veteran players, obviously, we know, but it was just kind of a way, I think, to maybe spin the fact that hey, we're changing this perk and now gives you stacks. It's more clearly labeled, etc. I don't know if there was ever really any confirmation that they were unaware that it actually gave stacks. I would be surprised if key members of the development group didn't know that. So one thing I guess just to keep in mind with some of these changes is advertising is, I think a big part of why they do what they do.
Yeah, evidently,
Absolutely.
evidently from like from when I was watching McLean, he had brought up something along the lines that it wasn't previously in the description. They wanted to update to clarify, hey, this will actually work with these events, and there was like some kind of miscommunication there, from what I
Yeah, sure.
understand.
And that makes sense. I think for the most part, the devs are pretty well aware of how their game works and functions, but I do think it is sometimes you brought up the Nemesis and like the men timer with Legion and Freddy back then. I think that is one thing that is kind of like that second or third domino down that they don't really connect, necessarily. And I think that's just kind of common.
Right.
course.
And I think they've come like a long way too, because like they're like one big example from early days was like them not knowing that spine chill and resilience worked on all actions, right? Like so they didn't know it worked on like vault speeds and chest searching and things like that. That was something they kind of realized later. Then they updated the description, blah blah. But that's something that they learn, and then they, you learn from the player base. So I think they've come a long way from those days, honestly.
Of course. Now, there are also a couple of perks that we haven't really looked at that were also changed. So, for instance, like, we have some mechanical changes, such as the ones that were made to Surge. We have some other perks that got changed, like Thanatophobia, Mindbreaker, and I feel like, Ruin Undying is like the big elephant in the room. But honestly, how do we feel about the other perks that got changed, also including Trails of Torment, since that's a personal favorite of mine?
I think the Trails of Torment one is actually really good because that's the one where you kick the gen and you become undetectable, right?
Yep, Pyramid Head.
Yeah, so honestly, I think that change was really good because now it has way more synergy with other things like Dragon's Grip and stuff. So they have to touch that gen and then they're exposed. So I think it's good they made more synergy for it. But I don't know, do you consider Thanatophobia a buff or a nerf? I've had a lot of 50-50s
As a
on this one.
Legion player, it's definitely a nerf, but I'm gonna assume not everyone plays Legion, so I'm gonna think it's good overall for the health of the game.
I personally think it was a buff just because like there's so like if like it depends. Like I guess if you're only running Thanato, I guess it could be seen as a bit of a nerf, but if you have like sloppy Thanato, then it's a major buff to it.
For me, I would say that it's a very minuscule buff, as in, yes, it is a stronger perk now, but perhaps by the amount of which it's stronger by is something that you could debate. But for me, I actually did numbers on this before, where like old Thanatophobia would do, I think, like 15.6 seconds. That's how much it would add to a generator, whereas the new Thanatophobia adds 20 when you have all 4 people injured. And so like you might not see like the increase with like one individual person be injured, but if you have like all 4 injured because let's say you're playing like Legion or Plague, maybe even Oni like I do, and you get a lot of people injured, you keep them injured, or maybe you're playing a killer that people don't really want to heal against, like, I know that some of the better players don't really heal against Billy. 20 seconds is quite a lot to go from 80 seconds up to 100 on a generator, especially if they don't heal. So I feel like it is slightly better as a perk, but now, whether or not it's worth running on its own is something that you could debate. Like, for me, I like to run it on Blight because Blight can injure people really fast, and it works out with the rest of the perks I have on him, like Mindbreaker, Barbecue, and I honestly forgot my last perk.
I think that any killer that has movement speed, it's a good buff, and any killer that doesn't, it's kind of a nerf.
Exactly, like it's a nerf to slower killers, but it's a buff to faster killers.
Am I the only one who thinks it's kind of weird, the change they went with it? I mean, sometimes I think, okay, they already have decent gen perks and gen slow, but like the very definition of Thanatophobia, isn't it the fear of death? And you get it by injuring survivors. Wouldn't it make more sense just to keep it as a healing reduction perk as opposed to a gen slow?
Yeah, like you're gonna bleed out, like I don't want to die, right? Like
yeah, but then like then you have sloppy, and so it feels like I mean, I get like the strict literal, like what you mean literally, right? Like,
right.
So, yeah, so I get that. Like, I get that. I get what you mean.
It just feels a little odd, I guess.
I think the reason why they wanted to avoid that is because there's already a lot of things that slow down healing, which anybody could just scream, well, there's a lot of things that affect generators, though.
Yeah, I'd say more so.
Yes. Yes. Good God, yes.
I'd say there's more gen-related perks than there are healing effect perks.
By far.
And I mean, you can't even really count Choleraphobia, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would want to see more interesting, like, healing-related perks, like maybe instead of, slowing down your healing, you just get, like, it's kind of like Hunter's Lullaby, or something like that. Just, like, doesn't have to like slow down your healing just when you're interacting with it.
It actually seems to be something where a lot of the killer perks revolve around like slowing down generators or doing something related to generators like information or stealth or some kind of an effect, whereas survivors have a lot more perks that are related to healing. So it seems like killers don't have a whole lot of anti-healing perks, whereas survivors don't really have a whole lot of gen perks. Instead, they have a lot of healing perks. So it seems to be
I also think the whole foundation it's built off of is that if they're kind of meant to counter each other, right? So if both sides bring like obviously a healing build, and someone brings like Thanat, Chlorophobia, like distressing, meant to counter their healing build, but like I feel like it can be pressing for both sides if someone has a full heal build and no one has no slowdowns, or someone has all slowdowns and someone has no healing. So it's a little bit hard to balance when it's based on like assuming that both side has something to counter it.
Of course.
Yeah. It's like when they, I know they make perks to counter other perks, right? Like Strider will counter Iron Will, this will counter this. Like you can argue that like Inner Strength and we'll make it will counter Sloppy, like stuff like that, right? But we don't know what other people run, so we can't like, I can't always say like, oh, I'm gonna run this for this, because it's just not really a reality.
Yeah, it's kind
So
of
I guess,
interesting to base perk design on like under the assumption that like this person's gonna run this, so this counters this, but if they don't run this, then what, you know?
Now, do you guys
Yeah.
think that the idea that certain perks can totally counteract each other might hurt perk diversity?
No.
what do you mean?
I would think so. Yeah, because like if they bring in perks that directly counter like exhaustion perks and stuff, then that's all you're gonna see on killer. Because most killers hate exhaustion perks, and then like the
And
other way
then-
around, if a perk gets introduced that I don't know, throws ruin out the window or pop out the window or something, that's all you're gonna see on survivor.
Or what if they make like survivor perks that are cooldowns, right? So then like, you know, they throw exhaustion out the window. So what's the point of that? So it's like it's very interesting. I actually think that like clowns, bottles, and huntresses like add-ons are just kind of disgusting.
Oh, the
The
90-second exhaustion add-on?
Yeah, I don't know
That's
how those haven't
why,
been reworked
man.
immediately. Like straight up, those are so boring.
Yeah,
I
it makes-
don't know. I kind of like perks that sort of pseudo counter or hard counter other perks. I don't really mind it. As far as like exhaustion stuff goes, I mean, half the time when I'm playing Survivor, I don't even run exhaustion perks. So if you want to waste something on exhaustion, I mean, it's a waste for me. I don't really care. I kind of like that uniqueness to the game because you never really know what each side is going to be using. And yeah, something you're using might get completely countered, or you know, if somebody complains about you using X perk or X add-on, just say, well, you should have ran this.
I think
It's
when it comes to
interesting.
like exhaustion add-ons and how like they could possibly change them, I think Mindbreaker was a really good way to do that, because like especially with the Huntress Hatchet, if you use the exhaustion add-on, then they're not gonna like stop running to get their exhaustion back. So it could just be like a 5-second exhaustion on it, so that they stop for 5 seconds to get it back. Because if you're chasing them, they're not gonna stop running for that long.
No,
So
honestly,
it's still gonna have a
Ceptz,
very strong effect.
I 100% agree, because if I lose a survivor for 5 seconds, I deserve to get dead-hearted on or something.
Yeah.
Alright, so are we happy where we're at right now with the perks?
I would say I'm generally okay with a lot of perks.
Yeah.
Currently, yeah, but the one thing I'd like them to do is maybe tweak some things here and there, in terms of like power for solo queue, because I think there are some perks in the game that, in Swift are really not that bad at all, but in solo are a nightmare.
I think that I actually agree. I think that like Kindred and stuff should just be like a base for everything.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
think that'd
I
be
actually had an
Like-
idea when it comes
Like
to
I legit have no, like I don't think I'll like I don't know, maybe I don't know like a lot of killers, but I don't think I've heard a killer that be like Kindred is so broken, it'd just be too broken. It's like solo queue survive. Because if you're in a Swift, you know, right? Like you have a 4-man on Discord, you're just
You already
know
have that information anyways.
exactly. Like
it
who is
exists,
it?
there's
Who is
someone-
it hurting? Legit, who is it hurting?
if it exists, someone's complaining about it. Like
Yeah, because like I'm sure like like even killer mains like play survivor. You've had a situation where you're on a hook, right? And someone's getting chased and 2 survivors are on a generator, but they don't know that, and they're not doing anything wrong by working on the generator. They're trying to like but you die on like the first hook or go into
The-
struggle,
The
and it's
other
not.
survivor assumes the other one is going.
Yeah, exactly, and it's no one's fault there. That is legit no one's fault. But if Kindred was built into the game, it would only benefit solo queue like survivors and no one else, which I actually love.
the other thing I would like to see though is something similar to the Kindred buff being made to other Ori perks for survivors. So for instance, one idea I had was for Detective's Hunch, which honestly, it's a really basic suggestion, so I feel like someone's probably made the idea before. But one idea that I thought of, for instance, was whenever a generator gets completed, by any means, it works how it does right now, where you see the auras of like totems, chest, other generators, pretty much anything that it would normally reveal. But whenever you complete a generator, everybody on your team sees that, as an example.
Yeah, that'd be a good change. I would be
Oh, so kind of
Yeah.
like how it
really
works,
good
like if
idea.
somebody has like a rainbow map or something. Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Exactly.
I'd be okay with that.
And then another idea would be for like other Ori perks, such as well, I don't know. I feel like Buckle Up is another perk that I would love to see in the base kit. Whereas like think of it this way, right? So in a Survivor Friends, you're gonna know how recovered somebody is, right? Like you can just say, "Oh, I'm fully recovered," but you don't have the info as a solo player. Whereas with Buckle Up, the idea of just knowing how recovered someone is huge because
Yeah, I feel like honestly, I feel like some perks should just be built into the game and not perks. You know what I mean? Like, if you're playing
totally agree.
solo queue, like if you're playing solo queue Survivor, I shouldn't have to run 4 perks just to not die by the not die to my team rather than the kill. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You know
well,
what? I'm down for that, right? Because like, so there, like, there's like a couple perks I could think of that would kind of fall in that category, like Dark Sense, maybe. You know, not Dark Sense. I'm sorry. Deja Vu. Honestly,
Yeah,
like Deja Vu,
like
which
little
is
niche perks.
stronger than like that Felix perk that came out, by the way. But like, Deja
Yeah.
Vu would be like a good example of a perk that would be bad. Like when you think about DVD Mobile, I don't know if you guys have played DVD Mobile, but it actually tells you where the generators are. Like, you know, like when you're kind of getting close.
Yeah,
to it,
like straight up.
Is it actually?
Or does it?
Yeah,
I don't even
it
know
will
that.
That's
visually
nice.
indicate where the generator is. It's actually really nice.
Like
So nice.
whether to be honest, whether or not you have like 5 KRs in the game or you have 100, I feel like solo queue Survivor should play the same. You know, like playstyles are different, but just like base mechanics like Kindred, because like Iron Will is like, you know, that's like your decision. But Kindred, like, you know, like Deja Vu, just like, you know, maybe like, you know, stuff like that just to help solo queue survivors. I would love to see more solo people and not just like Swifts every game.
So if you were to take that to the extreme, like some of these baseline perks, because I know this has been a talk amongst a lot of individuals in different communities, the furthest one you would probably go to is what? Maybe like some version of DS. I mean, would anyone be okay with so you take the DS that's already in the game, Decisive Strike, you probably nerf it and touch it, but adding a baseline DS for solo queue that's like even a more further gimped version.
I don't think
So
I
like
would
it works
agree.
like 10 seconds. Like if you get down within 10 seconds or
Yeah,
something.
Yeah, I don't know, something like that. I know that's been a talk. Is like,
I don't
maybe a
know if I would
30-second
go.
just pure DS where you can't
Yeah,
hop in a locker or do a
I,
gen for solo queue.
I don't know if I would go for that far because like I don't know. I don't. It's hard. It's really hard to say. Actually, it really is.
the
I
way
mean,
that
it's
I
like
would look
one of
at
the
it
most
is
controversial perks for a reason. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to go back down to the point that DS, I think, was incepted just to pretty much band-aid part of game design that was kind of like, obviously, camp tunnel, you know? Like, a tool to stop you from getting tunneled or camped. And it all came down to, like, they're not going to change that core mechanic, so now you have this to band-aid.
Yeah. Also, I
Touching
think that
DS can be either, it's very dangerous on both sides.
yeah,
100%.
I
I
think-
think they have said that they actually didn't intend for DS to even be used for anti-tunneling, though. From like, I believe I've read or seen that on a stream before where they
I
said
think
that
you're
wasn't even
right
as
because
intended.
I'm
original
pretty
DS,
sure
you just picked
original
up a
DS.
survivor and you hit, and then they just hit you. That was it. It wasn't
Exactly.
tunnel.
I'm pretty sure
Regardless
you did not
if
have
you were
to be
tunneled
down
or
first.
no. Regardless if you were tunneled or you just went down, you could literally just DS a killer right there and then.
I think the way that I look
Yeah.
at it is that when it comes to what I think solo queue players need, I don't really think about like, you know, perks like DS because when you think of it this way, right? The biggest problem with solo queue is just that they don't have the same information as a Survivor Friends does,
Yeah,
for
see,
instance.
my thing with the whole like, you know, going to the extreme, making DS like a base thing is that like DS is sort of used now for counter, like, you know, like countering tunneling, but the situations I was talking about for like, you know, Kindred and like stuff like that, like Deja Vu, those are very specific things to solo queue. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
Whereas
every survivor gets hooked eventually, and everyone goes down, but not everyone's on a hook, and 2 teammates are working on a generator. You know, and like, you know, because Discord exists and stuff like that.
exactly, when it comes to like I feel like tunneling is something that is not a solo exclusive issue, right? It's an issue that will
Yeah, that's
exist whether or not
everybody.
you're exactly. It's whether or
It's
not
like
you're in
get-
Survivor Friends or
It's
in
like
a
whether
solo
you're a
group.
killer, you respect the pallet or you get hit by it. It's not like every killer gets hit by a pad eventually. You know what I mean? It's not like a tunneling killer.
On the topic of like him talking about like DS maybe being like implemented in some way into just basic for survivors and solo queue, someone in my chat, and I've heard of this before, is like, why is there games where there's just no obsession? Because we all know how killers play when there's no obsession. So why
Yep.
don't we just have obsession just be in the match no matter what if there's actually
fully-
someone
yes,
doing
I agree
it?
with that.
that's
Yeah, I
that's a
agree with
great.
that.
No, I 100% agree with that. That's a great idea. Should literally just be always be in the game.
My
Absolutely,
idea,
yes.
Especially
My
when
idea,
there's
actually.
challenges now that are kind of like want
your
you to use
obsession.
obsession perk, yeah, but maybe you don't want one in your build
Oh
as
my-
Yeah.
killer.
Totally. Like so sometimes I'll forget on Billy. Like when I'm doing these challenges on Billy, I'm like, fuck, nobody ran DS. Like I guess I'm not doing this challenge this game.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah, right.
I actually have
That's
one
I
idea.
think having a constant obsession like every round would be really good because I've noticed, especially like when I'm playing with a Swift or something, and like normally the Swifts I play, we don't bring DS. We're just that we just don't all bring DS. So when we don't bring DS, we can clearly know when the killer is like, oh, they're on DS, time to tunnel everyone in this game and like DBD speedrun, and then ones that just
Exactly.
don't.
Yeah, I think that they should definitely remove the fact because like obviously I'm not like every killer, but I feel like there's a killer sees no DS free tunnel mine now, or like there's a DS time to be careful, right? I feel like it should be one, not like one or the other type thing.
I totally agree. Even myself, right? When I play killer, I know for a fact.
Yeah,
I'll be like,
right. Don't you? Doesn't it just feel like
there's no DS in this
right?
game?
Doesn't it feel like you're just like a giant weight lifted on your shoulder? Like, but like I can
It's
play
like-
fair, right? Like I don't tunnel people, but I'm not every killer, of course, right? Like
I don't have to worry about DS this game.
yeah,
You have
exactly.
right? If you feel like, oh my god, my motors are being rushed, you're just like, oh, I feel bad, but sorry, friend.
It's
Look
like
out.
I have to. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some situation, but it shouldn't be like some killers shouldn't be like, there's no DS, free tunnels mine, like because I'm not like I try to play like pretty fairly, right? Like I won't tunnel people. Obviously, I'll go for the unhooker when I can, right? I just I actually do agree that it really should just be one, not one or the other. Straight up, that's such a good mechanic.
I like the idea of having an obsession in the game, but then again, I do kind of like the moments. Like maybe it's just me, maybe I'm a psycho, but I kind of like if I don't see sometimes the killer's offering flip. And if you have to play in a way, and like I prefer it in a Swift as opposed to solo queue, but you load in, you're like, crap, nobody brought an obsession. I kind of like the fact that okay, maybe you have to play a little bit more, a little bit smarter, play a little bit differently. One thing
Spicier.
like I am kind of afraid of is with a lot of things in DBD, and you could use that obsession thing as an example, is them crafting the games where they're all so repeatable and they're all so much the same. I
Yeah.
really would hate. I think that would kind of be the ultimate downfall for this game, is when as soon as you load
Repetitive
in,
fatigue,
like yeah. So
Yeah,
while
I
I
feel
like
that.
that idea as the obsession being in every game, I think it might do more harm than good in long term, because people might just get lazy and it's like, well, the killer's never going to tunnel. There's an obsession. It's automatic. It's like, no, maybe
Yeah.
the responsibility, the onus is on you as the survivor to
I think
add
that's
in that hidden DS power.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. But I think you could go both ways on that. Like, you could make the game very boring, or it could exhaust her. Like, maybe now there's always an obsession. You never know, right? So
Right.
maybe you're just gonna full on tunnel everyone, or just never tunnel. And so it's sort of the same thing where like you never know what you're gonna get, but it's just one thing's changed. And I get the change can be scary for that type of thing.
Yeah, totally. It kind of, and I don't know if we're ready to change the subject, so I apologize if anybody has anything else to say. But kind of on that subject though, that to follow up what Sip said, one thing I always thought about is that it seems like, for example, like your gatekeeper emblem on killer, right? Like it doesn't matter if you're running 4 slowdown perks or 0 slowdown perks, you're going to get judged the same way on it, right? There's no disincentive for you not to run all slowdown perks, right? And so if I myself am Billy, I know like it's way easier to win with 4 slowdown perks when I run those like mean builds versus like no slowdown perks, so like which is my normal build, right? And it's one of those things where if I want to win all the time, I could just slap on a bunch of perks. It doesn't matter like my skill or whatever. I could easily win if I just change my loadout, right?
Mori every game.
Right. Well, more everything you actually would get punished for technically, right? If you care about pip. But like, but for your perks, yeah, hell yeah, I would easily pip every single game if I ran 4 slowdown perks. So I guess my question would be like, and even on the survivor side, right? If I don't run exhaustion perks, for example, like Zip doesn't. But if I did, like those times where I run, like some demon and run sprint burst, or some demon and run. I mean, I don't like dead hard. I care less about coming Billy main, but I fucking hate sprint burst, the Undying Passion of 1,000 Suns. But like,
Legion main, sprint burst, Sistakaren.
oh God, God, it seems like
Sprint
some
burst just makes me
like
cry.
boosted ass Meg like walk slowly as you come up to them and just run away to some strong tile. Like, okay.
Yeah, it's just like dude, just do it, just fucking do it.
I just please. I know your ass has sprint burst. Just pull the trigger. So anyway, so basically, so my question for you guys is like, so one of my thoughts has always been like, if you're trying to be better at measuring skill in this game, like, should you punish people? Like, should your emblems be affected by a number of like say chase perks you like either like exhaustion perks you run or the amount of gem perks game slowing perks you run?
I think
I
it
would
should.
say it'd be fine, but here's the thing. Are you going to also take into account the map tile setup and what sort of resources you had to work with as a survivor? Are you going to
That's
all of a
actually
sudden are you going to give bonus points to the survivor because they're playing on Hawkins? I mean, or an indoor map or a map that's I mean, don't get me wrong. I think one of the worst maps right now in terms of layout is Wretched Shop. Dead zones
Yes.
galore. I mean, are you
Yes.
going to give
oh my
bonus
god,
points for
yes.
somebody playing on that map as survivor and negate points for killer for playing on that map?
Not only
It's
that, but sometimes people also run different builds for different groups. So, for instance, you might recognize one person and be like, "Wow, they're actually really good, so I should probably change
Well,
out my perks for that."
that's
I would think if it did come down to scaling, like scaling how easy it is to get emblems based on the map, I think they should try and like maybe figure out some killer map synergies and the ones that actually like don't work. So like if it's like actually mainly on offering. So if the like let's say you're playing Ghostface and you bring a Hawkins offering, I think your emblems should be it shouldn't be as easy to get because that's a very easy map to win on as Ghostface. But then it's like you're playing Billy and you bring like a Larry's offering, I think it should give you an easier time getting emblems because it's a way harder map to win on his Billy.
God, fuck yeah, the new Larry. I can't even get over how much worse it is with Billy. It's like so much bullshit in the hallway.
Yeah, there's
You
so
guys,
much everywhere. So
but
crowded.
I think in terms of doing that for perks though, like this is just my perception of it. Like as a survivor, if I run DS or I run Unbreakable or I run an exhaustion, I do it to counter like the potential quote unquote toxic gameplay. Like I run DS to counter tunneling. I'll run Unbreakable to counter like an infectious nurse running Omega Blink. You know what I mean? Like I do it to protect
Yeah.
myself and my own
Mhm.
fun.
Yeah.
I'm not putting it in the hands of the other person. So like I feel like either upping or downing your pips or like your points or something based off that can be a little bit risky.
You can be very
Yeah, but
scary.
true. But then I run into that same issue, right? But I don't. This does not make me better in any way. Just to preface that with that, like this is just my own personal gameplay style. But like I personally like don't. I just don't run DS, for example. You know what I mean? And I don't run a break. Well, I do definitely sometimes run Unbreakable. I love that perk. But not often because I'm a breakout hoe. But like like true, like it is definitely true that you do it to counter certain play styles, but at the same time, it definitely increases your chance of survival over somebody who doesn't.
Oh, absolutely.
Would you guys want to talk about map changes?
Yeah, before we actually
Oh,
move on to map changes though. So there's actually one last question that I know we've been on perks for a very long time here, but one last thing I would like to cover though is, do we feel like the meta is very limited due to the fact that certain perks are too good, or is there
I
certain
think
perks that are not good enough? Like, how do we feel about like what would we do in order to make the meta feel better?
Well, I think from like a survivor side, now if you're talking meta, like 4 of like the common 6 to 8 perks, I think there are a lot of people out there that do I think just run pretty much 3 or 4 of those perks all the time because and they don't necessarily need them. Some people might, but there's a lot of really good survivors out there that are veteran players that don't really need those perks to survive. But it is really like the one game sometimes where you get face camped or you get tunneled or you get chased like the entire game, or they bring in an Ebony Mori where you're like, God, that feels really horrible to lose to that because they don't even know how to break a pallet on the right side of a loop. So you
yeah,
bring in those perks for that one game out of maybe 10, 20, or 30 where it just leaves a sour taste in your mouth. So I don't know. I think it's okay. I don't really mind it from a survivor side looking at like the killer perks. I'm kind of just over it. I just play the game.
yeah, I feel that.
I
I
get
just
at this point, honestly, I'm probably more bothered than certain killers than certain killer loadouts. To be honest with you, like because
Yes.
some killers, right? Like if like as long as the killer is not going to affect my ability to have fun in a chase, for the most part, I don't really care. But then so many killers do affect that, and so you get annoyed. So I would think the killers probably want me more than the perks do at this point. Yeah, that's what I would say.
well, as a survivor too, nowadays I care more about the add-ons than morely the perks itself. Cause like I think a bunny mom running Eerie Head, it doesn't matter what perks she has. It's a one shot. You know what I mean? It's Eerie Head.
Yeah.
So I'm way more. I'm more worried. Like if I see a black ward, I'm more afraid of a black ward than an Ebony Mori because like it could be anything. Like I always expect the worst. But if someone runs a
yeah.
Mori, they might not be the best player in general. So I think I have more of a chance than.
Honestly, I can 100% agree with that. That like, I think that a lot of the like, I don't know, I don't, because I'm not exactly like, I don't run exactly like Ruin Undying, like very meta killer perks, but I feel like for Survivor, a lot of the meta builds that they run, quote unquote meta, is to protect themselves and like
Yep.
their teammates. Not the like, they're not worried about the killer. They're just worried about what the killer's gonna do to like them, right?
I
And
think
like,
that's the same case when it comes to killers running
yeah,
meta too, because
killers run like
people run
slowdowns
Ruin
all the time.
Undying.
Yeah, slowdowns all the time. They're not worried about the survivors. They're worried about the generators. So
Mhm.
it creates
And
this
it's, you know,
weird
making-
like
making it
dynamic
different,
of they're creating this weird dynamic where survivors are afraid of Omega like nurses, and then killers are afraid of the Blendette Claudette that does like gens all game. It's this
No,
really
that
weird
is
this discrepancy.
nightmare, not gonna lie.
Yeah, it's this really weird discrepancy that you know what I mean, where one side is focused on one thing and one's the other. Maybe if we change some things, we could like see a meta shift or something.
I feel like
Actu-
something. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
When your original question, just with asking like if you think maybe there's perks that should be nerfed, or like I think the nerf or the meta would be a lot different, or we'd see more random perks if there were just more perks that weren't so shitty. Like there's just so many
Mhm.
I think
bad perks.
100% agree. There's on both sides. There's just so many like a complete perk overhaul would just be so nice.
Yeah.
It would be cool, but like I still wonder if that would be enough to see a noticeable difference because I mean, the biggest driving factor I feel for some of these builds are content creators and their thumbnails on YouTube. And people are going to
Mm.
find the best 3 or 4 perks for this killer, for these maps, and they're going to advertise them and people are going to run with it.
Not thinking
essentially-
for themselves,
I-
right?
I mean, it's just like even you look at shooters, everyone's going to find the best gun, even if they're kind of close to other guns and use it. But I think it would help. It's just to what degree.
Yeah, like
Going-
what? No, you can go.
Going off what he just said, like what you see with people running just because they saw it on the thumbnail. I mean, I literally had a game last night where someone's running 4 slowdowns and they said, I'm going to go back to watching X streamer now. And like they referenced a streamer that always runs like 4 slowdowns. And it's like people just literally run what they see their favorite streamer run. And
Yeah, and against smart survivors, that's not really a problem. But against people that are new to the game,
Babies,
it works. It works. And
So
it might leave
essentially-
them a sour taste.
So essentially, it's inevitable that no matter what we really do to the perks to make them actually fit the game better and to have like more options, I guess it's pretty much inevitable that the moment someone shares a build, everybody's just gonna flock over to that, no matter what we do to the perks.
Yeah,
I-
I would
I
like to
think
see the
pretty much.
devs like maybe.
I know that really happened badly when in like summer 2019 with the no stock Ghostface. The second True Talent did that, and that was chaos for months.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Unity
yeah.
build.
Honestly,
That's
I would
all
like to
anyone
see.
did.
Yes.
I-
Oh.
I can agree that like obviously the like streamers are gonna find like the absolute like you said like shooter games the best gun or like something the best perks, but I'd like to see them maybe change them so that it's like hey we know that these aren't the absolute best perks you could be running, but you as an individual might find them interesting, so just hey try them, like nudge people towards using stuff that isn't just hey I watched a streamer he said it why not.
Right. I think a large part of it, and it's probably a bigger problem, is the right people in the community sharing with one another and kind of guiding people to play the game how you want. It's not about surviving. It's not about the 4K and behavior. Actually, possibly advertising other builds that aren't just your conventional top click YouTube bait build. I think it's kind of a
Yeah.
community endeavor more so than a job for the devs to kind of perfectly balance everything because that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I would like to
perhaps-
see more streamers or like content creators push that are like I do this for fun or like just not for
Exactly.
slowdown legion type thing.
Yeah,
Exactly.
just not take it too seriously. Just enjoy the game.
Yeah,
for
we're
it
here
is, and not
for
be
a
like,
good time, not a long
Not be
time.
like best of the best tournament every single day.
So perhaps
That'd
as
be
an
nice.
idea is say that we were to say, hey, behavior, come up with a solution to make people want to run different perks. What if they had a situation where they kind of looked at perks that aren't used very often, and what they do is they just put on a blood point bonus onto those perks to encourage people to run them, so like, people can step
I
outside
was
their
thinking
bubble.
about something like that. And
That
like,
might be
just
a
going
little
back
bit
to what I was saying
unhealthy.
about maps a little bit, and like how I was saying the scaling. Like I think like maybe like every week or something they can pick like some perks or something that are lower end. It's like, hey, run this and you get like 2 times blood points in a certain category, or like some
would be cool.
incentive,
That'd
some
be kinda neat.
incentive to people to switch up their builds from just
I-
unbreakable DS all the time.
I like that. I actually don't even really see a downside to that. Like a
Yeah.
perk of the week where if you run it for Survivor and Killer, you just get 1.5 or 2
That'd
times
be
blood
really
Yeah,
points.
and then like
nice.
map, and like if you're on this map with like certain killers or something, like it scales in
I
how
would
much rewards you get.
honestly love to see perks like that because like barbecue and chili, right? That's such a strong perk. But
Mhm.
funny enough, if you ask people why do you run barbecue, 100% of the time they say blood points, right? So if
Mhm.
you made perks on Survivor where you just like, oh, maybe you get like more points if you run Bond or something, that would be cool to see. Just because like I don't think anyone runs barbecue for the. I mean, obviously people run for the aura, but just the blood points are so nice. So if you put that on like niche perks, I think they could change up the meta a lot.
That's actually a good idea. It's funny because I think so. The other day, I got like a group, as you know, like Billy's like super oppressive for like newer survivors. So I got a bunch of newer survivors and who were like rank 3, which we really shouldn't have been. And of course, the game was over fairly fast, and they're just like, "Oh my god, you're like the sweatiest 4K hours of killer I've ever seen. You depend on barbecue." I'm just like, I looked up and never even looked at my barbecue half the time. Like it's one of those things, right? When the ores were messed up over the summer, I dropped barbecue and nurses completely because I was like, well, I can't see shit. So I'm just gonna drop these perks are useless because they just provide me misinformation.
Yeah,
I can't
but when you unequip like barbecue, where you're like, no, my blood point's not the aura reading. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I wasn't even. Yeah, I was like, no, my blood points. That is true, but then again, right, it's killer. So like, you still making a lot of blood points. But second of all,
yeah.
like I was surprised by how much I literally did not do the barbecue in any universe. So like, oh look, I can use my whispers and there are crows and it's fine. It's like really not a big deal to have barbecue at all. So yeah, agree. So anyway, that was like a long-winded thing to say. Yes, I agree.
AO maps though.
Yeah, so are we all happy with the perk discussion that we pretty much went on about for an
Yeah.
hour?
I think
Yeah.
so.
yeah.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Awesome. So let's move on to maps. So I think, maps are another thing that affect the gameplay a lot. Like, there's a huge discrepancy between good killer maps and good survivor maps. For instance, like, for killers, like, you get a good map like Red Shop and, there's, like, no pallets there, but then you get, like, Orman, where it's, like, safe pallet everywhere. It's like a feast of pallets. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet of pallets, pretty much, and it's, like, there's, like, this huge discrepancy, and then on top of that, with the map reworks, they've, been making certain maps even more on the side of having dead zones, but then they add unbreakable walls because, like, alright, so we made the map more dead, but it's okay because you have this god loop that can be used until the wall is broken. And I feel like it makes the game a lot easier, but also not in a way that's good. It makes the game easier because it's more straightforward. It's like, alright, you break the wall, you remove the loop, and then it's like, alright, now there's not as much pallets, so you end up feeling like you have to abuse these kind of structures as Survivor, and you know that once it's gone, you don't really have a whole lot to use. But as killers, it becomes irritating because you have to waste your time to break these walls, and then, of course, you have the issue where it's like, what gives? Like, how can we make the maps feel better? Like, as an example, I feel like Templar Purgation is a perfect map in my opinion. It's a medium-sized map. It features a good mixture of safe and unsafe pallets that can still be played when dropped, and of course, there's no ridiculous breakable walls or anything like that. So, like, how do we all feel about maps? Where do we think maps are going? And how can we fix them?
There's
think
one
that
thing I've
maps-
always wanted with maps, and it's something that I've always thought about with maps. Like I think the main problem when it comes to maps, it's like palaces and like loops are one thing, but I think size has always been something I had my eye on for a while. And maps and size have been getting a lot better, I've noticed. But then we still got maps like Mother's Dwelling and Ryan Fields got shrunk, which I'm really happy about. But I'm always said that I think every map should be a pretty general same size, of like maybe the size of like maybe what's that one again?
Grounding story.
Sorry, no, Wrecker's Yard. And I think every map should be generally that size and then have different shapes, but like the square meter size of the map, I think it should remain the same for pretty much all maps because that keeps it from being so like Billy has no problem with stuff like getting around the map on like Azeroth, but then you have like Hag or something who can barely move around and
Deathslinger.
it's not constantly getting trapped. Oh yeah, like Deathslinger.
Or Tier
Like
1
it causes a
Myers.
huge it causes a huge discrepancy in how good a killer can be just based on the square meters of the map alone.
And then I think, this is also like a big influencer of the meta where it's like, alright, because there are certain maps that are so large, you end up feeling like you just have to run Corrupt because it's like, alright, it's Mother's Dwelling, I guess I lose if I don't have a slowdown. And then it's like, then you get like Cold Tower and it's like, you know what, I don't really need a slowdown for this because this map is actually a pretty good size. And it's like, there's that huge discrepancy in size as well.
I think
Yeah, I
that's
think
going to
that's
be one
why.
of
I mean, I think that's why mainly killers run slowdowns is for that reason. Is because like that's why you don't see like many Billy players running slowdowns because they can just get to gen to gen to gen. But then like you see like a lot. I know a lot of Ghostface players especially. I see them running like 2 to 3 slowdowns just because
Yeah,
it's harder
same
to
with
get around the map with them.
same
They
with
just can't
Legion. I
apply
mean,
the
Legion isn't
pressure.
exactly the most like immobile, right? But I do see a lot of people, because you're not going to be in your power 100%. You're not going to use it to fly across the map. So a lot of killers just can't go from like one side instantly.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely. Yeah.
always run slowdowns. So I
the
feel like that actually would help with the slowdown meta a lot.
I think the problem though, in regards to like map size, is you're always going to run into the issue of as soon as you universalize, if that's even a word, all maps and their size. I mean, you're going to have the killers that are already strong that have map mobility, which is the strongest thing for killers in the game, reigning even more supreme and being even more oppressive on these maps. And it's
Well,
like, okay,
I
then
actually
you
have an
get some of
argument for
those
that.
maps that have dead. Oh, I would love to hear it, honestly.
Yeah, so when it comes to killers and mobility, you have to think of it this way: the time difference between one killer to make it from one side of the map to the other in comparison to the other one. So it's like, yeah, on killers like Hillbilly who have a high amount of mobility, yeah, they're gonna make it across the map faster, but the meaning of having mobility actually goes down with map size. So, for instance, let's just compare Mother's Dwelling, where actually, you know what? I'll use Shelter Woods because I have like the numbers for how long it takes to get across the map. So at Shelter Woods, it takes a killer about 20 seconds to get from one wall to the other, and with Billy, let's just say that it takes 12 seconds because he has to charge up his chainsaw, and then he gets his mobility, right? So it's like 12 seconds. He saves 8 seconds. Now, let's say that you're on a map like Cold Tower, one of the smaller maps in the game. Okay, so a killer can make it across the map in maybe, let's say, half the time if you're going from one wall to the other. So now you have Billy, who is, instead of saving 8 seconds, it's more like, he's saving like maybe 4 seconds or so. So the time that you actually save with that mobility means less, meaning that it's still a clear benefit, but it's less
Yeah,
important than, let's say, a
I
chase power.
I would agree with that, but I don't think that's the core issue when it comes to mobility because you don't use mobility to go from wall to wall. You use it to go from hook to chase to hook to chase. And generally, when you're condensing map size too, I mean, the hooks are getting closer, the gens are getting closer. You're like I said, your end chase to the start of a new chase, like that's the important part where mobility plays in. And we're not even talking or considering yet using perks like Ruin or Pop. We're pushing people off gens, and getting to a gen after a hook is the most important thing. Like that's where mobility to me is super important. I think
True.
that's why those killers reign supreme. It's not so far as traveling from one corner to the next, because I mean, in really no world are you going to be doing that as a killer.
Yeah,
I
like
will
on
say
Oni.
oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm gonna cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like on Oni, right? Obviously, that's like the prime example because like Hillbilly is great for going to like generator to generator, but Oni's even better at it. But with Oni, you're not going like wall to wall. I actually completely agree. You're not. You're going from generator. That's why like on maps like Midwich, right? Some killers can just go from one hook to one generator to one hook
Hmm.
in the span of nothing.
Yes.
And whether they had a power duration or not didn't really matter. So
And you have killers like Huntress who have to, 110 that like is it destroys like Midwich, for example, is terrible for Spirit and Midwich or in Huntress and just like
yeah, Legion also suffers because when you stab someone, you have to. They're upstairs, and I have to, and my power kind of walk up.
and the
Yeah,
like
it's like you can't get across Midwish in the middle. So like if Legion, like you only have like what? How long is it again?
It's
Like
like
how long
10
is the base?
seconds.
yeah, it's 10 seconds.
Yeah, like 10 seconds. So it's like, yeah, you stab someone on the bottom floor and then you look and it's like, oh, there's someone like right above me, and then they're running away. Then you get and they turn a corner, so you gotta go up the stairs all the way down this long hallway and turn to get them. And during that time, they're making more distance. So
Yeah.
you're, you're gonna run. You're barely gonna get any hits. It
That's
takes
why.
so long.
So when I look at map size, I mean, I think there should be some variety and some variety. I don't think it needs to be so universal. It's part of just the RNG factor of this game with the way that they've kind of just developed the game and it's been played. I think it's kind of your job as a killer and as survivors to respond appropriately to the map you're given. As a killer, if you're given a large map and you hook somebody inside a 3-gem proxy, I mean, I wouldn't be upset if there's 1 or 2 gens left. You haven't hardly hooked anyone. If you proxy the hook and like force pressure, that's just part of the game. I think it's fine. But I think most people get in this idea of the killer has to play fair. They have to 3-hook everyone. They can't play to like the map. A good example is Huntress on Resting Place. I mean, she's like one of the best gatekeepers at that 50-yard line from keeping the rest of the team from getting the unhook. I mean, are you really going to blame them for taking advantage of that? No, it's just the map. They're playing it to their strength. It's already hard enough for her to get across the map to start another chase.
Yeah.
I don't mind the RNG of the map size, honestly. I think that maybe some of the largest maps in the game that have been a problem for killers should probably be toned down, but I think we should get away from like creating this sort of universal map size.
Well, instead of a
can agree with
universal
that.
map size, what if it was like a map range? So like say that we were going from the size of, let's say, Wrecker's Yard up until like the size of, I don't know, let's just say Pale Rose or something like that, which is like a little bit larger than the average map size.
Yeah, I'd be cool with that. I mean, having a range. I mean, I think that would just make
Honestly,
sense.
It's not even the map itself. It's just the stuff that's on the map that I care about. Because honestly, I don't really care about map size that much. I don't think I've ever been like, oh, this map's too big. That's why I lost. It's just more like there's dead zones and just, it's a big map with nothing on it. I think it's my problem.
And the other thing I would like to bring up though is, while yes, it is nice to have some map diversity, I also feel like, it's important to keep the fun factor of the game in mind. So while yes, a killer should play to the strengths of their map, and survivors should as well, I think we should also keep in mind of what playstyles would be healthy for the game and which ones wouldn't be. So for instance, you have maps like Azerov's where it's like they're like choke point maps. So like obviously taking one side of the map and securing it is the strongest play that you can make. But is that healthy for the game? Is that fun? Is that enjoyable? Do people actually like playing against that?
Sometimes, not all the time.
No, I
don't.
think Azeroth probably, if not one of the most unhealthy maps in the game, was just from competitive. Because in theory, since Azeroth is an I formation map, right? If someone gets hooked on one end and like someone gets caught in the middle, all the killer has to do is zone the middle, and that person's never getting saved. It's just way too linear, and I think it's way too easy to 3-gen or even 4-gen. I've even seen like 5-gens, including the middle, on one end, and I think that map, instead of it being a little bit tweaked, they should have completely remade it like as a completely different form. It shouldn't have been the same at all.
It doesn't feel the same though on PTB. Like it feels like it doesn't feel like a complete. You know how like right now it's an I, right? Like it's like a capital I. On the PTB, it feels like they've done something to it. Like I don't know like what's exactly different because it still has that middle section, right?
I pieced it
I
together.
don't know what the middle. Did you? Because like it feels different. Like it feels like it's. I mean, it's kind of the same, but it feels like it opens up a little bit
They
more.
kept the main
agree.
core,
Wider.
but changed the layout, right? Like they
It's
kept the
wider.
identity of an Azeroth.
It's wider but shorter. So essentially, the middle chunk is wider.
That's
Okay,
good.
That's definitely what it felt. It felt like when I was playing on it, I was like, "Wow, this feels different." Like
It
when I
didn't
was
feel
playing
so
on it,
long, yeah.
yeah, it definitely is not as long. Yeah, it feels a lot different. Maybe like an H now, I guess.
Yeah, I just wish the middle was a little bit wider almost. Like my ideal map design is like a coal tower, like a square,
Oh yeah.
one main
Oh
building,
Yeah.
one
yeah, I
check.
agree. Hella
Coal
agree.
Tower, Wrecker's Yard, and like those kind
But
of.
without a
maps.
hill, hopefully.
I'm a
With the
psycho, so
hills,
my go-to
Monka.
maps.
I
Are
don't think these other formations are that great because either
I think he's lagging.
Yeah, maybe.
Mhm.
My
You hate
go-to
to
maps
see it.
personally are Temple, Rector's Yard, and honestly, Thompson House has been growing on me, which is I know I'm like the weirdest person when it comes to like map opinions, which I also
No,
like other maps like Coal
so
Tower.
much better than it used to be. Like Thompson House was like an automatic loss. I'm like, okay, like if good survivors are in this map, I'm lost. Like
Hard agree. Legit hard agree,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah,
disgusting.
it was bad.
So bad, right? But now current Thompson House it feels so much better. Like it rewards good survivors, but it punishes bad. But you can't just no brain it. Like if you're not a good survivor.
Like if a survivor on old Thompson House runs into the Thompson House, I'm like, oh, dude, I just lose insta L. But now it's like if they run into it, okay, like do they know what they're doing? Or are they just gonna die?
Exactly. Like it's so much. It's so much better. Like old Thompson House, he's like eyebrow used to twitch. You're like, okay, it's fine, it's whatever.
GG lol. Sorry
Yeah,
for slang.
It's really nice, especially with how they changed the like actual interior of the house as well. Because I know the hook on the top floor was pretty much a basement. Like,
Yeah.
because there was one stairway, and the killer could just sit at the stairs, and that person that person just loses. Like they're
I know,
dead.
but remember people could like
nothing to do
sit
about it.
that chest up there, right? And you could if you like just like hung out there and you got down there, the killer could not hook you ever. Like remember those? Does anybody play during those days? That was
I did. I'm a DVD boomer. I know exactly what you're talking about. If you didn't have Iron Grass Agitation, you were literally never getting anyone.
I remember I used to think survivors were so toxic and they used to do that. I used to tell them off and post. I was like, "How dare you? Like fuck that killer like that!" Like
Yeah. Not legit, dude.
Yeah, I remember those days myself where like I would try to hook someone and it's like, no, actually we're gonna stay up here in the main building. And it's like, wait, so you wanna be slugged to death? Is that really what you want right now? And it's like, no, yeah, no, I'm just gonna stay up here. I'm gonna stay right at the top of Thompson House and you're not gonna hook me. It's like, okay.
I legit lost count of how many survivors like I would try to bring down the stairs, be like, oh, they wiggled out, unlucky, maybe I'll get them next time. They wiggled out, and then I'm like, I think I figured it out. Like I'm not getting anyone.
they'll just run upstairs like shitheads. Yeah, even
Yeah, like legit, dude. You just see like the P3 Meg teabagging at the top of the stairs. It's like, okay, dude.
You just know what was gonna happen. You knew what was in store going into that.
Like, okay, okay.
But I do think like the alternative exits they've provided now, like the drop down, the window. I think those also add on to making the map feel a lot better because once that hook is gone, now you also have that additional way of just leaving where it's like, all right, I can use the drop down and still make it to a hook. I don't have to waste all that much time, and so they just made it a lot better in a lot of different areas. So honestly, Thompson House is like one of my go-to maps that I can actually say that I genuinely like.
Agree. I really like New Thompson House is a great example of a redone map. Like it feels very fair because it feels fair on Survivor side, right? And it feels fair on Killer. Like it's a very good map now.
Yeah, I don't think I have a single complaint for Thompson House.
I do because it's Corn and I main Huntress, so
I
that's
too am very corn blind. I sympathize so much.
I just hate.
I am probably one of the
Corn.
most corn blind
Yeah.
corn mains you will ever meet. If someone went to the corn, I will lose them.
I
I
like-
can't see in corn. I just can't.
I've lost so many games just by like literally squinting, not being able to see where they went, and we all know how inconsistent scratch marks are.
Oh, believe me,
So-
I play nurse, so I know what being corn blind is. And let me just say, if I get Ron Fields one last time as nurse.
You know what's so funny when they reworked not Rotten Fields, when they reworked Thompson House, right? And Rotten Fields, I'll say. I find it funny that how a corn map got better, less corn.
Right? Oh,
True.
New Rotten Fields is actually good. Like I like it a lot better than Survivor. I'm ambivalent on it as Killer because as Billy, like all those like big ass corn areas with no.
You know what makes
top.
it worse? When as a Legion player, you like stab someone, right? I I see the killer instinct, and then after the killer instinct's gone, I'm like, oh, well, I can't see blood or scratch marks. Where did anyone go? Like legit, I just lose them instantly.
Oh yeah, another killer that happens with is Blight, where it's like, how low his POV is? He gets corn
Yeah.
blindness the worst out of any other killer.
Small killers have it really bad on corn maps, honestly. Like really tall killers, like Michael and Leatherface and Doctor.
I would say Oni too.
I think Doctor's tall. Yeah, like any. Like they can kind of see more. They can see a bit more of the start because they're a bit taller. But then you got like Hag and Pig, Ghostface, Freddy, all them. It's just painful.
Pretty much. Oh yeah, Victor too.
Victor, that's gonna be something.
Oh yeah,
That's
Victor's
gonna be
a special
something.
one.
I can't
what's
wait.
interesting is that so the Groaning Storehouse rework, right, when they updated Macmillan. I was actually very curious on the people that I'm pretty sure the people that make the map and the people that put tiles and how windows work, like loops. I wonder if they're two different people. Like, I wonder if it's an entire team that designs the map and thinks this is okay, or someone makes the actual map and then they put the tile on later.
I feel like how it works is that they have modelers who makes the assets, and then I feel like there's one person who places the tiles down, and then one person who puts it all together. Like, for instance, I feel like Matt Walker, for instance, he's the main face when it comes to the map. The maps, but he's not the only person who works on them, right? Because they've said they have multiple people for their maps. It's just not a very large team by any means. So I feel like Matt is the one who puts it all together and makes sure that the map looks good, whereas one other person will put the assets together in order to make the tile sets that you see. I feel like that's how it works.
I'm actually not
Yeah.
too sure.
I wouldn't
Actually,
be
that'd be something
surprised.
interesting to find out on.
Yeah, that would. See, like the thing about it is because like actually I'm pretty okay with most like Cold Tower, the rework Cold Tower, like Ironworks, like Shelter, Suffocate, they're pretty good. Then you get to Groaning Storehouse and like that window in the middle where you have to break that wall. That's legit the most disgusting loop I've seen in such a long
It's
time.
so bad.
I'm talking about where they loop. You have like, and you lose chase. You don't get bloodlust either. It makes it worse.
Well,
Like I'm just thinking like, who thought this loop was okay, but you added a breakable wall, which is like that is
It's
legit
like
so
breakable walls feel like a
disgusting.
band-aid in some ways. Like
I
so
feel
how
it
they
is a
did
Band-Aid.
how they did when the original rework of the maps, they should have just I think when it came to the graphical, they should not have changed the layout of the maps. They should not have breakable walls. They should have just upgraded the graphics of the map. Because what they do with breakable walls and thinking like, oh, well, killer just go break the breakable walls and everything will be fine. It's just you don't need to add more things to the killer to do like that. You don't need to do that.
I think it was kind of their cheap way of like in the meat, like it is like a band-aid, right? It's like it's to cover up the issue right now before we actually go through and maybe look at a total rework. Hypothetically, that would be best case scenario, you know.
I can't tell you
Yeah.
how upset I was when I went onto the PTB and I was like, all right, I'm gonna check out the new Groaning Storehouse, and then I just loaded into the map. They removed both of the pallets on the PTB and had a breakable wall. I was legitimately so mad about that. I think I was in a call with like Dwight or someone, or it might have been with Techie, and I was like, why did they remove these pallets? That was like the worst change ever. Like, you know, they removed both the pallets and added in a breakable wall. Now, luckily they added one of the pallets back, but I would really love to just have both pallets without the breakable wall. That's all I
I'm
want.
100% serious. I
Yeah.
would legit. They had like 4 pallets in that window, then you get run on that wall.
Like, I don't think the storehouse pallets were really necessarily that good. It was just the window was really, really good. Or I guess the one that usually spawns beside basement.
If
But,
you did
Exactly.
Bloodlust 3, those pallets weren't even that good.
No, they were awful. But I think in general, storehouse was always a really survivor-sided map. So I think like in order for them to have made it more fair, they had to retweak the whole thing, which I don't think they wanted to do.
Right.
And I think they kind of just like I feel like when it came to these maps, they changed for a lot of things other than dead zones, which is something I kind of want to go on in a bit. But I think they changed the icing, but not the cake, and I think that's been a lot like a big theme of a lot of changes so far. Is the
I
icing
agree.
has been changed, but not the cake. You know, like
Of
the core is
course.
still the same, but the bells and whistles are different, which can be
Yeah.
a good thing, can be a bad thing. But I think breakable walls in general, especially on Macmillan right now, are pretty useless for both sides. Like the
Yeah,
upstairs one in the cold
honestly.
tower, I have no idea what the point of that is.
Actually, I think I know the only reason why they added that one. So, you know how the generator can spawn right next to one of those breakable walls, right? I think the intended purpose is that they just wanted to have a sniping point for Huntress and Deathslinger, but you see, there's an invisible collision, so it doesn't even work right now, unless they fixed that already.
No, that's
Well-
still in the game, I think.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned it would be for Huntress and Deathslinger, and then they added the like chains on the stairs to where you can't throw up it anymore.
Oh
And the
yeah.
same, I think I don't know. It's just like talking about. I think I always call it Moaning Whorehouse, but I know that's not the right
The
name.
Moaning Storehouse.
Groaning Storehouse.
Yeah, that one. The fact that we don't have either of those two pallets inside anymore, and we only have that breakable wall, and that's it. That
brutal.
whole building, that's it. And it's like as soon as the killer decides to break that, breakable wall, wow, one use and that's it, And
Yeah.
then that whole building is just dead. Like literally, you run in there and you die because if the killer's smart, they're gonna immediately catch you at that window.
Right, and when it
So-
comes to the map design, oh sorry, I'll let you go
No,
first.
it's fine. No, it's just complaining about the fact that we lose these pallets that are very easily mind gainable. Like you can mind game it as a killer, but if you're smart as survivor, it's also that's not like just crappy. It's actually a good pallet. Like
Also,
there's
what I
no
don't
reason to
understand.
remove them.
Yeah, but I don't understand what they remove them, right? Is that they like if you honestly just broke the pallet or mind game Mr. I completely agree. They're so mind gameable. But I would rather them put the pallets back than just have that one disgusting wall. Because I don't know if you know what me and Ceptz were
100%,
talking
yeah.
about. Like that one wall is so gross, but for zero. Like if they made that loop less strong, but they put pallets in there, I feel like Groaning Star wouldn't be as bad as it is right now. They made that wall so gross, and they're just like, oh, just break the wall, lol, But if you're a survivor and like let's say like a killer has bamboozled and they bamboozle that window, what do you have in that main building?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Like why is that a thing? Why can I get run at that building for the entire
One
game?
time.
Yeah. Like it's how to explain it? They changed it, but in a bad way because it doesn't really benefit killers or survivors. Like, sure, you guys both lost those good pallets, right? But then killers also lost the be able to mind game those pallets because now it's just one forward loop. And that's just counting one survivor. Like, you could probably like run that entire thing, right? And then a survivor swaps in for you, and then it's just like,
Yeah, like my
mean-
concern with that is like you have that set up like you just explained, right? Now I feel like what makes this bad is the next with the amount of dead zones I've seen now. If you go into the next zone away from that, which is dead, now Bloodlust even kicks in, and now you're kind of just stuck with literally nothing.
Well,
Yeah,
they
like,
said-
literally.
Something I don't actually know like what they like. I don't know what they could do to change that right now, but like I think it should be up there.
Well, I actually had an idea as to like what would be like a good recipe for like pallets, which is that I feel like no map should ever be like Ormond, but no map should ever
Oh,
be
yeah,
like the
no.
current red shop. I feel like
I
there's
fully agree.
there's an easy way
Yeah.
to make an in between, but it's more so about what would be a healthy in between that really allows for that outplay. And one thing I thought about is, so you would have a couple of safe pallets. Like this would include shack, some filler pallets, maze tiles. So you'd maybe have like about 6 of those, right? The guaranteed safe pallets. So maybe it's like something between 5 to 7, or maybe it's just guaranteed 6. And then what you would have after that is you would have like 8 playable pallets. Like they're not necessarily the pallets that end a chase. Like you drop it and it can still be played, and it's really gonna come down to the better player as to whether or not the killer gets the hit, or if they actually have to break the pallet. And then beyond that, I feel like for any dead zones they have after that point, I feel like they should have a weak tile, as in like you have to get the stun, or maybe it's just it's just like something to break bloodlust, or something that allows both sides to actually try and outplay each other. It's like it's just something. So you don't have a dead zone, but it's also not like Ormond crazy either.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Actually, I've heard of that concept as well. I don't think it's a bad idea. I just think the loop can't be small enough where Bloodlust just completely dumps on you, because otherwise you're kind of just dead anyway. I feel a lot of it just comes down to Bloodlust. I feel like map balance is going to be very iffy just because of Bloodlust. Because if you get another map, for example, like Hawkins, where everything is Bloodlustable, then the amount of pallets or dead zones won't really matter.
Of course, and I
I
feel like Bloodlust is one of those mechanics that is actually in need of a change, because it's basically an artifact of a past problem that it honestly didn't even fix anyways.
No. Like
Yeah,
infinites, from my knowledge, are gone, so like I
Yeah.
don't see why it still exists.
I've always thought about Bloodlust, and like people always want to change, and I do agree that Bloodlust 1-2 is just going up like every 15 seconds or whatever it is. I think it's just it feels like a band-aid, and I really think Bloodlust is a good idea. It's a good concept. It fits with the game. It makes sense because if you think about it, like in almost a lore perspective, the longer a killer is chasing their prey, the more anxious they're gonna get to want to kill their prey. So they're gonna get more agitated about it. So it makes sense for Bloodlust to exist. Just the way it is right now, that you can Bloodlust a small tile just by running around it over and over and over until you eventually get them. That's a very brain dead way to play and very boring. And I think Bloodlust should be almost like a reward way or something like that, or maybe just like a what is it, a rubber banding in some way, that if the killer is not doing well or something, then they get a little boost.
On one of the dev streams, someone was talking about it was right after the infinites were removed, and they said, okay, now that infinites are gone, why is Bloodlust still in the game, or is it going to be looked at and reworked? And they actually said on the stream that they don't plan to touch Bloodlust at all because they want survivors to feel the impending doom of the killer eventually catching them. That's actually what they said regarding to that.
If you want to feel impending doom, wait until they use their power. Like, I feel like that's the impending doom at the end of the day, because, alright, I will admit that there are some powers that aren't quite good enough, and we'll get into that later, but when it comes to, feeling impending doom, I feel like that shouldn't be up to Bloodlust, which doesn't do its job correctly. I feel that should be up to the killer feeling threatening enough as it is. Like, you think of impending doom, you think, oh, it's an Oni, he's gonna get his power, let's try and avoid that. Or you think, alright, it's like a killer with high mobility, like let's say Blight, or like let's say it's like a nurse, and that impending doom is that okay, oh shit, they actually know how to use their power, so we better get this game over with, otherwise we're dead. That's the impending doom that I think of, because at that point you're rewarding the killer for using their power correctly, rather than someone who just held down W for 45 seconds at a pallet and then they lose anyways.
Yeah, right. I've never like bloodlusted someone in a pallet and thought, wow, it was really intimidating to them. It must have been really scary.
Well, didn't
The-
they go
the-
back on this whole idea though? Like the last dev stream? Didn't they say like didn't that guy, that individual person, change his mind completely?
What did he say?
I'm pretty sure if I recall correctly, they said that they were actually looking at it now, but they were implementing it in a new way that they're testing internally because if they're not smart with it, it could be really, really bad.
Oh,
I
you
mean,
know what? Actually, I
that'd be
remember
cool.
that. I remember that.
That'd be cool. I think the only impending doom that you should really feel is like the loss of your resources as a survivor, aka the
Yeah.
pallets.
Yeah.
Especially in solo queue, as your teammates throw them down in front of your face.
Can't
Or a
be
killer
like-
as a build up momentum.
Right.
Yeah, like I think like that impending doom idea is great for the game because the game like was designed as a horror game. It doesn't really work like that. It's not really, no one that plays this game for more than 100 hours is scared of it at all. But
Yeah.
it still has that theme to it, so I still think there should be that feeling of like that hopelessness, because that's still the point of the game. That's the reason the game was made. So
Yeah,
it shouldn't lose that. It should always retain that in some form.
I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
the one thing that scares me in this game, even after 3,000 hours, is that one blendnet that camps a pallet. I have no idea they're there, and I walk there, and they just stun me. Scariest shit ever.
Oh my
Totally.
god.
I kind of feel like honest, but on the flip side of that though, like I get like that desire to kind of return to that horror element, but that horror element's been gone from like the game for so long. Like
It has.
Yeah.
part of the thing that attracted people to the game the most was not that. Like I'll be like, right. I remember when I first started watching this game, like I started watching Twitch streams like right before Nurse came out, and I remember, the people you watch, right, were like the dumb shit you could do in this game. You know what I mean? Like wow, it's like oh wow, this like game looks so fun to play. Like the chases look cool, all that stuff, right? Like to me, like the horror element was never the driving factor for this game. So for like sure, I guess that'd be cool to kind of bring that part up, but then again, on the flip side, I will say this: like after 4K hours, I don't think I've ever screamed as much as I did when I first played the fucking PTB. It's out right now. Like, good grief.
I honestly can't wait to talk
Wait,
about the
what
PTB.
I have been screaming that damn killer freaked me
which
out
one?
so
You
much.
guys want to talk about power changes?
It was great.
Well, do we want to talk a little bit more about maps and how we can make them better before we move on to powers? I feel like that is a very important
I
part of the
feel
game.
like we have a lot of topics left.
Yeah, we should probably.
A lot about
Or
that.
I mean, if anything, we could expand on this and maybe like see that we have a lot to talk about it and put it for next stream.
Well, here, let's do like one last thing then. So, if you had to pick a map that you want a behavior to look at and say, hey, this is a prime example of what I think a map should be, what would that map be and why? Let's just wrap it up
Coal
with that.
Tower.
Coal Tower, it used to be Coal
Wreckers
Tower for
Yard.
me until I saw so many dead zones in it now where it's just like, ugh. And like all these hills that spawn instead of tiles. Coal Tower to me originally was like the best map, like perfect. Small, good amount of tiles. Gen positions were really, really good. But I still believe Coal Tower is one of the best. I just think it needs a little bit more tweaking again. But I would say Coal Tower in general. Or maybe like
I like Blood Lodge, but that's just
Blood
me.
Lodge is great, but I think doesn't Blood Lodge kind of suffer from being too big?
It might.
Large
I don't
map size and RNG.
But I
Alright.
New Blood Tower is weird. I still don't know how I feel about New Blood Tower. Like
I New Blood Lodge I think is very
it's
weird.
very weird. Like it doesn't feel good.
No.
It feels so strange. I don't even know how to describe it better than that, but it feels weird. Like
Oh
in
yeah,
a,
on the
in a way I don't
PTB.
like. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I played a little bit of the PTB. I don't know how I feel about like some of those new tiles, like just the feel, the look of them.
Like the bullshit tiles, like the joint, like they look cool aesthetically, but
Yeah.
they're
I think only
confusing.
time will tell, to be honest. I played a little bit of the PTB and I just can't make a decision.
I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of like should have nerfed main build like good buildings that shouldn't have been nerfed. Like on what is the one that is shaped like an eye? I literally keep
Azeroth?
forgetting.
Azeroth?
As-
Place.
Resting place, yes. So the small building on resting place, the PTB has made it utterly like just stupid.
They
Like
basically killed that tile.
yes,
Like
that
a weird
tile's
shock, though.
gone, and that makes me so sad because I felt like that was one of the most fun tiles to run like on the game, and now they have one window and a breakable wall, and then it's done. It's just
Yeah.
like that's it.
I mean, it can be strong sometimes, like if depending on what loop kind of spawns next to it. But
Yeah.
you're not wrong, honestly. Like I fundamentally agree with you.
Didn't they
You know,
add
it's-
like 3 breakable walls to Gas Haven?
Yeah.
As far as the maps go, I think the only thing. What's that, Karen?
I'm sorry. I do like the main building, the new main building gas heaven I actually really like. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, I'm kind of neutral on a lot of like the map designs and some of the changes. I think they're going in a decent direction overall. The only thing that actually irks me is the collision of some of these things
Oh my
that
gosh.
shouldn't exist the way that it does. Some of these loops and tiles in the new killer shacks. I
Hard
feel like
agree.
it's an issue, like it's a bug, like it's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to get stuck on like
The
the
metal
picture
sheets.
frame of the Michael house on Haddonfield.
Yeah.
That's the thing that
Yeah.
kind of irks me because I feel like it's slipping through the cracks because it's not intended.
I think on Auto Haven filler pallets too, I bounce off the tires. Have you ever gotten that?
Mhm.
Yes.
You go up it,
yes.
you like bounce up, and it literally gets me killed like so many times, and I just scream. I'm like, dude,
I would prefer them to like actually just have a whole patch dedicated to like smoothing tiles out and getting rid of like
That would be
phantom
so
collision
yeah, that'd be
as
very nice.
opposed to even like updating some maps.
The fact that that crane, like that claw
Oh,
on the
God.
excavator, that fact that that has been in the game for so long.
I feel
Yeah.
so bad for Billy Mains
I
there
think
because
if
they
they
try to like
literally
curve around it.
Oh yeah,
If they raise the actual claws on that thing, I think that would automatically improve
It's not an issue on
frame.
PTB.
Yeah.
I think because I know when I used to play Billy like all the time, and that crane, I would constantly, even though I knew it wouldn't work, I just had this pipe dream that I could get a curve on it, and I just kept getting more and more insane and more sad every time I kept hitting those stupid claws.
Mhm.
or like the fence around preschool, right? That's another one that's been there forever. It is super annoying. Like,
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's sometimes the most important stuff is making just the movement around the map feel fluid. Like that's sometimes more important than
Yeah, to be
some
honest,
stronger
sure.
tiles because it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
But back on what you were asking originally, it's like for me, I think Shelter Woods is still one of the biggest issues to I dread getting that map,
Oh, me
as
too.
well as just like basically Wrecker's Yard now, because that's just as gross to me too. Like just I kid you not, there was one map that we spawned on and we had 7 pallets, and that was counting the 2
And
around the main building, and that was
and
it.
2 tanker trucks, right? We didn't
Yes.
get a crane tile.
We did
It
not
was
get a
like,
crane tile. We
just
literally
loop the
had 2
trees.
hills. We had the shack pallet and then like 1 jungle gym and then the 2 pallets on the outside, and that was literally it. It was a disgusting map.
I think they would benefit from having some sort of algorithm or like some sort of minimal spawn requirement for some of the maps and like rate certain tiles.
There
and
actually
just-
is.
It
So every
doesn't feel like it.
every map. So
Oh.
the biggest issue is that every map is supposed to have a minimum of 8 pallets. That's the way that they programmed it. The issue though is that when you put the same requirement on larger maps, it doesn't work out because of the tile spacing. So it becomes this issue of they're trying to make one size fit all when one size does not in fact fit all maps at all. And that rings true for like killers and how they may interact with certain maps as well on top of that. So they essentially have this system where it's like, yeah, it's fine, we can have 8 pallets as a minimum, and then you go on to Pale Rose where the tiles are really spaced out because like it's a little bit above average in map size, or you get like Shelter Woods, which is one of the largest maps in the game. I think it's actually the second largest in the game currently, probably followed by Disturbed Ward. So you have this whole thing where it's like you have the minimum requirement, but it doesn't work because of the tile spacing. I mean, even then though, 8 pallets, who says that's enough on any map, honestly? Like, I feel like they should update it.
The palette thing, I mean, yeah, I agree with that, but I feel that's probably as far as it goes for the most part. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't think they have some sort of value attached to like tile sets. So, you can't just be left
They have
with
tile
'cause
spacing.
sometimes you get like nothing but long walls and you feel bad for the killer because they're playing just nothing but long walls. And sometimes you only get C walls or LTs, or you only get, broken down tanker trucks. But then when you play killer and you're playing Huntress, they get 2 cranes. Like that sort of stuff. I feel like they could mitigate that RNG a little bit.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Perhaps well, actually it would be like a really long project, but theming maps around like the killer that you're playing against. Like if it's like a Huntress, it becomes a little bit more open. If you get like a stealth killer, it's a little bit more
More
cluttered.
trees.
Yeah, because
More
trees
trees.
helped. you know.
Please, Mega Clap.
But of course, they become more cluttered if you're like a stealth killer. But I also do feel like that's something that would require a lot of work on the devs' end, and perhaps it might not be realistic for the small map team they have, because they have a large team, but they do not have a large map team from the last time they talked about it.
Yeah.
Pretty good topic on maps.
Yeah. it's
Yeah.
What do you,
Mhm,
on a
yeah.
random note, what do you guys think about all the random, like, junk and props now on Autohaven?
I was gonna mention that. That feels weird. It's like they just tried to do the same thing with trees. Do you think that like behavior wants some sort of like immersion still left in DBD?
Yes.
I think with the new maps for sure. I could feel that when they rework Cold Tower, they just like they sort of have like the main core of Cold Tower. They just sort of like try to make it like I don't know. It's hard to explain, but I know what you're talking about with like the random like chairs and stuff on Autohaven.
Yeah, like so much random props and stuff, and like I have no idea what their benefit is or what their purpose is, but like it's
It's
just
more
weird,
just
man.
the theme. I think because Autohaven
like a
as like a
junkyard.
map is a junkyard. It's gonna be full of
Yeah.
random crap. You have no idea why it's there, but it's there.
Yeah,
So
I mean, but
it fits
it's
the
just
idea.
it's just funny. Like it fits the theme. I get that, but then I think I remember watching Tofu play the new killer, and he was literally Victor getting infinited on the 3-tire stack. You couldn't hit
Yeah.
a lunge unless maybe you had a certain add-on. It's just like I don't
It's-
think they necessarily think about how it interacts with like killer and survivor.
I
They
feel
just
like
think it looks right.
I feel like they partially thought of it. So, for instance, on the Autohaven walls, they're a lot shorter now, which I don't really feel very great about that. But let's just ignore that for now. But no, seriously, they did decrease the size of the walls on those maps, and I feel like they had the idea of allowing him to shoot over certain walls, but then they didn't think about the those other tiles, because like his movement speed when he charges up his pounce is actually really slow. And that's
Yeah.
something I've noticed. And that's why, like, those tiles don't really work out with him. So I feel like they partially pay attention to how certain tiles will interact with killers, and then they also don't for other things that they just kind of throw in for the sake of throwing in another object.
Mhm.
So I feel like it's like a 50-50 thing where it's like they are keeping it in mind, because I can see how it would work well with the new killer, but then they're also not really doing that at all.
Right.
It's like
I would
dependent.
agree. Yeah, they can only keep so much in mind too. Like some
Exactly.
things you just never know what's gonna happen.
Because this game is way larger than what it used to be. So like I wouldn't even call them like ignorant to like what's going on, but
No.
more so it's like there's just so much that they've made a game where it's really hard to keep track of every possible interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So are we happy with the map discussion so far?
That was
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, I guess my
Yeah,
TLDR
I
is
think
with fixed dead zones, please.
Yeah.
Only
Please
thing I
just
really want.
dead
Ending
zones,
note,
just dead zones and getting stuck on sticky stuff. Like,
Yo,
just
dude, I'll
Yeah.
do anything, bro. You can nerf my killer. Just remove breakable
Yes.
walls and
bro,
dead
just
zones.
remove my killer altogether. Just fix dead zones.
Legit.
Alright, so here's another hot one because we have nothing but hot topics tonight. Powers. So recently we have seen some pretty interesting powers, and by interesting I mean there's a lot of powers that people don't really like a whole lot, and there's some that
PP head.
people
Pinball.
and there's some that people really love. Like I'll get back to you on that one. But
Red chain, woo!
Bro, Hillbilly Chainsaw's kind of cool.
I mean, I think people generally like the people that like Blight really love like just bouncing around shit, and I think it's kind of cool. I think it's something that's.
I don't like
neat,
people that play
honestly.
Legion go burr.
I know what people really love is not having a terrorist or red stain on the killer half the match.
Yeah.
That's super fun.
So,
Interactive.
what specifically about powers? Where do we want
Okay.
to start?
So I'll cover this a little bit. So recently, Behavior has had this trend, of course, excluding the most recent killer on the PTB, where they've been essentially recreating old powers, but in new ways. Like, take Oni, for instance. He's like a recreation of Hillbilly, except he's like a reimagination of Hillbilly in the sense that it's like, alright, what if we made Hillbilly but way stronger, but he had to work for his power? Or, you go to like Demogorgon, for instance, who, I love Demogorgon, so I feel like nobody's gonna complain about him here. So when it comes to like Demogorgon, he's like a recreation of Hag, where it's like, what if he had these little portals that he could use to get around the map that he had to place down? Except, what if he didn't have to just be in like one little spot? What if he could be anywhere, and in return we gave him like a little bit of a chase power to make up for that? So, you know, there's been like these recreations, and, you know, another example would be Ghostface. He's a recreation of Myers, except as if he was localized. You know, he's basically local Myers. And, you know, he can always be stealth, he can always insta-down, but only if he sets him up to, only if he sets himself up to do that. So a lot of the recent powers have been, like, recreations. But I also do feel as if, like, some of them may perhaps be, like, too oppressive. So, like, take Deathslinger and Pyramid Head. There are basically 2 consecutive killers in a row that were based around zoning, and their zoning is so good that most of the time you don't really have any options except to get hit one way or another. So I guess one thing I would like to say is, what are some powers that we feel like are done really well, and why? And what are powers that perhaps might be too oppressive? So, like, what do we think is just right, and what do we think is too far in either the sense of being too weak or too powerful?
I have a very something I've this is something I've thought about a lot, and I think when it comes to making powers, I think a killer's power should always rely on the killer themselves, like the player understanding the killer and being able to use it efficiently to do really well. When it comes to like really brain dead powers like Pyramid Head, where just you stick a sword in the ground and you just kind of wait until something happens you can get a score to hit on. I think that's just a very, very poorly made power. And then when it comes to like someone like let's say Blight. It's like Blight, you've really got to understand like the angles and how to hit someone and when to bounce, all these things you need to know and understand to do really well with Blight. Which I think is a very good way to make killer powers instead of just brain dead, do like instruction manual of how to play and how to win.
Oh yeah, I
I
forgot about one
agree.
last thing. This also includes killers that got reworked, such as Doctor, Freddy, and Bubba.
I honestly think overall, I think they're. I know some people might cringe, but I think they've done a decent job. There's obviously going to be repeat powers. There's kind of like a cap on what they can really do. I think it's cool how they're all uniquely different. So depending on your play style or what you like to do, you know, I think it works for a lot of people. I think sometimes when they try and branch out too much from the norm, I think you get something like Deathslinger, which I think most people don't really care to play against because he's quote unquote uncounterable if you can hit your shots. But at the same time, I don't really care if there's some killers that have more of a brain dead power. I would maybe say Freddy. It's kind of played straightforward, kind of lends itself to how the game should be played. It's something for everyone, I think, is what they're trying to do. And I don't think that's really right or wrong. It's just the avenue that they decided to go down. And I think it works for them. Behavior, that is.
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest one will always be spirits. Good old spirits.
Yeah.
Spirits
Yeah,
will, me mind
interaction
game.
is
The
the
whole
issue.
Dude, I
like,
get
see,
so
when that
triggered. Nah, I was just gonna say like the
quote
spirits
unquote bug
like
happened. Yeah, the quote unquote bug that you could hear her. Right,
Yeah.
I felt amazing.
Like hear
But
like
then,
her,
no,
like,
they remove
whispers
it.
and
Like,
stuff
God forbid
as
we
she's
have
moving
counterplay
around?
on a character that you don't even see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
thought
was
that
really
was a
good. When I heard that, I was like, "This is an
real
awesome
change. I'm like,
change.
dude,
I
that is
hope this is
flawless.
permanent."
That was
It's kind of sad that everyone was hoping it was permanent and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And there was talks about how behavior, like, actually on the wiki made it part of her power. Like, it wasn't a bug. And people got their hopes up, you know?
Yeah.
yeah. And then I think like Oni's not broken to me, but I think when he's not in his dash, he shouldn't have to hold his left click for like a hair of a second to one shot you. I think he should have to pump it all the way. I think he has way too much
agree.
leniency. Like that's why when people used to tell me the argument that like, oh, Billy can do it, Oni can, I just go like, no, they're not even close. Nope.
It's
No,
a
not
strike.
really.
No,
think-
Oni to me is Billy on training wheels, who has a lot more leniency on what he can do to one shots. Like I think Oni's power is
Yeah.
much stronger than Billy's. Light years.
I mean, he's on training wheels, but the problem is like, if you know how to play around him and you can deny him early hits, he's so bad.
It's like a plague
mean,
without a like damage.
Yeah, he's
He's a
either like
punch
100 or
stomper.
0.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the killer's powers are pretty good for the most part. They just add like they have like a like what they want the killer to be known for, you know, like Legion's got the deep wound, obviously, like Clown has like, you know, you're not gonna play the game. And like, you know, Demo's got the dash, right? And then like but then you get like killers like Freddy that just have like 7 random passives like on their core identity. You know,
Yeah,
like
I
I,
think-
Freddy's always been that character that's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
but, like,
where
you
he
know what I'm
can't-
talking about,
His
like-
dream world is like his manipulated world, so he kind of do whatever he wants. And then
yeah, like Pyramid Head has like, you know, the thing where he puts his thing in the ground and he shoot, you know, he just waits like Deathslinger. But then he also has the thing that slows you and like alerts him. And he can put you in the cages and he can even kill you without hooking you, which is like, so they just have like a core identity and then they just add random stuff to it.
I have said since the start with Freddy, I feel like they gave him way too much just for being like base stuff. Like, I think they gave him a ton of stuff compared to other killers. You know, like Hag, you have traps. That's it. Like, obviously, Hag can be very, very good, but I just mean in general, like you have all these killers that have these powers, and then you have Freddy who can do like 4 different things. He can completely ignore BT. You know,
Freddy's
just-
like the all-you-can-eat buffet of just killers.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Like he has this core identity. You should be asleep, right? And he maybe can teleport to a generator, but then he has snares, borrowed time doesn't work. He just has like passives add on.
Pallets.
Yeah. He just has a lot of stuff for like no reason.
yeah, exactly. I feel like they
reduced
gave him
vision for
so
survivors
much.
and all that
I
stuff.
feel like what they could have done, you know, old Freddy, right?
Mm.
Literally, they could have just had old Freddy, just add the alarm clocks.
Yeah.
And I think Gen Teleport was a very good decision for Freddy. I think having that like ability to move around the map like that, I think that was a very good idea. And for the Freddy rework, if they just made him have the old Freddy ability, have the alarm clocks, and then like maybe some other ways to fall asleep or something, like some other interactions, just so the constant transitioning from awake to asleep is like happening all the time, that would have been an amazing Freddy rework.
Yeah.
Like some kind of in between the old and new, because obviously there were some things that
Yeah.
people didn't like about both, but I think there's something that both ideas got right. So for instance, the new Freddy, the thing they got right with him is the Gen Teleport, because that opens up pretty much the only skillful interaction you get with Freddy. Like, you can bait people into running into you with the teleport, you can pressure the map with it. Like, you have some options when it comes to the Gen Teleport that actually opens up the interactions that you can have with him. Whereas with the old Freddy, you had to be like a little bit more strategic, like, alright, I need to sleep multiple people, and I need to keep an eye on their auras to know where they're at, and you had to form like a plan with them, and I feel like the Gen Teleport would have worked out really well with that idea, but instead they kind of went with something that's all over the place and does too many different things.
Yeah, like honestly, I kind of like as an old Freddy player, I miss putting people to sleep with my like, you know, hand, right? That was cool. And I feel like if they just added like, I don't know, they're really, I feel like you're right. There really does need to be a middle part between old Freddy and new Freddy, not like one or the other. Because like, you know, Freddy rework, you know, they had the alarm clocks. That's cool. You're just passively going to sleep. That's cool. You know, you can teleport to a gen. That's cool. Oh, I put 10 snares at the Killer Shack before the game started. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I don't know how many Freddy's I've gone against, and they have like the
Fake
most
pallets.
basic. Well, they had like the most basic loops, like literally 7 snares on one loop, and I just I don't know how anyone can look at that and see that like that's some type of skillful, you know.
It's not. It's just a really boring playstyle. Like it's the same. Like he's pretty much almost. Actually, I wouldn't say a zoning killer now. It's just the way that his power works is he doesn't need to think to outplay, which I think is a huge problem with newer killers. Is when you don't need to think to outplay them. You can just kind of press buttons and they just kind of force to get outplayed.
I think all the just new killers, the reworked killers, starting with Oni and then like the Freddy rework and then the Doctor rework up until all the killers that has been released until now. Not really Blight, but they all just are very like encouraging throwing down pallets early, and that's like
Yeah, you
the-
notice a
I
pattern
totally
with like
agree.
Freddy,
Yeah.
Clown, like
Anti-loop
Deathslinger.
The
killers.
new
Bubba
Bubba,
especially.
Bubba,
then
can't
yeah,
greed.
definitely
Doctor
And,
would be in
like-
that category as well.
Doctor
Yeah,
100%. Like,
Personally,
feel
I don't think the Doctor rework was that big a deal. I don't think it really changed him too much, except on his map pressure.
I
But
think
his
what
chase
the
ability, I really don't think it did that much.
I think when it comes to Doctor, actually, the interesting thing about it is that everything he can do now was actually possible before, but it's easier
Mhm.
to do now instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Shock spam and I think discipline. I think discipline is a little bit too strong. I don't think it should have been a thing.
Yeah,
The
no, I don't know.
ability to insta prime the shock, and then before the animation is done, to shock you again, like in a filler palette. I see like little to no counterplay. Like I don't know, it's just me.
Yeah, no, well, I think discipline is an issue, but I think we can all acknowledge that, there's some pretty powerful add-ons that probably shouldn't be there anyways, and
Yeah.
like that's the best way to put it. Like every killer kind of has that one item that you look at and it's like, yeah, why does that exist again? Like for instance, Oni, you could say Top Knot, or for like Old Billy, it would be like Carburetor's Tuning Guide, or maybe move on to other killers like Huntress 3. They have Iridescent Head. Like I feel like every killer has that one add-on where it's like, why did that exist? So I mean,
Frank's mixtape.
Oh god, we love it.
Old Legion, ooh yeah,
Oh, 18 swings, Frank's mixtape.
bro.
I lost.
the fun add-ons, of course. But
Mhm.
I feel like every killer has that, and it's really up to behavior to understand like just exactly what they're editing, because there's a lot of things that are very important to keep in mind with this game, especially when it comes to power. So for instance, speed is a very important factor because 5% is a huge difference. Like, take Huntress versus any other 115 killer to ever exist. So, you have Huntress, and she has to maybe spend, like, double the time to actually catch up to someone at a loop, and, her map pressure is pretty weak, unless you're on, like, a really open map. And then you compare that to, like, let's say a 115 killer, who can catch up a lot faster, they may be able to round corners a little bit better, and, like, a perk like Hope wouldn't destroy them at the end, or anything else that increases movement speed, although it would make it very annoying. But the idea is that it really changes how loop is played, and it really reinforces the idea that, slower killers have to have chase powers, and faster killers, they have an option there. And when it comes to that, something as basic as speed is very important, and then with powers, it's like, how fast that power activates is also super important. For instance, take Hillbilly as an example. I think Hillbilly, prior to his rework, in his base kit was the most balanced killer in the game. But yet, you put like Instasaw on him, and all of a sudden, that chainsaw comes out so fast that it becomes unfair. Where meanwhile, you keep him in his base kit, and he's perfectly balanced. And that difference is only like, what, a second? But yet that's a huge deal. So, when it comes to like this game, very small numbers make a massive impact.
Yeah.
I guess what do you guys? Oh, sorry.
Actually, I kind of forgot what I was about to say, so you can continue.
I was like, what do you guys feel about Pyramid Head's quote-unquote nerf?
I
Did
feel like
It's not a nerf.
As a Pyramid Head,
that's
as
the
a Pyramid Head
quote-unquote,
player,
no.
it legit absolutely did nothing.
Yeah, I made him better. He's better now.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. He's stronger.
Oh man.
Yeah, like,
Honestly, if they wanted to fix that, they'd have to do it at the beginning of the power, not the end.
the way that I look at it is that when it comes to Pyramid Head, they didn't really nerf him. They instead did it's like a very slight buff, but it's a buff that you can notice. So they kind of nerfed the zoning a little bit by like a very tiny margin, and then they also made it so his power is more spammable now because it has a shorter cooldown by half a second. Now the thing about it is that it's cool that they want people to use his power more often. In fact, I encourage that. I feel like the main way a killer should outplay you outside of M1 mind games is by using their power effectively, because that's where the fun of the game comes from. That's the variety that you get from one match to the other. Like, that's the difference between getting a Hillbilly and a Huntress, or like a Huntress and a Blight, or let's say a Demogorgon. Like, the difference comes in the powers that are in play, and if you don't see that power being used often enough, then the matches end up becoming stale because they're the same thing every game. Now, when it comes to Pyramid Head, I feel like they had the right idea of encouraging people to use his power more often, but I feel like they didn't go hard enough at it. So for instance, I think the idea of nerfing his zoning is fantastic, but I feel like they didn't really hit the nail on the head when it comes to like why people don't use his power often enough, because now I feel like they introduced a new problem where his power is way more spammable, which is something I honestly didn't realize before. But looking back at it now, his power is very spammable now, and I feel like what they should have done was double down on the zoning nerf, make it even harder, but then buff the actual physical attack itself to where, I don't know, maybe it comes out a tiny bit faster, maybe it's a little bit wider, whatever they decide on, but make the actual attack stronger and just, do away with the zoning.
I don't know if I'd be for buffing the ability, because in a lot of conditions it's very like, you could say it's not hard to avoid, but in certain situations it's very hard to avoid, I think, especially when you have like range add-ons and stuff, especially when they're kind of just sucking at through walls.
And the other thing is that
I think it'd be very dangerous to buff the power.
Of course, and then like one thing I will point out is that his trails that he leaves behind and grass will actually mask his power very well. but you see that doesn't exist on every map. So like it becomes this thing where like certain maps, his power becomes easier to dodge, and then other maps it's like, well, I couldn't see it at all, so I guess I'll die. So I do feel like there's like a slight problem there where it's like you can't really see it very well sometimes. Which is where I can actually see where you would have a problem with like buffing the actual attack. But no matter what, the one thing I wanted to see changed was his zoning. His zoning is the one thing that makes him incredibly unfun to go against, versus a fun experience that could be him trying to actually actively outplay you with his power.
Yeah, it feels like the only way to really quote unquote counterplay a P-head is to just hold W, never animation lock yourself, and never run into
Yeah.
goop, and just take them around the map, around loops, and never really do anything.
Yeah.
Which
Or drop things so far away and so early that it's
right,
like laughable.
right.
And then
And
you run in. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, and trying to like use that palette as a mind game.
Basically, and then you just run into the issue of even him still being broken upon release. Like there's still, like you said, how he can hide his power. Well, there's literally so many times now where I get infected like by the goop or whatever, the torment, and I don't even see it on my screen, and it's just like that's bugged. And then you have the issue with taking protection hits as well. Whenever you like say you take a protection hit with his what's it called?
M2?
His M2, yes.
Punishment of
His
the Damned.
M2. That what is it?
Punishment of the Damned.
Punishment of the Damned. Okay. I can't think of the actual name for it. Like there's so many issues just still that's even he's bugged from a release too, on top of just him getting that buff on top of it. And it's like those bugs like randomly getting tormented, and then you get chased, and then you get worried because you just got randomly tormented by something you couldn't even see, or
I think he
Just-
might have benefited a little bit from like a variety of add-ons that truly affected his power. I think that's one of the coolest things that they've done for some killers, albeit it might be kind of hard. A good example would be like low pro chains for Billy. Like instead of giving killers like faster charge time or recharge for nurse or range for nurse, stuff that like really doesn't change her power, it just affects how she can use it. I think it'd be kind of neat if they kind of took the same thing they did with like low pro chains, and I don't know, for P-head, maybe shorter range, longer cooldown, but instead you get like 3 little lines that branch out, maybe covers a shorter, wider area. I feel like if they did more stuff like that with killer add-ons and changed the way that they looked and function and you played the killer, I don't know if they'd be more balanced, but it would be more fun.
So you're saying less steroids and more like changing how the power actually works.
Right, yeah.
Okay, that
And
makes a lot
you
of
might
sense.
never know what you're gonna play against until he sticks his sword in the ground the first time.
I'd be down for that. That's very interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I'm okay with that.
And like you can put sides to it. It's like, well, I'm going to use range and I'm going to get the 3-pronged, M2, and it's like, okay, but your M2 is on like a 20-second cooldown now or something. Like, be careful how you use it. I think it'd be really easy to balance the powers that way if you change how they work, but I know it'd probably be a major headache.
Yeah, and like there was actually something that someone said in the chat where I actually kind of agree with it, where like, I feel like there shouldn't be add-ons that you feel like you have to run, like say on Wraith, where you have to have Windstorm to actually make him somewhat decent. I feel like, the base kit should do the work that needs to happen, whereas add-ons should really change how the power functions, so it's more
Yeah.
fun.
Like,
Yeah, I agree with that.
honestly, with my killer on Legion, I legit feel like it feels so bad to play without having duration add-ons or fatigue like reduce. I feel like duration should just be like built into the kit and just rework some add-ons. I'm not sure if other killers feel the same, but I feel like I have add-ons that I just like actually have to run.
Wraith has
Yeah,
a
and
few,
like,
which would be like Windstorm.
and I mean, most of Legion's add-ons, I feel like his power is so, I don't know if basic's the right word, but aside from Eerie Button, I mean, do any of his add-ons really do anything to make his power feel different?
See, the thing is that it doesn't make his power feel different. It just does things to the survivor. So it's not making like breaking pallets. I agree. That's like really interesting. But
Yeah.
as it stands, Legion can like make you, he can like mangle you or break you or like break a pallet, but that's it.
Yeah.
Make your mend time longer. There's nothing that's like there's no add-on that like makes his like when he vaults like faster or anything interesting like that. It's all just
Yeah.
Okay, I guess. Well, what do you guys think they need to do to Deathslinger to make him balanced?
I
Add a
actually had some
cooldown to
ideas.
ADS thing or something.
I actually had
Yeah.
a set of ideas for Deathslinger. So before I do that, though, I feel like Ceptz wanted to say one thing before I actually start up on this.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I do actually need to head out because I had plans right now. So hopefully Coconut will be able to fill in for this. But I really had fun. This was a lot of fun. I hope we can continue doing this.
Yeah.
So
I'm
thank
looking
you all
forward to
for,
doing this as well.
Thank
Yeah,
you all for showing
was
up.
fun.
That was tons of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Feel
thank
the
you.
love.
Have a good one.
Thank you, man. Have a great one.
Yep.
All right, see you, Ceptz. All right, so until we can confirm whether or not Coconut wants to fill in, I'll just go over my ideas for Deathslinger. So my idea was actually to make him less about zoning and more about skillfully using his power and then also changing add-ons to reflect on that. So my idea, which kind of some of them come from an idea that I've seen and some of them are my own ideas. So I feel like the one thing that'd be really neat about Deathslinger is I love the identity that he can shoot through any hole in the game. Like if there's a hole there, he can shoot through it. I love that identity because it opens up that really skillful aspect that if you land that shot, you really do deserve it. But he is very oppressive in the sense that he can just instantly pull up his gun, instantly pull it down, and I feel like something should really be done about that part as well, though, where I feel like right now, if they were to just slap on some form of a time requirement to it, like let's say that him pulling up his gun takes like half a second, right? That's instantly better than 0.15 seconds, you know? So like if it took like half a second for him to pull up his gun, then let's say 1.75 seconds for him to put it down, and he gets like a little bit of a slowdown, that would be a great way to address his zoning and make so he has to make the shot. But then we could buff it in different areas where it's like, alright, because he's no longer a zoning god and he only gets one shot, we can open up his harpoon to doing different things. Like for instance, whether it's an add-on or a base kit, you can make so if he shoots a generator, it makes it start regressing instead of having to spend the time to kick it, because technically speaking, it's the same time investment as walking up to it and then just kicking it without brutal strength. 2 seconds in. Actually, it takes a little bit longer, 2.5 seconds to reload. But actually, sorry, it's 2.75 seconds. My bad. So you could have something like that to make up for that, so he gets a little bit of map pressure going. So it fixes two big issues. And then you could have like some add-ons where maybe he has like more range on his gun, but like there's more counterplay in the sense where like let's imagine you're shot and you're stunned in place, right? One idea that I saw that I really liked is that the survivor can still pull down a pallet if they're like in the stun. So like when you get shot, you have like that half second stun where you can't move, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like during that time, they would be able to drop the pallet. So then you could give him really interesting add-ons like maybe his reeling speed add-ons could also increase range. So it has this idea where it's like because he has that reeling speed, he can actually reel someone in before the chain breaks, so he could have that extra range. Or another idea is that maybe this is one idea that I heard on like Tofu's channel, like when Deathslinger first came out, he shoots onto an object and he can reel himself to that object at an increased speed. And I think that'd be really fun for an add-on.
It's almost
That'd
like
be
Spider-Man.
fun.
Yeah.
It just obviously it's a whole different coding issue.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know
but yeah.
if it's just me, but like I feel like killers that have like I would be pretty forgiving with like Hillbilly or Clown, or like Doctor even. But I feel like killers like Pyramid Head, Huntress, and like Deathslinger just shouldn't be like if they ADS, they just shouldn't be able to undo it.
You think they should have to let it go?
Yeah, like if they hold a hatchet, I feel like you should throw it or hold it.
Have to
Or, like-
re-equip it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree. And I think Deathslinger is probably like really the only problem when it comes to that, honestly.
I think the reason why I think that is just because like some animations you're like locked into doing it. Like when a pallet and you throw it down, you can't like dodge left or right, or when you vault a window, you can't vault left or vault right. So like if a huntress just holds her hatchet and she waits for you to like throw down a pallet or vault a window, or just like same thing with like Pyramid Head or Deathslinger, it's not exactly interesting.
It's not
like-
interesting, but I mean, you're kind of putting that all on the killer. Like you as a survivor have the ability to react and to like as you approach a loop, look at the distance between you and the killer and decide if you want to play that window, risking an animation lock. I mean, I think it's kind of fine as it is, as far as like Huntress is concerned.
Fair enough. So
But
it's
in
really,
general, we can all agree that, you know, to fix Deathslinger, we would have to address the zoning problem, even if it comes with some kind of compensation for it. But like, the idea is that we want to fix the zoning problem. That would make it more fun, correct?
Yeah, just reduce the
Ideally.
ADS time, honestly. Like he has Sleight of Hand Pro and
Yeah.
Steroids. Pretty much
Yeah,
it.
That's
reduce the ADS.
See, here's the thing too for me. I don't actually know like if he should be able to shoot through so many of these small holes that he can shoot through. Because I've seen some clips of some people shooting like under the docks above onto people and like through the tiniest holes on Auto Haven jungle gyms. Like I don't know if that should even be a thing. I don't know.
I feel like it's part of his identity, though, to separate him from other killers. Like, you know,
yeah.
that's how you separate him from Huntress, who, you know, cannot make those shots. Now, I think, you know, maybe they could be more careful about where they put those kind of holes, but with that being said, I feel like that's part of his identity. Because otherwise, what's really going to set him apart from Huntress once he fixes his zoning problem? Like, what will make you go, oh yeah, that's Deathslinger, and not just, oh, that's a Huntress with one hatchet in a limited range? You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand that actually.
yeah.
And it's really hard to talk about Deathslinger too, because it's like, oh yeah, we want to nerf his 1v1. But the man loses in the 1v4 the macro game so hard because of his mobility and reloading.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you shoot a
It's like-
survivor and you reel
it-
them in, and like by the time
it's-
you've done all that, you just like 2 gens pop. It's
Right.
like, ah, damn.
Right. It sucks that he exists the way he does, because you'd want to say, well, I want to nerf his 1v1 because it's uncounterable and it's boring and I have to guess if he's going to shoot. But it's like, well, at the end of the day, he didn't even get a kill. So because if you nerf his 1v1, I feel you have to buff his macro game. Otherwise, it's not really fair to the killer because he's
Yeah, I
already
feel
kind of
like-
weak.
Honestly, they should probably nerf like his gun or whatever, and just make him like an actual real speed killer. You know?
Yeah.
In that sense, then would they have to do something about the tear radius? Because that's a big
Oh
thing.
god,
to
I
me.
hope so. I hope so. You mean his like
I
8
think
meter
so.
tear
Yeah, I
radius?
think so. Yeah,
Yeah,
that would
'cause-
be really dumb.
And like Bunny Mom has obviously the humming, everyone knows, right? But he doesn't have anything. And with
like
monitor,
a-
everyone knows it's
He has
self-explanatory.
a tiny little like theme when he gets in like near you, but even then, but if you hear the theme, it's too late.
I think I literally, remembering all the runs I've gone against a Deathslinger in the last like week, I have said the phrase, I didn't even know he was here or aiming at me. I don't know
He
how
shouldn't
many
be able-
times.
He shouldn't
Yeah,
be able
right,
to
like,
shoot
how
you
many
outside
times-
of
Not a
tear
stealth
radius.
killer. He's not a stealth killer, so I don't understand why he's like able to just shoot me from and pull me off a structure. Like say I get shot off from docks or something, and I'm immediately in an unsafe zone. Whenever I had like a game plan before, like okay, if he comes, I'll go this way, but then I'm getting reeled off the docks because I didn't even hear him coming. I didn't even know it was a Deathslinger. You know? Like,
Yeah,
he-
yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, I just think that like he should become like a base movement speed killer and a base heartbeat, and just like maybe nerf like his gun, and he'd probably be a lot better than he is right now.
But you could actually interact with him.
Yeah.
There, I just had to update the overlay really quickly. So because Ceptz had to go away, we actually have a new guest here with us right now, who is SpaceCoconut. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm SpaceCoconut. I'm here. You're welcome.
Awesome. All right. So now that we got that out of the way, we can resume. I'm just fixing up the text to make sure it's properly aligned. But, you know, what other powers can we really think of? Like, you know, what are some other powers that we feel like are not really too fun to go against, and how can we make them feel better to go against while also still remaining unique and perhaps
Honestly,
worthwhile?
Clown Bottle. Like I know he's getting reworked soon, so that's what I'm hoping, because I think it's kind of interesting where you throw an object, you know, and it creates like a pool, and then like it slows people. But just like I don't think his only counterplay should be just drop the pallet early. That's it.
Yeah.
That's literally it to Clown. I think his whole identity, where he just throws things at survivors, that's not like like a Huntress hatchet or something, is very interesting.
That-
But the way that it's executed is not good.
That on top
Right.
of that is like I don't want to have to go against five cons in a row and then get a headache because my screen was constantly blurry and just spam bottles like the whole time. I think the design of it is pretty poor in relations to like I've heard it makes a lot of people sick, and like I mean I literally had a game or a series last week where we went against 5 different clowns in a row and I legitimately got a headache from just constantly like my screen being blurry and just pink, straight pink, because you know that's clown, you know, and I think that by itself is an issue. I don't know.
I remember
Yeah,
that actually. It's
100%
like
agree.
I remember saying something about like, holy shit, how many clowns are you gonna get? Like, you went from one clown to the other, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And it was
Yeah.
just like 5 in a row.
I legitimately got a headache from that, and I think that's an issue. I don't know. Like, obviously, it's not very common that you're gonna get 5 clowns in a row, but I don't know.
The fact that that can happen, you know, like it's like the same thing with Doctor when they're gonna add that like white flash.
Right. Actually, that would have been a nightmare. How many?
That would have been really bad.
Yeah, I'm glad they
think-
took that one back. Go on.
Was that intended or was that a mistake?
No,
think
that
that
was 100% intentional. That was
Oh,
100%
I think
God,
it was
please.
intended.
I think the problem you guys are going to run into when it comes to getting Clown fixed is the devs are going to look at his primary problem, which is map control, right? And you're probably going to end up with something else like Freddy, where the Clown is going to end up getting another, where Clown is going to get another power. I'll be right back. Get like multiple powers. I'll be right back.
Yeah,
Okay.
one of the things I suggested for Clown was like maybe he could use his bottles himself to actually give him a slight speed boost for a second. But I don't think that would be that insanely oppressive.
It wouldn't
Yeah,
be
like
insane,
he,
but I think
he
there's a way.
consumes a bottle and he gets like a little bit of a movement speed.
I do
Mhm.
think there's a better way to address it, though. For instance, one of my friends had an idea where it's like, what if his bottles had like more of a chance to actually reveal certain objects? Like, let's say that you throw your bottle at a generator and it gives you information like, the one add-on for Wraith and Legion where you see the progress of generators based off of aura intensity, right?
Yeah.
What if his bottles did something like that gave him information? Like, maybe he could have like a longer range bottle that he could chuck that would not slow people down, but it would create a wider area of gas that would have tracking through Killer Instinct. It would have the generator reveal. And, it would basically just be really good information, and it may even have the ability to just, knock people off a generator for a second or two. Just, something to give you valuable information. So it keeps his identity there, but yet it also just makes him gain information so he can make the right plays. And maybe as another idea, instead of like giving mobility, he could like recharge his bottles over time, or maybe he could have it as like a reward for downing someone, where it's like, oh, you downed someone with your bottle, have your bottle back. Just something like that. So he doesn't have like mobility like Freddy does, but instead he gains something else out of it instead. Because inevitably he's gonna get something else in his kit. There's
Yeah,
no way
honestly,
he won't.
I wouldn't really mind Clown if he just toned down like what his gameplay. Like obviously if they reworked the modern and made it just more visually like, like not sickening to look at, and they like made it so that his only counterplay like isn't just thrown on the pallet early. I think that Clown, like his identity can be very interesting to explore. They just do it in the very wrong way.
Of course.
Like I think his add-ons could be reworked too to make them a lot more like interesting.
That's something that needs to happen in general. Like, I think
Like,
Blight has the coolest add-ons overall, where like everything he has changes his style.
Yeah, well, like a bottle like being thrown on the ground, like there's just so much you can do. Like, what if he like throws a bottle and like the add-on makes it so that the bottle's like the gas is smaller and it doesn't slow survivors as long, but they scream when you break it near them.
Doesn't his bottles already make people scream?
No, I just mean like in the area of effect. Like you can just throw it in the
Oh.
general area. If you direct impact them, they do scream.
Okay, and then
Interesting.
maybe as like another idea, like what if they step in the gas and all of a sudden they become oblivious for a short period of time, like 10 seconds or so. So it allows you to just catch up to them without them realizing it. Like obviously they have the gas cloud there, but that could be like for a long range bottle.
Right.
It's like they don't know where you're coming from or even when. They just know that you're probably going to that area because you just screamed.
Yeah.
But I think shifting add-ons to be more like what Blight has, where like they have a clear impact, but they're very unique, would be a very good idea for the game. Not only for like the sake of having something else you can do, but also for the health of the game. It makes it so you don't just look at one killer and go, oh yeah, they're just gonna play this way. Instead, it's like, oh, actually they have this add-on, so I believe they're actually gonna change up their playstyle to match that.
Yeah, I think every add-on should be the killer has their core power, and they have a few add-ons that assist that core power, and then they have a few that change it. Like
Yes.
Legion falls into the category where they legit, other than like someone mentioned earlier, Fuming Mixtape, they legit have nothing that changes their power. Every add-on except Fuming, or like the Mixtape where you can see the generators, and
Yeah, that's
the
the one I brought
button
up.
where you can break them. Like those two change the power like differently, sort of, but literally everything else does absolutely nothing. It's it's duration and effect where he stabs you or recharges faster or fatigue. It doesn't change the
Exactly.
power, it just helps it, I guess.
Yeah, like one idea I had for Legion was that, you could maybe either in his base kit or as an add-on have like have this idea where like when you stab someone with your Feral Frenzy, it stacks up a speed bonus, and as you hit more people, you increase that speed until you hit all 4 of them. So basically, it'd be like a token-based either add-on or base kit change where it's like you hit all 4 survivors,
Yeah.
you get a speed boost. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
just something to give killers, not just Legion, because another killers fall in this category, but just something like, like, oh, maybe this add-on just increases your vault speed, or like, like maybe this one just like makes like, I don't know, just random stuff that they can do.
Simple
It's
but
like,
fun.
yeah, like not like like how Trapper has like his bag, just stuff like that.
Of
I
course.
suppose the problem is that the devs are the ones who are going to decide what to do, and they're either going to make something amazing like Myers Scratched Mirror, right? That'll change his power and how he's played, or they'll make the waterlogged shoe.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. That add-on, it's like, what do you even do with the waterlogged shoe? It's just you make someone hindered, but it's not even as good as Clown's bottles anyways. And you can't
That's a
teleport
piece of
anymore.
cake. All they have to do is make it so the trap isn't triggered until a survivor is near the trap while in the hag's terror radius. Because right now, if she can't teleport to it and it gets triggered on the other side of the map, it's useless to her, right? But if
Right.
the survivor goes around the trap far away and it doesn't trigger and it stays there and it can't be disabled, well, maybe it can, right? But if it since she can't teleport to it, if she's nearby when it goes off, that's when it's useful. That's when it can, be used for what they're trying to do.
Isn't the hindered effect only like what, 5% though?
Oh, it's tiny. But I think primarily if we were going to do that, people would be using the scarred hand for the body blocking effect.
Oh,
The
right.
waterlogged shoe by itself, because it doesn't even give her maximum movement speed, it gives her a partial, which is completely useless. Then, if you're going to take away her teleport speed and give her full movement, who knows?
Right, because it teleports the whole reason why she's 4.4. She has a very powerful ability if you set up in one area, but yet, if you can't even use the teleport, you lose the teeth of the power, so
Mm-hmm.
it does become rather useless in that regard.
But it's like you said, what we're talking about is the add-ons should change how the killer is played and not be necessary for the killer to do well. I think that's their primary mistake.
Right. And that's where add-ons should go. Like, add-ons should feel like they're fun, they change the power up, and you don't feel like you're forced to actually play with an add-on. You have the options there, if done correctly. So I guess, we've covered some killers that we feel like could be changed, and some add-ons, but what are some killers that we think are perfect examples that behavior should strive to recreate, whether it be for their add-ons or for their actual base kit itself?
Demogorgon.
Demogorgon.
Rat
Yeah.
liver base.
Yeah.
Even though he's kind of weak, Michael Myers, I think, was always one of the coolest
Yeah.
design killers in the game.
Agree.
I don't really think he needs to be touched, really. And they did say that recently on a stream that they didn't plan on touching him.
He's
So-
he's really good. Even if he's a middle tier killer, he's just really good.
Yeah.
I actually have a very controversial opinion where I think Myers is weak only because of his early game.
Yeah, no, in terms of power, sure, but like overall theme of the
Like
killer,
health of the
Oh, of
game.
course.
I think it's
dude, they're amazing.
perfect.
But think about the fact that they've mentioned like Scott's idea on like gens being like their early game, like gens are corrupted until the killer gets into a chase, or like think about it because the devs have talked about adding stuff like that, have they not? Like recently they mentioned having like a beginning game, like
They
Possible
have
early
covered
game
that,
collapse
but
with
the
him.
thing about it though is that they never mention what exactly the idea is, which I feel like a lot of people do point towards Scott's idea because it is a fairly good idea, but the issue though is that they never said what they're gonna do. And I feel like it's very important that we don't set up that false expectation, because then if the change does happen, it does arrive, and it's not what we were expecting, we've set ourselves up for disappointment.
yeah, that's true.
I think all in all, like back to the like striving to be, I honestly think maybe Demo, Mikey, and Billy are like the top 3 in my mind right now.
Yeah.
Just beautifully designed killers. The old Billy, but maybe not as add-ons.
Old Billy.
Yeah, the old Billy add-ons, I think, is the problem that everybody
Right.
had with him. Like
Mhm.
I'm not sure people really had an issue with him with the base kit. I mean, people definitely did, honestly. Like some of the,
Right.
I've definitely talked to people who have, but I don't really understand what the overheat is intended to do functionally to
I
build
don't
in.
think.
Like,
Yeah, like I haven't been back revved and just thought, dang, that's way too broken.
I
right,
feel
well,
like
even then, like, the amount of times I back rev and then actually, like, well, I always call it, I'm Ryan Pezzing somebody, but like,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna like Ryan Pez somebody, it's not that often I overheat in the middle of Ryan Pezzing somebody. It's really when I like
No.
if you're like donating around rotten fields and you find a group of survivors. You can't down all of them if you've been doing a donut across
Yeah,
rotten
it
fields. Like
didn't
you
add.
will overheat in that case, but like. But it's
Or
a weird situation to overheat in to begin with, honestly, right? Like what
Yeah, the
are you
mechanic wasn't
punishing?
like a clear thing. It's just kind of like, oh, that happened, but like, I
It
guess.
feels like it happens so randomly or like in weird situations. Like if it usually happens, right? If you go across the map, then you try to do a curve, you don't get a curve or whatever, maybe you try to back rev or whatever, and then you try to do it again and you overheat, right? That's when it usually happens. And you're like, what the fuck are you punishing? Like what is
exactly like you
Right.
weren't
Just
being
chainsaw
good
it
or bad
halfway
at
across
Billy,
the
you were
map.
just using his power.
it
Yeah.
feels like
feels so weird.
theoretically, yeah, it feels like they thought that if like, oh, overheat, so he can't use his chainsaw as much. But the way that it's designed, it's like it doesn't even really stop people from going across the map from corner to corner, killing somebody fast, hooking them, and going because the time they're done hooking, I mean, their chainsaw is pretty much done. I mean, it's fully recharged. They can go across the map again. It
Yeah.
literally only punishes people trying to hit some silly curves and wasting their time anyway.
Yeah.
It does like the exact opposite.
Exactly. So you can't go like chainsaw around across the map, then do a bunch of curves. You can't. That's
Right.
what it does, and that's
Right.
but why.
And it's
It's
like
kind of
I-
like the nurse changes too. Like the nurse changes, like I agree they're good, but they like the way that they nerfed Nurse and Hillbilly is that they nerfed them, quote unquote, but they just made them nerfed them and like less fun. Like Hillbilly
Right.
used to be super fun to use. Like obviously, the OP add-ons need to be changed, but like the thing that they did to Hillbilly now just made him worse in a very uninteresting way.
Yeah,
think
and
the
like
thing
he's
that
still very playable, but he's just like, but it's weird. Like when the overheat pops up, you're like, why? Why did it overheat?
Yeah, you said I mean, just is legit why.
Why are you getting punished for faking your saw too to see if you can get a survivor to greed?
Exactly. Like
Like-
it's like weird. It's like the way it was implemented doesn't do anything, anywhere close to what they intended to do, in my opinion.
It feels like a change that is to be anti. Oh, sorry, I'll let you talk. I know you wanted to talk earlier. My bad.
I think what we're seeing with this is the skill level of the devs. The changes that they're making is like a pure example of what their experience level is, and they're making changes based on what they know and what they understand, and they don't understand it as deeply as many other players do. I'm not a Billy player at all, so I can't really relate to the problems, but I can see that they understand Hillbilly less than some of you do.
Have you guys ever watched them just play matches against each other on their stream?
Yeah,
Sometimes.
They
I've seen that
play?
before.
Few
It's
times.
I think that's a really good point that I haven't thought about before, is that they make the changes to the way that they experience it and not I feel like that kind of goes with the fact that changes that they have made recently and the ones that they keep making are very it's for new players, and that's part of the issues, that they keep making changes for the new audience rather than, hey, yeah, it's hard right now, but if you get better at the game, you'll eventually like it'll be better for you, and rather than just catering to the new needs rather than like thinking about how it's going to be after they play after a few hundred hours, you know?
Yeah, like part of what I
totally
loved.
agree.
Like
What,
part of what I
Karen?
loved.
Oh, sorry. I said I totally agree because, like, I know that some of the because, like, when I talk to like whenever like for the one like example that happened a couple months ago is that like I ended up like playing against a TT person, and so I went back and looked at their stream, and for me that game was like a no. I was like chilling because they did not know what they were doing, so it was not. I was like being like, extra nice. It's like, and you know what I mean, and like kind of like being like, okay, I see this person here, I'm going to leave, so they can get the unhook, right, stuff like that, right? And even then, you still like 4K of like 2 gens left, and so I went back to their stream like, oh my god, is Billy sweating? They're so sweaty, and I'm like, I could not make it easier.
Like you're talking to chat, you're vibing, running into trees, big
Yeah,
sweat.
I was like, you literally trying to blind me mid as I'm taking the survivor to the hook, and also I was looking down. It was so much anyway. So basically, and so I reached out to this person like, hey, can we, Swift at some point and talk about this? Because like I'm so curious because they were like mad. They were like so angry at me, and I'm like, why? Like this game was like a joke. This game was nothing for me. But then when you talk to them, people like Billy is so. It's just like underscores that point, right? Billy is so oppressive for newer players. But at the same time, I also have thousands of more hours than all of them. I probably have like several times more hours than them combined. And so there's no way they should compete on the same level as me, So I don't know. Like it's just like I get the problem, but like most good Billy mains have put like hundreds, if not thousands of hours into learning him.
Yeah.
That's
that impressive.
And I don't think you're going to get away with that in this game like any other game. I know when I literally started playing Survivor, old Freddy, mind you, I thought old Freddy and Bubba were the most overpowered pieces in the game. Now, give me 400 or 500 hours, I'm like, okay, I was really stupid because Freddy and Bubba were like the worst killers in the game. But that's just how it is for new players because they don't know how to loop. They don't know how to look behind them. They don't know how to make correct decisions when they're supposed to. And you might be able to mitigate some of that with certain changes, but I mean, they can't appease both parties all the time, new players and veteran players. And that's just kind of the balance that every game development company, I think, has to,
It
decide
doesn't
where they're
help
going to put their eggs.
that in the tutorial for the game, the only thing they explain is how to hold M1 and open the gate. That's it.
At least they have a tutorial now. I remember even
Back in my day.
tips. Yeah.
And I
I've
think
said
this
that
is-
too.
This is
Like-
where the conversation about matchmaking comes in. There's no way those players should be going up against us anyway.
I feel like matchmaking is a whole nother day,
Before we
Yeah,
get
it's a
into
whole
this,
thing.
though,
That's a whole.
before we get into this,
Yeah.
though, this reminds me of like one game I had where I was playing Leatherface, right? And keep in mind, I was running Barbecue with Cruel Limits before it got buffed, Tinkerer, and I think my last perk was like, I think it was like Monstrous Shrine or something like that. So I was running like a really bad build. And no, sorry, actually, it was Bitter Murmur. So it was Barbecue, Tinkerer, Cruel Limits, and Bitter Murmur. And I got Chapel, and all of the survivors just flocked to me, and I didn't get to use any of my perks the entire game. They just kept on running at me over and over again, and I downed all of them. I won at 5 generators. In the endgame chat, they're like, oh my god, Sweaty Leatherface. It's like, wait. I'm running Cruel Limits. How am I sweaty? This isn't what a sweat runs. But clearly they looked like really inexperienced, and it's like they're being put into a match that they shouldn't have been put into, and I don't know. I feel like that is like part of the problem when it comes to like the experience in this game, though. Like the matchmaking that you get, right? Which
Yeah,
is,
I mean, you probably sacrifice some of that though for your, like comparable queue times. Like if
True.
what if somebody with 10,000 hours, just can't find a game because hardly
Yeah.
any people playing with,
For sure.
even 2,000-3,000 hours. It might be the case, and part of that issue too is with how dedicated servers have segregated the player base.
Oh yeah, like all the US
Definitely.
is split into like 3 sections or like 4.
Right. If they somehow manage to open that up, granted, then you're basically a peer-to-peer, maybe shitty ping, but it's like you can't have everything you want, in terms of matchmaking, queue time, player level, player experience.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think what they could do in terms of matchmaking, well, kind of sort of, is I think they need to rework the rank system around the win condition being more about the team than the individual. And then I guess if
see that.
people adapt to working more as a team than the individual, I'm going to hide and get out. I think you would have more better players that work as a team in queues as opposed to like the quote unquote solo queue warrior, right? And what that will do is, regardless of who you're kind of matched with, you can help them more. So like even if the lower level player or quote unquote less hour player loses, if they see the team won, they still feel like they contributed, like it'll feel better for them.
They felt like they were a team player in that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if the game shifted more toward being presented as like, okay, this is more of like a team thing than just you're a lone wolf. Do your thing. I think
Right.
the lower level or less skilled player would feel more inclined to be helping their team, or they'd feel better.
Yeah, like you
Um,
escaped, congrats, but your team didn't do any gens, so you really didn't get much done.
That's the thing too as well. But like at the end of the day, I understand that like it's a company, they need to make money, and the best way to make more money is to rack more people in that are new.
Mm-hmm.
And the game is, well, I don't know, to the devs, I don't know if they see this game as something competitive or not, because um if they don't, then obviously they're gonna want to cater to newer people. It's an easier market, right?
Yes, very much so.
So like I think, I don't know if that's a fight that we can win at that point, because it's a business decision, right? It's not really a game decision.
You know,
Well, and
like no, I was gonna say like if they see it as like a fun like party game, you know, that they just play with like, you know, people after like a 9 to 5, right? Then we're just like, you know, like pretty much nothing at that point.
Yeah,
And
and I mean,
also-
it's
Oh, no,
fine.
go ahead, Sep. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that may be the case, and I think it's just kind of, but it's cool because it gives a player base that wants to play the game a different way the option to like create that community, like the community that already exists. Like there are clearly people that don't view it as like a party game and play it a different way, and we have our own, you know, survivor killer rules and the way that we play interact with certain specific people. Like we've kind of adapted to the fact that maybe the devs view it as more of a party game.
Yeah, I think so too. I think a big thing too, like new player retention, I think comes down to just how the game operates. Like one of my newer friends, I tried to get into the game, they got face camped like twice at low level, because I assume like
Mhm.
low level killers don't understand the whole principle behind that, or the quote unquote honor code or Tofu talked about. And they like, she didn't really feel inclined to play anymore, because she's like, well, I just get
Yes.
camped.
Yes,
So like,
yep.
yeah, I think it's not, unfortunately, it's not our job to make the game fun. That's the devs.
Correct. I
That's been my
feel
biggest argument forever.
I agree with you 100%, and I feel like it's pretty obvious they want to bring in new players with all their various licensing content that they've put out. It's pretty clear, but the retention piece, I think a lot of it comes down to proper feedback amongst the community and realistically having a clean game, which that's their biggest problem, is the
Mhm.
clean game in the engine.
Not only that, but also having the right discussions. Like, for instance, you go onto the forums, you go onto like the Discord or whatever, and the only discussion you're gonna get is, "Oh my God, no it," or "Oh my God, DS, Deathslinger,
Yeah.
Survivor Friends 4-man Toxic Key Squad." I don't know, just
Fan comms.
exactly. Like
The
you go to the
Discord is
forums
cheating.
and you're just
I
not
actually
gonna
talk
get.
about this. I actually mentioned this in tomorrow's video that Yannick made the best response I've seen a dev make in a very long time. He responded to all of the feedback regarding to the twins and what they were looking at, and the concerns that people brought up, and he acknowledged those and told everybody, well, this is what we can do, this is what we're going to do later, and this is what we're looking at. And I think that's all anybody really asks for in regards to feedback from the devs, to be like, okay, we hear what you're saying. Here's what we can do about it. Just so you know, there's, it's not going to be perfect, but here it is. And I think that kind of falls in line with what we're talking about here.
And that
Yeah,
does actually lead up to our next topic, which is the PTB. Although, if we do want to talk about any of the other powers that we think are good for the game and why, we can also go over that before we move on to that.
I think I'm good with powers, personally.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I'm good to move
Yeah,
on.
I'm good.
Okay, so I guess this brings us up to our next topic, which is the PTB. So obviously, the PTB is exactly the direction the game's gonna be heading in, because this is the next update, and we should probably look at the kind of perks that we're gonna be getting, the map updates, the new power. So it gives us a good glimpse as to what to expect in the future, because every update does that in some form or way. So for instance, my big prediction was that they're going to add in another generator related perk, and the reason why I thought this was in this mid chapter that we just got not too long ago, they did a mechanical change to Surge where it would apply to generators that are already regressing. And I thought, well, that's strange because that only affects Surge, so technically that is a change to Surge itself, which meant that one of two things were going to happen in this next update for the chapter release. Either they were going to make another perk that would automatically cause regression amongst generators or immediate progress loss, or they were going to make a perk that made multiple generators regress. And that was my big prediction. And, well, lo and behold, the chapter PTB comes in, and we see the perk Oppression. So, the updates give us a good idea of what to expect in the future because the devs like to reuse ideas. It makes it easy to make more things, more content, and it makes it easier to know what they should look at next. So, it gives us a good look of the direction of the game. So, when it comes to the PTB, how do we all feel about the map changes? How do we feel about the new power? And how do we feel about the perks?
Dead zones.
Dead
Breakable
zones.
walls.
Yeah, it's
Breakable
kind of a
walls.
really
Yeah, pretty
great
much.
game.
Sticky tiles.
I mean, the problem I have with the new Autohaven is legit the same thing I have with like Running Star. It's just like they turn a good loop into breakable wall.
Exactly.
W.
And I talked about that nerf on that one building that I liked on Resting Place, right?
Mhm.
I like that was I was just like, why did you make a pretty fair and balanced loop into a breakable wall, and now it's just dead after a killer goes through it once.
Like
Someone
even
runs
things
to
that
it, you break it, and then that's that.
yeah, basically. I mean, like, and they make breakable walls like that like windows that aren't like no one complained about that. Like I don't think I've heard killer mains going, oh, this is just it's like it's a good loop. That's what it should be. And then they had
And
a
then on
breakable
the
wall
fl-
and it's just broken.
And on the flip side, they make the infinites that the killer has to break walls through. And that's not a fun thing either.
It's just unfun for both sides, honestly, to have breakable walls.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if you don't see a survivor perk in the near future where kind of like any means where you can actually put the wall back together over a series of
That would be
time.
interesting.
Oh yeah, I think that's what they should have been in the beginning. Like I don't think killers
Yeah.
should have to break them. I think survivors should
No.
have to put them up or something like
I
that.
think it should be optional for survivors too.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they should
exactly. You
make
don't
it
have
both
to.
sides. And you know what? A lot of players for a while have been complaining that there's not enough other objectives for survivors to do.
Exactly.
Let us mess with walls.
Yeah, like
make it
each
easy
time you
for
rebuild
killers to
it,
break them.
like what if you could rebuild it like let's say like 4 times, but each time you rebuild it, it's faster for the killer to break.
Exactly.
It's
Oh, that'd be
weaker
cool.
each time. Yeah, like and we just thought of that in like what 0 seconds. So like
Yeah.
like
And like the other thing that I would really like is that, more ways to play around the walls. So right now I feel like walls are just simply they're drop pallets that you can't vault over as a survivor, and they're just like in the way. They're right there. And I feel like one thing that would be really cool is just, some kind of like setup that both killers and survivors can do. So like as a killer you can kind of like trap it by like, having a progress bar that remains. So like think of it like a generator. You do a generator, you do a certain amount of progress, you get off, it keeps that progress, right? As a killer, you could like break a wall to a certain point and use that as a trap later on. Then a survivor could see that and go, "Oh wait, the progress on this is actually pretty low," and you know what? Maybe they can repair it a little bit. And it makes it more interesting because it's something that both sides would have to check on, and it makes it more dynamic. It's suddenly not just, "Oh,
Gen.
yeah.
exactly."
That might be a little complicated to implement, but another alternative would be instead of a full wall, make it a vault, right?
Yeah.
And the survivors can go through the vault, and then the killer has to break the thing to chase them effectively. They can either vault it or break it, and the trade-off for that would be that it would be faster to break than a pallet or the breakable walls we have now. So the chase isn't really lost, and the survivor can has this decision: do I want to take this vault and have the killer be closer still, or do I want to avoid it and do something else? There's a possibility there.
There's a way to have
Yeah.
more to do.
Exactly. And like I just with the breakable walls even being up in the first place and you have to break it just to move on, like, if you get dead dog or something, there's nothing like that's more annoying as a killer than like someone immediately running to main building and you have to break 4 or 5 different breakable walls, and then you just basically lose a gen, and you may not have even gotten a hit on them yet. And then you run into the issue, like I literally had this happen last night where I'm running to someone, I see 2 people on a gen and I can make it to them, but then lo and behold, there's a breakable wall, and by the time I break the wall, I could have had them if that was just like a pallet that was up or something, Like
Yeah.
if like I use a gen for free because I have to break some dumb random wall that shouldn't be
Or
there in the first place, and that was
or
very irritating.
or on the flip side, you start in that building and you have to decide if you're going to go hunt survivors or break all of the walls in the building.
Exactly.
I don't even want
Yes.
to talk about how like I've been on Dead Dog and even with Brutal Strength, I break every single thing. I'm talking about the one at the top, right? The one
Mhm.
at the 2 at the top, and then you go to the bottom and I break both of those, right?
Yes.
And legit, I've lost 2 generators by just doing that.
Yeah.
You have
I
to
mean-
wonder if one thing they were thinking about, like, you remember how they were talking about the early game slowdown? Do you reckon that perhaps they already had breakable walls in mind when they were talking about that, and then they actually intended to implement them on all maps first and then have the early game slowdown?
From my understanding, part of the reason that they put the breakable walls in is they were already in the game's design since the inception of DBD.
Really?
From what I've heard, or at least for a very long time, it was something they had in the game that they could do. They just never implemented it. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes sense because, oh, well, we have this thing that we, could solve some of these issues as a band-aid fix. Let's try it out.
I mean, there's got to be 100 more things like that though in the back burner they have. Like I doubt
for
this is
sure.
the only thing. Yeah.
Probably entire powers while we're at it as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they wouldn't be a good company if they didn't have stuff on the shelf to try out.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Going to like the new the PTB, like the perks, I think that like oppression by itself, like it looks really scary, right? It has this placebo effect, like it wouldn't like rival Rune Undying, but it could be like used as an alternative. It could be really strong, but like the thing about it is that kind of like it's not that great.
Well, I already know what I'm going to be running when Oppression drops. Is I'm going to be using Oppression, Trails of Torment, Surveillance, and then Tinkerer. That'll just be like my build just to screw around with, or like
Yeah,
Mindbreaker instead, Tinkerer.
Because like I get where the fear comes from, where you hear like 3 other random generators begin regressing, right? And yeah, if you have one like sort of something in like killer kicks it or like, and then your generator starts regressing, you just say you're doing something else. I think when people hear regression, they think of like ruin, like ruin regression.
And they kind of
like
forget about the
pop.
fact that it won't
Yeah.
always reapply like Ruin does.
Yeah, but the thing about oppression is that the default, like when you like let's say a generator is 99, you kick it, it takes 5 minutes to regress fully. Like the default regression and like for just base kicking a gen is legit so bad.
Yeah, I know it's not really much. That's why, like, I think a lot of the perks on PTB right now, like, I was hearing about that pallet stun thing. When they picked up, like, on paper they may sound scary, but I think in reality, when I went and tested it, they weren't that bad. It's like not really like a.
Yeah, like I think
No.
even all the killer perks and all the survivor perks, they're niche. They have like their like meme uses, which I like, and they're not downright broken.
Oh,
I
dude,
feel
the
like
new looting perk is awesome. Like the tokens, that is the
yeah,
funnest perk I've ever used.
that's cool. I do feel though, overall, a lot of the perks, like every once in a while, every maybe like 9 killer perks you get, like one of them is okay by itself. I feel like for the longest time, a lot of the perks have been pretty niche or combo piece. They haven't really been like amazing by themselves. And, like,
Yeah, every
maybe
once
I'm
in a
being
while.
every once in a while one like okay,
We got,
Undying for
like-
Blight, but it's a combo piece. You got Infectious Fright and Corrupt with Plague, which was probably like the best DLC for killer perks maybe in a
Yeah.
while.
Thrilling Tremors with Ghostface.
Yeah, that's true as well.
And we got
I-
like Trails of Torment with Pyramid Head. So yeah, we get like a few perks. And then
decent
but
one.
for every like plague we get like like a Legion or like
Or a
Right.
Huntress.
Question
yeah.
is that okay, or is like, do you think the game could, use more better standalone perks? Like, is it possible?
I would honestly, because most killers in DVD have a theme, right? Like their perks revolve around a
Mhm.
theme.
Yep.
It's been getting less and less that way, which is good because just because they have a theme doesn't mean they're good.
Right.
Like, I do think that like some killers should come with standalone perks that are good by themselves, and even better when you pair them together with other killers' standalone perks. But I think we should still have some perks like Mad Grit and stuff like that. Just have fun.
I think
Yeah,
there's
niche,
some
sure.
perks. I think there's some perks that should be, just for fun, and you put them with other perks and make it even more of an experience. But I
Yeah,
do
like a
think that
really
we do
niche
need
build,
some
like
good.
Rancor, Nemesis, or something like that. But or like like Life, like Dance with Me, something like that.
Yeah, but on the flip side, there should also be those standalone perks because, you see, the thing about perks that pair well with other perks though is that most perks that you get are locked behind DLC that you have to pay for or unlock,
Mhm.
depending on if it's licensed or not. And
Or
the
Pray
thing
the
about
Shrine's
it,
Lucky.
yeah, exactly. And the thing about it is that having perks that synergize with each other is great, but then you end up realizing that there's actually so much that you have to unlock to where it's like, is it worth going out of your way to get that combo, or would you rather just have that standalone? And for that, I feel like there should be a healthy mixture where it's like, let's say every chapter you get like 2 perks that are actually pretty good synergy perks with other perks that are already in the game, but then you get that one perk that people can really look at and be like, wow, actually I want to use that because that sounds pretty good.
Like in a funny way.
Yeah.
I
That's
I
actually a
agree.
great point.
Like, do we think this game could house any more exhaustion perks, or would it just be too much for survivors?
Well, I don't know what
Too
else they could
much.
make.
Well, right, that's part of the problem too.
The only thing I can think of is just, the one, like, the only survivor I think this would work on is David, and, like, it would basically be you just punch a killer in the face, but the thing here is that okay to just walk up to a killer and punch him in the face? I feel like
Probably
it's probably not. Yeah.
Probably not. No. Like I think too,
I
it's
mean-
like power budgeting is a huge thing, right? Like they can't make every perk on every survivor / killer really good.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
And
because like then it becomes too high of a demand for that one thing. And I think like just from my perception of just looking around, I think everyone's looking for the next Medal of Man. Everyone's looking for the next like Undying. Like I don't think they're gonna do that ever again. Like I don't think there's ever gonna be like a absolutely busted standalone perk anymore, just from what I've seen. But like there might be just out of chance.
Yeah.
But
I
I
don't
don't
think
think they're gonna take that direction anymore.
I don't
yeah.
think they will from what they've said. It's like they don't like that, there's the meta that there are from the older perks, and
Yeah.
I don't see them. I don't know how they didn't see Undying was gonna become super meta, but
I have a feeling that when it came to Undying, they just kind of looked at it as a way where it would be like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. I like this effect. And then, another dev might have looked at it and they're like, oh yeah, I like that idea too. And then it probably got added because it just sounds really cool, which it does. Admittedly, it does sound cool, and it opens up some new possibilities that other people may not be as afraid to run anymore. Like, let's say, Third Seal, where that's a perk that a lot of people have said time and time again, where it's like, yeah, it's good, but is it good enough to be a hex totem due to the fact that it can go away really fast? And like, I feel like they might have also been looking out for those kind of perks, but then I feel like they didn't pay enough attention to the fact that Ruin would come back and bite them.
Yeah. See, like going like the person that said like like a certain type of perk, right? Like exhaustion. I feel like that some perks don't need to be exhaustion, and they could just be weaker than what they are right now. Like two examples I usually think of when I think of
Head
perks
on,
that
probably.
well is head on and balance landing. Both of those don't need to be exhaustion, but they don't need to be as strong as they are right now. You know what I mean?
So you're thinking like a cooldown.
Yeah, like a cool I mean balance landing. I think the old balance landing was like what 60 seconds. And
Old
I think
bounce
you could
landing
just
was
make
still an
it.
exhaustion perk.
Yeah, I know. But I'm saying you could like make balance landing like you make balance landing, for example, like a cooldown perk, but it can only proc every like 90 seconds or something.
Or
like-
yeah, like I actually would be in favor of balance because poor balance lady, right? I mean, like
Right? No. Remember how back in the day how you could balance landing, but then you still give the passive where you wouldn't get like slowed when you jumped off of a
Dagger?
building.
honestly, that's the part that kind of made it broken. That
Yeah.
that being said, I would be in favor of if you just if you want to like kind of like switch it up right and remove the sprint, but had a
Mhm.
cooldown where you had like a reduced like landing, like that.
Yeah, like you can only do it like every,
Hell
something.
yeah, I'd be
So-
100%.
Yeah, exactly. Or you can do more
Definitely
interesting
perk.
perks, just like quick and quiet, balance landing, head on. Those could be like cooldown though. Like some of them don't need to be exhaustion. Is what I'm saying. You can do really interesting stuff and not make them strong. You can have a cool idea without making it exhaustion.
Of course. And I think that's like a direction that you take the perks. Things that are like, fun, they're interactive, but they're not made with the idea of this must be powerful. It should open up new ideas in how you can play the game. Which is where, I'm not really a fan of the current meta where it's like, oh, you slap on a bunch of slowdowns, or oh, you slap on a bunch of second chances, because you're not really doing something very unique. You're kind of going for the power play. Now, that's not to say that it's not justified, because I do get that some survivors will run their second chance perks because it's kind of warranted. Like, you run DS Stop Tunneling or Unbreakable to try and mitigate slugging a bit.
Or bar times they can be gritty,
Well,
I mean,
you're never going to stop the borrowed time farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but borrowed time I think is a necessity to help people get from getting camped. That's
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
legit. I think the game would be so bad without borrowed time.
yeah, there's no way.
Wholeheartedly agree.
So
I-
here's an interesting question in that line of thinking is that there are all of these perks that the devs have made to solve problems. Undying, one of them, borrowed time, the other decisive strike, the other. Do you guys think it's possible that they can make new killers and new perks without having to worry about, or without trying to fix their past mistakes, rather than being able to make something that works outright. Or
I think definitely.
be
I think
fair,
that they
right?
can.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll let you after. I was just gonna say, I think that they can definitely like patch up their mistakes in the past, like some of the stuff they're doing with the older maps, like going back to the maps, sort of like Thompson House. They definitely fixed that in their past, and they fixed leader in a sense where like Prove Thyself was sort of never looked at, and they swapped some things in. So I think they can like patch up their past while also moving forward, like they can make things that aren't trying to fix problems, and also fixing the because like for example, they could release a killer that isn't good like now, but once they fix their past, they'll be like perfect. I think it's both.
Yeah, and I think there aren't too many specific things that are like issues in the past. Tunneling, camping, gen speed, etc. That's about it.
So I do think
Yeah.
there is a way where they could address some of these older problems, and then they can make a new perk or a new idea that doesn't actually have to solve an existing problem. It's more so the fact that I feel like they've kind of rallied behind the idea that they are fixing a lot of problems in the game using perks, where we could end up seeing some base game changes instead. However, let's just imagine that we get to the point where they fix it. I think it's very well possible that they could actually make a chapter with perks that are just simply they're there just to offer a new style without it fixing a problem like every other perk has.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the one thing I was just gonna say earlier is that like we said earlier, D-Strike, like, honestly wasn't originally an anti-tonal perk, right? Like you didn't even have to be hooked to use
No,
it.
it was literally just the most free second chance ever.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
down someone, you pick them up, they can instantly hit the DS,
No
no
condition.
hesitation.
Yeah,
Yep.
no
It's
condition.
like an anti-pressure snowball perk, really.
It was like an
Yeah.
anti-momentum back then.
Yeah.
Which
To be
nowadays it
fair,
still
though,
resembles that, but not as
yeah.
badly.
I think when they rework perks, they do pretty well when they fix like their past. I mean, a great example is Tinker. Old Tinker was so toxic.
Oh my god.
I'm so like that's like a
Instant-
prime
instant
example if you want to
hatchets,
say they fixed their
hatchets,
past.
right? Like instant random hatchets and
Yeah, hillbilly with like tuning guide, like
Yeah, imagine.
even though original old, I don't think I ever saw an actual good hillbilly run it, because they were all the ones that ran it always ran like old ruin and no end, but holy
yeah,
shit.
you know what I'm talking.
It
Yeah,
ran it,
like Leatherface with like
instantly.
Instasaw with Tinker. Like I think that's a prime example of their past that they fixed.
Holy shit, that was awful.
Dude, imagine speed
Yeah.
out on some of the newer killers like Blight and Oni with old Tinkerer. Imagine.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
Just go to hyper speed and just bounce off a rock and go to space.
So then that ends up coming to the be careful what you wish for, because Undying was the solution to Hex, or was a long time call for a call to totems and the Hex problem. So now I agree that Undying is kind of causing a little bit of a problem. So where's that balance?
Undying.
I just think the balance is Undying isn't that strong against like a Swift or people in comms, but it's oppressive against.
I don't know,
Solo
Sip. We've
queue.
lost a lot of times just because we can't find like the last totem because it's like hidden in,
Yeah.
nowhere land.
I feel like the thing about
Yeah.
Undying is that it's stronger against solos. Like, this is something we cannot deny. Like, it's basically one of those kind of perks where like it makes the solo experience miserable, whereas with the Survivor Friends, it's like it's a little bit more manageable, although still
annoying
very
still.
powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
I
No,
just-
For sure.
I think they just made Undying too good. Like, I don't know. There's
I
like
think-
really no downside to it.
Right.
well,
Not
the
only
downside is using 2 perks.
right, and then the other, but it like also it respawns, and you can see the aura around it. Like,
Yeah, the aura. Like, why did
Again, I think it's going back to the whole Freddy discussion where Undying, like by itself, if it just gave you your perk back, it's good. But then they added like weird passives to it.
I think it's
They
because they
give it
wanted the
more
tiers to do
Undying-
something.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's so funny because as a Survivor player, I don't even really mind it anymore because it's like the killer plays. It's like you kind of reveal your hand to an extent as a killer. It's like, okay, they got Ruin and Dying. I know how they're going to play. And like, I know 2 of their perks. Like getting that knowledge as a Survivor that early on is kind of
huge.
an advantage against
Yeah, really.
killers. I mean, it really is. But I do think, like everyone kind of has said, I think the major problem for me is when I am solo queuing and I'm tasked to kind of find all the totems and everyone's crouching in
Yeah,
the corners.
exactly.
And
You
as soon
can't
as they hear
exactly
the killer's
information
terror
out.
radius, their gen starts regressing. That's the problem. But are you going to get away from that? I think you're going
Yeah.
to have a little bit of that regardless, because solo queue is always going to be at the bottom or top of the totem pole, depending on your perspective.
Totally, but it's starting to feel like, you know how like the whole reason they changed original Ruin in general, right, was because it was very non-new player friendly.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Very
Could you imagine
common.
old Ruin and like this Undying? Holy.
No,
But
yeah,
I think
that is
it's
true.
actually starting to have the same effect, though. To be honest with
Yeah.
you, right? Like
No.
It is.
these new
Sounds like a
survivors,
good time.
the totem, they start freaking the fuck out now, and you're like, oh my god, can you please do the gen? But no, these idiots are like running around the map, like
Yeah.
Ruin
I-
Undying is great, but I see. I personally run Ruin Undying because I can't speak for it, you know. But I've run it like once on Legion because just to test it, and like legit, like some like to get them off generators, it's kind of Legion's things what it excels at. So like it was really strong then, but even then, some people just power through them because I'm not near them.
Yeah. That'll
I
happen.
I think Rune Undying just in general is just too easy for killers. It gives them too much.
Yeah, it gives them too much for nothing. Like they
Yeah.
can just walk up to you when you're both on a generator, and then boom, it just instantly starts
Yeah, it's a
progressing.
very passive build. It doesn't require like a way to play. It's just kind of just do your own thing, and it does.
If it was
itself.
interactive, like Thrilling or Dead Man Switch, I'd kind of be okay with it. But the fact that it's just like the killer gets this such a huge advantage for existing. Like literally the second they let it in
Yes,
the game, they get an advantage.
exactly.
And
Like-
see, I thought a good workaround for it instead, because I know some people say, well, maybe if it only bounced once with Undying. But what I think it should do is if you cleanse one of the totems, it should light up either all the totems on the map or nearby totems to you for a certain period of time, as kind of like a downside to the perk, you know, so it doesn't
Yeah,
get as
totally.
much value.
Yeah, I
Actually,
agree
I
with
really
that.
agree. Because, like, honestly, if I was to use Ruin Undying, honestly, like the way you could easily get map pressure on is just slug somebody. You down somebody, you just slug them.
Honestly, though,
Go off, right? That's literally all you have to do to get like a bunch of runs.
like legit, if you have Run Undying and you get two hooks out of it, that's legit worth. Like
yes,
you can
people
blow.
are
You can,
really off gens.
yeah, exactly. You can like tinker with the totems. I don't care. After
Ruin Undying is
'cause,
the
like,
ultimate slugging perk, pretty
legit,
much.
it feels so hard.
So hard. Like
Yeah.
you slug one or two people, you have like already like, you know,
Or just even killing one survivor. When there's three, I just feel like a weight, like a giant weight's been lifted on my shoulder. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Because that's one person that has to go first. So one person gets down, the other has to get off the gen to go and hook, and then what if you find the other person on the gen? It's just like a cycle of you're constantly having gens regress now just for simply like survivors having to save someone off the hook. Or, you know, we've literally let people die on hook before at the end game if there's only like 2 or 3 people left, just because it's like, oh, if we go across map to save, game over because the gens is
Mhm.
gone.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. I don't think anyone should ever be put in that situation.
Yes, I think it's ridiculous that that's has to be a thing because
Well-
of just
Just bring Repressed Alliance.
Once every 80 seconds, baby.
Simply just save your teammate.
Simply. No, did we kind of get off topic a little bit of like the PTB? Well, I
No,
guess
we
new
were
perks.
we were
Okay, yeah.
This
yeah,
is
yeah,
still like, you know, this is still
Yeah.
about the PTB where it's like the PTBs will tell you the direction the game's going in, which
We're talking
about-
about the game's health right now and what the future, so it's
And how-
technically on topic.
how about that new killer, by the way, which personally, before we get started on that, I'm personally really excited about this killer because a while ago I actually proposed a killer idea to one of the community managers, and this power is very similar to what I brought up. So my idea was that my killer was based on the idea of a headless horseman that could throw his head and use that as, like, you know, a way to be in 2 areas at once, travel between the two, and he would basically be able to track and hunt down survivors with his head. And essentially create a killer that's very similar in the sense that you have 2 parts of the killer. One of them can track, one of them chases, and then, you know, the other one is just, you know, they're in a certain position. Like, it creates this idea that you have to be like a tag team in a way to actually win over the survivors. And I find their power to be very interesting because it's very similar to what I actually suggested, although still different because, you know, the difference here is that my killer idea could throw his head on walls and it could ricochet out the walls in order to harm survivors. So there is a difference there, but the general premise of being in 2 spots at once is what's very similar. So to me, this killer is very exciting. So I would like to hear what you guys think about the new killer.
I think he's very, yeah, they're very, very unique. But I think people have been a little bit too harsh, too quick on calling it weak, because I can see it's going to take a lot of time to create strategy per map on how to use this killer. Where
Oh
you place
yeah.
like where you place like the bigger portion, where you place the small one. I think Victor is the name of it, yeah. Where you place
Victor.
Victor, where you place the big one. Like I think there's a lot more strategy to it than what people are giving it credit for.
Yeah, like one thing
I've
I've
seen some pretty
noticed,
good strategies already.
like one thing I've noticed is that there's just a lot that you can do. Like you can body block with Charlotte, chase down with Victor to shut down like a loop. You could use Victor as tracking. You could take someone out of the match by making it like, you know, if they're trying to take the okay, I probably shouldn't call him that. So let's just say they take Victor hostage, and you know now it's a 3v1. Although maybe that's like the least fun of your strategies there, but still. Another thing you could do is injure everybody and then use Victor as a slugging tool. And I know that when I use this on the PTB, it turns out that the Twins is a slugging monster. Like once you get your slugs going, they can't really recover if they're all injured because you just down all of them back to back. And
I think personally, like the new killer is cool, but they're kind of like really inconsistent. They're either like a monster or they're just useless.
of course, and
Yeah.
I do think
Because
that
like the way that Victor works is that like Victor could like like you said, he could just down everyone, you know, like literally. Or you could just run Victor around a tire and doesn't do anything.
yeah, true.
Like
He's
I know that
easily
killer
abusable.
he's super inconsistent of a killer. I can't say if they're good or bad just for simply
So what
I
other
haven't seen
killer
them
does
enough.
that remind you of? Because the first time I
Tag.
started playing with her, exactly, the first time I started playing with her or them was I immediately saw the hag and her phantasm, and there are instances where I like to have the phantasm up, and you can push a survivor into it, teleport, and then smack them. But in the case of the twins, you can, like you were saying, plant one of them in a certain place and then ambush the survivor from another angle, go in and swap off, and then cut them off. There's a lot of tactical stuff that can happen with the twins, and I'm really, really excited about it because I think that's where people are going to have to learn how to play her is tactically. But that completely depends on if this being able to switch between Victor and Charlotte is even a little bit quicker. If it's a little bit quicker, then that's going to be really, really fun.
Yeah, like I think if they reduce that by like 1 second, that would be perfect. Because right now it's like 3 seconds. So like if they made it 2 seconds instead, that would be totally fine. Or even like 2.25 or something like that. But
Well, even less, because I mean the hag sets a trap in about 2 seconds, and then the teleport lasts about 1. So the time between using her power, starting to set the trap, it gets triggered, and then she teleports instantly, right, is about 3 to 4 seconds. So being able to swap between Charlotte and Victor within that period of time equates that. And so shortening it by 2 seconds, that might be enough.
yeah, and like the thing that's like for me this is more so exciting because this killer is very close to the idea that I want in this game, and so I feel like if they do the right changes, I feel like the twins will end up becoming my new main killer because like they just have like the most interesting power in a really long time.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it's really unique.
I
but
don't
weak.
feel like they're weak. Like I don't know. I feel like
You don't?
I don't personally. I agree with that. I don't think they're weak.
I don't. From watching people that have half a brain and playing killer, I think they are a big snowball killer. I think it's basically like a Billy with IF to me. If they are together and like you have like 3 different survivors in one corner, and like you said, if they're injured, like because you go against teams all the time that sometimes just slam gens and never heal. I think it's like a big like snowball type of killers, like you said, slugging machine. Like I think they will do fine.
And I think one
Yeah.
thing that people need to realize about this killer is that the perks that work on them is very different than any other killer because Victor, he can't use perks. Perks don't work on him. But you want to know what does remain no matter what you do as a killer? Status effects. Status effects remain no matter what you're doing. And I feel like once people piece that together, I think this killer is going to revolve around any and all perks that inflict status effects, like mangled, blindness. Yeah, like I think status effects perks are going to be where people are going to start realizing that that's what they have to run on them. And when they figure out the perks that work well on the twins, I think that'll make them a lot better. But on top of that, though, I do think there is one thing I'm a little bit concerned about, though, which has to do with like the playstyle of the killers. So, because you can't really call one twin to your location and vice versa,
Yeah.
one thing I'm kind of concerned about is if Victor goes far away from Charlotte, I feel like your only real option is going to be, hey, I'm going to slug a bunch of people. And I had this happen to me on the PTV actually, where because Charlotte was so far away, I felt like, the only thing that made sense to me was just to slug. And I actually had a bunch of games where I unintentionally bled someone out because I felt like switching to Charlotte would have been a waste of time.
And
Yeah,
that's
I
where the
fe-
tacticalness is going to come in. Like, it's going to be, there's going to be multiple playstyles with this, and not just the one that's clearly obvious.
Yeah.
Keeping the two twins together is probably going to be ideal. So being able to switch between them, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think it is kind of a very new, unique killer, and I like that. But I do feel like she has some huge glaring weaknesses because outside of Victor being kind of fast, I mean, she has no mobility. So if you're full health, you get hit by Victor, he latches onto you. If you run all the way from across the map from where Cheryl is, like you said, you're kind of forced to slug. You really have no other option.
But what's interesting though is if they fix the issue of like, a survivor taking Victor hostage, then I think, it can kind of make up for itself, where if there's like one person who's healthy, you can kind of like take them out of the game for a short period of time, and that can kind of make up for it. But you see, that's all about getting the right changes made though, which, you have to hope that the right changes are made.
I just think she's always going to have that issue of like the separation between the two. I think in order for her to become like an actual monster killer, like there does need to be a way for them to kind of come together easier.
I
Sorry, I don't mean to
saw-
cut off the combo, but I am actually out of time. I really need to head out now.
Hey, it's all good, man. I appreciate you stopping by,
Yeah.
HamdaN.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.
All right, have a good
Have a
one,
good night.
man.
I think a good thing I've seen mentioned with like them being separated after you select someone with Victor is like Charlotte being sped up towards Victor. Like you can get like a little speed boost or something, so she can get over to where the slug is.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think we
maybe
talked
something.
about that. Yeah.
Now, I do think though that it's also important though because I feel like when we talk about like changes that should happen to the twins, we also need to be careful about one glaring the big elephant in the room, Spirit, where a lot of people when they were newer to her, a lot of people kind of agreed, yeah, she needs something. But then I feel like we went a little bit overboard in what we thought she needed, and I think the twins is actually starting to resemble that situation a little bit, where they're a new concept, an entirely new concept at that we need to learn, and that if we're not careful about the ideas that should be in place to make them feel better to play as and against, we might have another Spirit on our hands. Now, luckily, I think no matter what, the twins is going to be a million times more interactive, but we should
Yes.
definitely be careful about that.
Yeah, I guess time will just tell.
Yeah.
Freddy also.
True, Freddy's another example where, like, a lot of people push for a rework when in reality, his power just had a different style to it. Which people call on to a little bit too late, because I think towards like the final few weeks before they announced the Freddy rework, everyone was just kind of like, wait a second, if you play Freddy this way, he's actually not too terrible. Although maybe not strong, but not terrible. So, there was that slow realization that came in way too late.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like a recurring theme. But that's really what I have to say about the twins. I'm really excited to see how this killer will play. I hope the right changes are made, and I think that after a long line of reworks and like new powers that weren't exactly the most unique or the most fun to go against, I think the twins has the potential to be one of the best additions in the game.
Yeah.
If done right.
Honestly, like it looks like a killer that even I want to play, which like not to like, oh my god, I'm only gonna play a female killer or a male killer. But I was like, I've been wanting a female character to play. Like we haven't had one in like a while now.
Yeah, last time we got was like
Plague? Like
yeah, I think it was Plague actually, yeah.
like was actually Plague, and I'm like
It's been a while.
Yeah, and I was like,
Long
oh,
time.
yeah. Like I'm excited to be able to play. Like an actual different killer that's not like, oh, kind of unique power. Like, no, this is like a totally different, like something I would have never thought of, you know? And
Mhm.
that to me is exciting and new. And I'm excited about this killer, and I think it potentially is one that I would want to main.
Yeah, same here. Like the twins, I feel like for as much as I like to play Oni, I feel like twins has the potential to actually make me not make him my main anymore.
Yeah, I plan to like immediately P3 her, so
Although I'll still play Oni a lot, but I feel like the twins is just so interesting that I can't pass up the opportunity to actually learn their power and figure out what their true potential is.
yeah, it's something different. Like,
Yeah, I totally agree. And then like for me, like I said earlier, like I don't think I've ever like really been afraid in this game in a long time. And like playing Survivor and being like terrified where Victor's gonna come from,
yeah.
like that actually felt good.
Yeah, it did. It's like, oh my god, there's a baby running at me that's gonna jump on me, you know? That's fine.
It's a new experience for sure, and I think, it also goes to show that with this new killer, I feel like they also put some thought into, like, the kind of perks that would work on them. Because there's so many different things you can do. Like, another thing is that Charlotte becomes undetectable when you switch over to Victor. So, it cuts off some perks, but you see, it makes their power less about running certain perks and more about like thinking about the strategies with all the different things their power does to like ambush people and whatnot. Like for instance, say they kick Victor, he dies, and then you reform at a generator that you position yourself nearby at. They don't know you're there because you were undetectable. Now all of a sudden you're right behind them and you just slap them or even grab them even. And it's like
Yeah.
it becomes like a really good pressure tool in that sense. So
I didn't even,
it's
yeah, I didn't even think about it like that. Like just going in your power at a John and like then be like, oh, they won't come back, and then like,
you're right there.
yeah, you grab them. That's yeah, I
Another
do.
thing that
I
I've
think this
done,
killer has a lot of potential.
another thing that I've done to bait people out of lockers is I'll actually go behind a wall and I'll like switch between the two a little bit just to get them into the idea of, oh, the moment that you leave that locker, I'm gonna go right back to Victor. And then what I'll do is after like 3 times, I'll just chase someone, hit them, and then the survivor will immediately be like, oh, you know what? They finally gave up, and then I switch over to Victor and down them. Granted, that shouldn't be how you have to deal with lockers, but like it's like one of the strategies you can do. Because everywhere where there's a locker, there's a wall to sit behind because there's never gonna be a locker that's just out in the middle of nowhere without any wall surrounding it. Or at least I would hope not. That would be terrifying. That would just be the scariest addition to the game ever.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's basically it. I really got nothing to say. That's about it.
Yeah, I feel like the twins was just something that we just immediately went over because it's just like we kind of all agree that they're super fun and that they have a unique style that has a place in the game if done correctly. Which I really have to emphasize, if done correctly. Because
Yes.
all it takes for a killer to go from fun to unfun is one change. Same thing with perks and everything.
Yeah.
Agreed. Just have to hope to see they don't do something dumb to it before release.
Yeah, because I really want a new main killer, and the twins looks like they could be that. Well, are we happy with the P2B discussion?
Yeah.
I think so.
Alright, so we do have like one more topic here for the night, and that is, well, unfortunately, Trickster wasn't really able to make it here due to personal issues that came up at the last minute. So it wouldn't feel right to talk about toxicity in the community, which is something that you really wanted to talk about tonight. So I'm gonna take like a little bit of a twist on it and go, how do we feel about the evolution in this community? Because that way we can save his topic for whenever he's around, and we can just go on about the evolution in this community. How do you feel like the community has changed? Is it for the better? Is it for the worse? Like, how do we feel about the community as it stands right now?
As
I
a DVD
think-
boomer, that's a very loaded question.
I've only been playing since like 2018. I kind of came in through the halfway point. But from what I've seen, I mean, I think it's good. I think it's positive. You're always going to have some negativity in your naysayers and your Twitter, crap storms, but I just think that's going to be everywhere. I think there's actually a lot of people, and the one thing that I kind of find unique is even if person A doesn't like to play with person B and person B is in, this other friend group, people seem to still find a way to like play with one another
Oh
and
yeah.
like and not really take themselves too seriously. Not everyone, but enough of the people where I think they're representative of the community as a whole.
Exactly, and one of the things I've actually noticed is that I feel like most of the community is actually pretty good. It's just that the ones who are like the bad apples in this case are very vocal. They're a part of the very vocal minority.
I
Yes.
agree. Honestly, in the community as a whole, I would say I've made more friends from 2018 to 2020 than 2016 and 2017 combined.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Like, right? I feel like I've just made like interactions with more people and there's nicer from the first 2 years than the 3 years going on. Yeah, it's pretty good.
I haven't been like involved in the community personally. Like I didn't start talking to people outside of like the people that introduced me to the game until this last December. And just from my short period of like actually getting to know other people, it's like I feel like Twitch has a huge involvement in like the community growing and meeting new people more than anything as well. I don't know, that like has to do with like people having more open discussions on Twitch, and like I feel like it's getting less toxic, kinda. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
No, I'd agree with that because I I don't. It's hard to explain, but like from 2016 to 2017, right? A lot of people had a lot of grudges for like nothing, basically. Like if they had one bad experience with you in game, they'd
Mhm.
like call you like a bad person. And I feel like now, like in 2020 and stuff like that, like 2019, especially in 2020, but like I feel like even if people like have heard bad things about you or like you've done things that I feel like they won't have an opinion unless they've actually like interacted with you.
Yeah, and like one thing I will actually point out is that I've like obviously I'm not gonna name names because well I feel like that's not right. But what I'm gonna go over is that like I've heard some people say, oh, so and so person is very toxic. They gave me a very negative experience, and like when I actually went to go check them out and just try and talk to them a little bit myself, or even just lurk for a while, I just kind of learned like, all right, maybe I can see where they didn't like the person as much, but like once you actually get to know some of these people, they're not bad people at all. Like they're good people who maybe are just operating on a different level from you, as in like maybe they're more enthusiastic about the game, they have more energy, or maybe they feel more strongly against certain things, and it's like you get to meet them a little bit, you get to talk to them, and you understand their side a little bit better after that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge issue that like I've seen a lot of people with DBD is like they take someone because they mortgage you or something, they're automatically a terrible person in real life. And I think people have a hard time. I know I have been guilty of this in the past too. Is I like people don't differentiate like people in game versus like how they are as a person, like just because of how they played against you on Dead by Daylight.
Of course, and I had this issue when I was really new to the game because DBD is the first multiplayer game that actually, well, the first multiplayer player versus player game that I moved on to ever. So I'm relatively new to the whole gaming scene. So at
too.
first I was like, wow, that seems really toxic. How dare they do that? But like after like learning to play after a while, it basically just I stopped caring about it. Like it's almost as if like what's the word I'm thinking of? Like you kind of just stop caring about like the things that people deem as toxic.
That, and I think for me at least, I like from actually playing killer, I saw the other sides better and I
Yep.
understood why they did what they did. And I think that's such a huge thing for DVD is to like at least either watch someone that plays killer so you can understand their reasoning, or like just understand both sides, because I feel like that's a huge issue with DVD is like people think like I think I saw Scott tweet something about this. He's like he went back and watched someone's VOD and he thought he played extremely fair, but the other side, like Karen said, too, like they thought they were playing fair, but the other side saw it as super toxic and gross. And I think a huge thing that DVD has is people just not understanding why the other side did a side. or like did what they did on their side. You know, you don't understand from their perspective.
Definitely. I think people should experience both sides.
I do too. Yeah.
And not only that, I just think that like when you're learning, because of the huge ass experience gap in this game, it just feels. I think it feels shitty sometimes when you play with people with so much more experience than you. Like I remember I started playing Billy. Like I think with Fortnite, it was becoming popular. All my friends I used to play with like started playing Fortnite, and so I was just like, all right, I'm playing Billy. I'm not playing this game. And so and then I remember starting out playing, and then there'd be games I like play against people I knew who had like at that point it was like 2K hours, right? And it felt horrible to lose to them, but I knew it felt horrible. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have experience enough to play against them, right? And back then, right, the ranking was common, to be fair, right? And I remember getting up to green ranks really easily and then hitting like a hard wall around green ranks, being like, oh my God, like what is this game? But like, and I think, and I talk about this on stream too sometimes, but like I feel like at that point you kind of is a decision where you kind of decide what kind of killer you're gonna be. Like you can at that point you can kind of decide, all right, I'm gonna gonna stack up these perks so I can get better, so I can beat these people. I'm gonna get my Moris out or whatever, and get these strong add-ons, run these eerie heads because I hate how I felt, how those players made me feel. Or you can do some introspection, be like, oh my God, I felt this way because I did not know how to counterplay what they were doing, right? And so for me around that time, I remember I played against one of my good friends, and I actually was like, I didn't know it was him either. But I was in the post game chat. I remember asking like, so what do you guys think I should have done in some of these cases? Like any suggestions? It was like, I was very like, trying to learn, right? And what I ended up doing eventually is I just like unbound my M1 and then just like forced myself to learn like just M2 Billy for a while. And it was horrible, right? Because like you just lost. I think I went like from like rank 10 to like rank 15. But then
you started picking it up.
Then you start getting better, right? And then you start feeling good. And you start learning good game sense and stuff like that. So just like I think experience matters, but I just think that, but I think there are too many things in this game that can help you close that gap with just perks and not with skill. Or with choosing certain killers like Freddy and not actually learning anything about the game. And that's a problem.
And that's why actually oh sorry, I'll let you speak, Space.
So on the topic of people playing both sides, I'm well known for not enjoying the survivor role, right? But there's this thing that humans are capable of called empathy, where people don't understand that even though I am 100% a killer main and I play survivor like once a month, that I understand the problems that survivors are going to be dealing with. Right, I understand how crappy it must feel to be stared at on a hook and not having a chance to get away. I understand, the frustration that's there, but it's not necessary for me to play the other role, in my opinion, because it's more like in my opinion, then it's other people telling me how to play this game, and that's not something that I put up with very, very lightly.
Of course, you play the game for your own fun, your enjoyment.
And it's an argument. It's a fair argument to a certain degree, right? That I should understand how to play Survivor. I should understand, the things that they go through, but it's not necessary.
Of course, I think at least being able to look at it from the other side is very important. So like when it comes to playing both roles in this game, I think it's recommended to play both roles to start understanding the problems of both sides. However, you can also notice problems just from like observation itself. Like maybe you watch someone who plays a different role, or maybe you just kind of look over your own games where it's like, oh, you know what, I can tell that a lot of people don't really want to play against this, so now I can just start to form an understanding of there's like a pattern here. I do so and so action, the survivors don't really want to play against that, or like as a survivor I do so and so action, the killer just doesn't put up with it. So there's like this thing where like if you're at least able to piece it together and put one, like you put two and two together and you're at least able to do that and understand the other side, I think that's also good. I think it's very important to at least have one of those two qualities. Either play both sides or have a good understanding of the problems on both sides.
I agree.
I agree because like when
Yep.
like Swin, for example, he doesn't play like he literally has had 54 sacrifices to his name or something over like 6,500 hours. But he has a very good understanding about killer size, and I think his perspective is usually really good, despite the fact that he doesn't have a lot of killer experience. Versus like say like Kai Zayn, who doesn't play a lot of Survivor, but he plays more Survivor than Swims play killer. But he still
Well,
has a lot of insight to the Survivor role too.
and I mean, we're kind of forgetting about like the biggest, tool to learning the other side, and that's Twitch. I'm a Survivor main who prefers to watch killers on Twitch.
That's
And I learn, and like, I think we've all have played a game and we're like, oh, we played against somebody we know or somebody that has a Twitch channel, so we go back and watch the VOD from their point of view just for fun. Like that's how you learn some of these things too. It's not necessarily playing that
Yeah.
other side, it's watching it.
and
Mhm.
seeing
I
why
watch.
they did what they did and like understanding and having their comments.
Yep.
Mhm. I watch
Totally.
Aaron for any new tech that's about to come out, so I'm ready for it when I start seeing it.
But I'm pretty sure I met Siptonic, for example. I met Sip because I played against him in the game. Like he was like a survivor in my game, and then he played so well. I was like, oh, let me go back to his VOD and see what he did.
Played well, meaning like, jumped out of a locker and probably died for a flashlight save. Smile.
Oh yeah, I know. I think that you had like a bunch of spuds, and then
Will you
like,
not give yourself credit, so
No,
the
no, no,
only
no.
good, only good survivor. I think I finally downed him after like running, like being chasing after him for like 2 gens, but the other 2 people were already dead, right? And then I immediately went across the map and murdered the Thea, like with a straight up cross map chainsaw.
It's the best feeling as a survivor.
This poor man, I felt so bad. Like this poor man, like literally carried like the end game and literally died because this boosted potato who I literally just watched crouch and just killed her immediately.
You know what I've noticed is that in like every time I've played against like good survivors, they're always the ones to die, and then like the like blendettes are always the one to
Mhm.
live.
oh
That's
yeah, 'cause
why-
the killer can't find them.
Yeah, exactly. I've noticed that like I'd rather play against 100 aggro survivors than like 100 blendettes.
I'll
Oh
be
my
honest.
God.
I'll
And
be
then they were
honest.
all the one teabagging at the gate too.
Yeah,
like,
dude,
bro,
they always.
I didn't
oh
know
my.
where you were.
I make it a point to go after immersed survivors. Like if I see a good survivor and I see that they have an immersed teammate, I'll make it a point to make the immersed survivor watch me let the good survivor go and then kill the immersed survivors. Like let's say it's like, I win, there's 2 gens left, I know where the hatch is. I will deliberately bring the other survivor to the hatch and make the immersed survivor watch them escape. It's like, hey, you remember that time where you were hiding? Yeah, no. You're not getting out anymore.
I love doing
love
that to sandbaggers.
I will do that if I can find them, but sometimes you can't.
Right.
It just feels
Yeah.
real bad.
And with
No,
that,
one thing I wanted to, sorry to cut you off. One thing I just wanted to point out, because when we were talking about like the growth of this community and how it's evolved, what I think is really cool is the fact that there's actually a community and a home for like every type of person and every type of play style. I think this game is kind of unique in that regard. And
Exactly.
like,
Yeah.
members of those communities can intermix, and it just seems to work.
Yeah.
like I remember like I was playing for like my once a month Huntress game, or like because I don't play Huntress much at all. And I remember seeing Sip's group. It was Sip, Bbekahh, Vu, and I don't remember the 4th person.
I think we had a random.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did. Yeah.
And I just
that was
remember like
recent.
I remember that match because I was doing like my one Huntress game a month because I don't play her a whole lot, and I just found it to be fun because I understood that with what the survivors were doing, like it was like, you know what, they're just screwing around, they're just trying to have fun. Like there was a lot of fun moments in that game where it's like a lot of people would kind of view the actions of that match as toxic, like oh, the constant flashlight plays, or everybody's just kind of swarming you because they're not afraid. But in reality, like I feel like once someone has looked at both sides enough, they can kind of look at that experience, and instead of thinking of it as toxic, they think, oh, you know what, everyone's just having fun. And that's it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And I remember,
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I remember I watched your VOD afterwards, and that was one of the, like, that is so rare in this community, and it's what I love. is initially I think you're like, okay, these guys are gamers, like this might be a tough match, and then it's like, well, wait a minute, they could have had the gens done like 5 minutes ago.
Mhm.
They're throwing for flashlight saves, successful or not, and this is fun. It's different. Like I wish there
Yeah.
was more of that in this game.
Exactly.
Yeah. I will never it's the biggest it's such a big confusion for me, probably bad English, but I will never understand why people are so upset over people going for flashlight saves and stuff. It's like killers are like, I'm gonna mori you guys next time because you have flashlights, or like just getting so upset over people not doing
Yeah, I
gens. And
legit never
it-
understand that.
Freedom, that pressure known to man is some
exactly.
like I remember when I was running in fact when I went through my infectious fright Billy period, when I would see a flashlight lobby, I would drop infectious fright. I'm like, nope, we're gonna pull nurses.
Mhm.
Because like I
Yeah.
want them going for saves. Like you start having people like hitting good survivors doing generators, it's like the worst. Like that's the
Mhm.
worst because then you have you chase one, you have a good chase, and then 3 gens pop. Like that, you don't want that. You want people going for saves.
Some of the most fun I have as a killer is baiting out people to get flashlight saves and then like just
Absolutely.
killing them and just screwing around with them, like rather than be like, oh well, I stuck to one person and now 3 gens are gone because they efficiently split up on gens, and it's like I want to have fun with survivors, and I don't understand how killers don't see that people having flashlights is literally free like downs for them at the end of the
Yeah,
day if you
I
know how to
absolutely
bait.
love
Right?
gamers
It's
that like click their flashlights or something, or like just try to go for flashlight saves, and just people are just like musket generators.
Because it's
Yeah.
fun. They have the mindset of, I want to have fun this game.
Yeah,
Just inexperience on some of the killers. Like,
Of course.
yeah,
it happens to be the killers that never look at a wall, pickup gets saved on 10
Mhm.
times. It's just, and they don't understand that that's at the sacrifice of gens. They don't see it like that. They're just,
They really
know?
don't. I mean, they get so, but that's the thing that's what I mean by that decision point you have around green ranks as your learning killer, right? Like, you can't like you will feel bullied. You absolutely fucking will feel bullied. And like sometimes people are actually bullying you. That's true, right?
Yeah.
But then like as you get better, they can't bully you because you will fuck them up, right? So like
Yeah.
who cares what they do?
yeah,
Like, but the people who kind of don't go through, they just like kind of start mooring people all the time or start learning Freddy or Spirit, and stuff like that, just to kind of get people that kill people more efficiently, whatever. They don't get it, and then they'll become angry as fuck when they get up to red ranks, even though they really shouldn't belong there. And it's
Mhm.
And they're just not prepared.
and
Yeah,
they're not
legit.
prepared. They don't actually know the amount of killers in red rings right now that don't know fuck all about the game, but
Yeah.
they're survivors to be fair. But like still, they literally know fuck all about game. They don't know they lose you around simple tiles, but they'll stack on a bunch of bullshit and win at the end. And you're just like, okay.
Yeah, it's like I talked about this recently. It's like there's so many killers that go and immediately say Swift is OP because they happen to go against 4 survivors who know what they're doing rather than 4 console bots, you know?
And it's
And
because of
that's
the
like
fact that, they're used to the idea that there's a lot of people in the higher ranks that shouldn't necessarily be there, even though there's no real easy way to fix it, because if you fix it, it comes at the expense of queue times, because there's not all that many actually good players. So, when it comes down to it, a lot of people are used to, like, the really weak players that don't really do too well in game, and then when they finally get someone who's, like, remotely decent, or even, like, a good group, they don't know how to deal with it because it's something totally different. It's a learning experience, and I actually had a phase like that when Oni first got nerfed, where his flick was super slow. I don't know if any of you remember that, but there was a time where his flick basically was non-existent, and I was playing him just non-stop during that time because I still found it to be fun and I still wanted to play him. And I would just get a lot of really bad survivors, and I finally ran to instant dodge for the first time, and I got my shit kicked in. But I didn't look at it as, oh, Survivor Friends OP. Instead, I looked at it as, alright, the next time I see them, what can I run? And I remember for like a week straight, I was like, alright, if I ever see a group like this again, I'm gonna run this build. And I think I came up with something that was just really bad. But at least I put the thought into it. Because, like, I was like, alright, so I'm gonna want to do something ridiculous, like, I don't know, I'm gonna do Plague with, like, Bbekahh and, just, something to make them not be able to use their exhaustion perks. And I just had, like, this whole plan in mind, even though at the end of the day I just kind of forgot about it and just never went forward with it. But the idea is that rather than to complain about it, I just thought, alright, what can I do in the future that would actually give me a better chance?
Yeah, that's part of the biggest problem I think that both sides have, I see it more primarily on killer because I play survivor, is instead of asking like how is the game imbalanced and how to fix it, it's like, well, what mistakes did you make? What could you have done better? Like, because almost all the time somebody's going to make a mistake on both sides during a game.
It's
How do you
inevitable.
clean it up?
Yeah, they're not
How do you
like
clean it up?
bots, you know. They're not just gonna be like,
No, it's people don't really reflect on their performance enough in this game. I feel like
Absolutely.
they're too
People
Yeah,
quick to
100%.
blame the
on everything
game.
else, yeah.
And so I think on the flip side of that, how much of that is due to the inexperience, you know, of a new player coming in. I think you
Probably
guys.
quite a bit.
I would say it depends on the scenario. So when it comes to like a newer player, obviously they have a lot to learn, and so there is some that is on their hands where it's like, alright, it's up for them to learn. But then there's other things that are truthfully not made very clear. Like the tutorial for this game is not very in depth, and I feel like, that's where like, I feel like the community has to be able to move forward where it's like, alright, the tutorial isn't too great, and I feel like there should be more resources. That way if anyone ever has like an issue with the game, it's just right there. Because I don't think there's enough resources for new players, honestly. So there's some things that are not made immediately clear, like, for instance, there's a time and place for every single strategy. Like, for instance, slugging. You're not really gonna do it if you don't see anybody. You slug when you see multiple people nearby, and you need that extra bit of pressure, or if like your power actively encourages it, like in the case of Oni. And there's a time and place for camping. For instance, you wouldn't want to camp someone when nobody's nearby, but say that you have like 2 or 3 survivors nearby, and you know that the gens aren't really being done. Well, why would you leave? You know everybody's there. There's a time and place for everything. And as a survivor, it's like, when do you make the decision to save, and when do you make the decision to just stay on the gen? Like, if the killer is camping, you stay on the gen, but you see, that's not really made immediately clear, because the game doesn't really dive into that a whole lot. It's not made immediately clear, and it creates scenarios that can end up being very frustrating for both sides because of the fact that these little strategies are not made clear at all. You just kind of hop into a game, it happens, and you get annoyed with it.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, Dead by Daylight is a very time management skill for both survivor and killer. You have to be able to know when to do what, you know?
Exactly. So not all of it is entirely the fault of new players either. It's just, it's just
Learning.
not very clear. But I
Yeah,
think that
no.
everyone should always have the mindset where even if there's nothing you could have done to win the game, I think it's still important to reflect on mistakes. So like, say that you're in a match where like, that no matter what, the survivors played so well, or the killer played so well, where there's legitimately nothing you could have changed in your playstyle or your gameplay at all that would have won you the game. I think it's still important to look at where you did make a mistake, because, alright, maybe it wouldn't have won you that game, but what it could do is teach you for a time where something similar happens with players that aren't as great, because admittingly, you're not going to win every game, and I think if there was a single person that could win 100% of their games, no problem whatsoever, like it's not even like a learning experience, they just simply win, then there's an inherent problem no matter what the role is.
Yeah. Should always have some type of challenge.
Exactly. So,
Or like
sometimes...
counterplay.
Exactly. So, like, sometimes it's not on the player, but I do think that having the mindset of, I can still improve from this, is still great. Obviously, there are some killers that don't really get a chance to move on from that point because of, like, how their powers are designed, but I think the mindset in general is something good to have that I think everybody should have, because if you think that you play perfectly, you won't think there's something to improve on. You'll stay there and fall behind.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the issues that the newer killers have is that they are very reliant on the perks that they run and the playstyle that they like. They're like, oh, like how many babies do you run into that actually like tunnel and camp? Unironically, because they think that's the way to play, and they don't realize how bad it is, and they never get away from like either relying on their like forage and slowdowns, and they never learn how to actually play the like killer and the mechanics and understanding and learning the time management, or like even just running a pure chase build and getting good at running tiles and stuff. Like it's just like there's so many people I run into that nowadays that are inherently bad at like the looping and like time management, but it doesn't matter because they're running force slowdowns and they just force pop hooks, like pop trades,
And the other thing that I've noticed is that, like, because I primarily play killer, I noticed this with survivors. So, like, my play style is that I try to play as nice as I can, but I have a very pressure-oriented play style where I will slug, but you see, me slugging is like a way to give you another opportunity to be chased or to win me a game. Now, I'm not going to tell you which reason I slugged you for at the end of the match, but what I will say is that I do have my reasons as to why I slug a lot in my games, and it's because, I can punish a lot of players because they all like to group up a lot, and they don't understand that by grouping up, you're giving me a reason to slug. And, they get angry at me for it, even though it's like, that was the smartest play. Like, I won't play like a dick, but I will use whatever's at my disposal to make the smartest play possible in my mind. Which, what I think is a smart play may not entirely be true either, but what
It's a
I'm more
learning
so...
experience.
Exactly. And so when it comes down to it is, I'll have my reason to slug, but it's really up to everybody to learn how they could have handled it better. Like, when someone says, wow, why did you slug us there? It's like, alright, well, I feel like, instead of getting mad at me, you should have looked at how you could have improved. For instance, like, the reason why I slugged there is because everyone was grouped up. So from that, you can kind of determine, well, you know what? If killers slug because people are grouped up, then maybe we shouldn't be like bunched together in one small area of the map that doesn't really have a whole lot to defend ourselves with. Like, if you're sitting in an area where it's just a corner of the map but no pallets, I'm sorry, I'm gonna take my chances and slug because you're literally in a dead zone. But it's all about knowing what to do and when, and also being able to learn on both sides. Because a lot of survivors will get not just survivors but killers as well. But a lot of players in general will get mad because they don't understand something correctly.
Yeah, it's pretty fair to say.
Yeah.
That being said, I'll totally understand if someone gets upset if they bleed out, because I've had that happen sometimes. They can't find their body.
Yeah, and then but there's like a difference. Like I feel bad if I accidentally bleed someone out, but then like if they're crawling to the corner of the map, it's like, okay, like let me find you or you're gonna bleed out,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're asking for it.
At that point, yeah.
But they're gonna be the ones to tell you that that was so boring, even though they're crawling the edge.
That's like, bro, crawl to a hook. I will gladly hook you, but if I'm like going around the map spending like 3 minutes trying to find you, like
That's
I'm
kind of
just
on you
gonna
there.
Stop, yeah.
But you see, like, it's also another thing where it's like, I feel like another thing that I do sometimes, which, speaking on, like, improving overall, is that sometimes I assume things. Like, for instance, I've gotten so much into the habit of people not really liking my playstyle a whole lot, to where if someone says, wow, I had fun, I immediately think, oh, they're being sarcastic, and then they're like, no, actually a fun game. And it's like, wait, what?
Yeah, I've had the same thing. I'm like, they're like, GG's, that was so much fun. I'm like, okay, dude. They're like, no, I was serious. And I was like, oh, cool.
It just goes to show
I
you
literally
how-
can't tell.
Yeah.
It just goes to show how infrequently like we hear that and see that, right?
Yeah.
When
So
they actually
conditioned.
mean it, and they were like, oh, you're not being mean? Like,
I think the thing that triggers me the most is like a smiley face. Like I've met someone that's legitimately using that, and I thought they're the most BM person. They're like, that was fun, smile. I'm like, yeah, dude, I bet.
if someone plays like a dick, I'll say GG, smile, and then leave.
But the assumptions, like, that's also another thing where I think, the community could evolve moving forward. Like, I feel like, everyone's kind of guilty of it to varying extents, where, like, we kind of assume someone has one intent, when in reality, you look at it from their perspective, and it's like, that's not actually their intention there. They might be just thinking of it in an entirely different way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's all I have to say about, like, the community evolving, like, moving forward, because, I kind of rambled on about the points that I wanted, and I don't think I gave enough of a chance for others to talk about it. So does anyone else want to bring up anything about that?
I'm good.
I don't really have anything. I feel like we nailed it.
Alright. Well, is there anything else that any of us would like to talk about while we're all just, here and just, yeah, while we're all here, I should say.
I can't think of anything.
I'm
I don't know. I enjoyed my stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is
Just
super
trying to say
fun.
anything, so.
And I'm really looking forward to, like, not only getting a chance to talk to more people, but also, I feel like the cast we had today was also, really fun as well. Like, despite the fact that we come from, like, so many different perspectives in the game, like, killer exclusive, killer player, kinda mixed on killer and survivor, but, mostly killer, or, actually people who play both roles, or, survivor players, you get the idea. Despite that, I feel like, it's still possible to have these kind of conversations about the game without literally wanting to kill each other yet.
That's
Oh,
really hard to
completely.
get it across
Yeah.
text.
Yeah. And, like,
Yeah.
one of the big reasons why I actually wanted to do this podcast is just, it's just to open up discussion, because I think there's so many ways this game could improve going forward, where I feel like if we could demonstrate that people from, like, different parts of the game can have a good conversation about the game, I think we can encourage the community to also have better discussions as well, because we can educate them on, like, the different parts of the game based off of our own experiences, which I feel like we're probably all above the 2,000 hour mark, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so. Yeah.
I think I'm like nearing 4,000.
Yeah, I'm nearing
just
like
passed
6.
when I was, like, yesterday or something.
I think I'm at 3,600 right now, almost
That's about where I'm
3,700.
I think I'm at 4.5h.
Kind
Holy
of springing
crap.
off what you said, Vampire, and kind of like my final piece. I really truly think that the only thing DVD is kind of really missing is a proper like feedback loop. I've mentioned this
Mhm.
before, and I don't know if I could have worded that differently, but I think there's a lot of stuff that the community has to offer between like people on Twitch and Twitter, and it's weird to me that you see community managers and devs that stream the game and hang out in people's chats, but it seems like some things just directly get lost underneath it all. Like just one little example is I think back when Billy was getting his major rework, like how he literally walked like he was, I don't know, some sort of crip walk when he was charging his saw. Like his animations were terrible, even more so than they are now. I
Yeah.
think even after the PTB went to live, there were devs saying that they didn't know that his movements were even messed up. Like I think that's where behavior could actually pick up the most on, is
Yeah.
using
a lot
their
of more-
managers and using their tools and coming up with a system to obtain feedback, use it, and then let us know what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind
Definitely.
of feels like talking to a brick wall whenever you tell something about the behavior.
Right, and it's like you wonder to the point, what's the point of a PTB? Just to make sure nothing burns down?
Yeah, like I feel
just-
like obviously the community wants a lot of different things, right? Like a lot of people want different things, but when someone goes, this perk doesn't work, and then they just ignore it, like you know what I mean?
Yes, it feels cheap.
Yeah, it feels bad. It just leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, but then for every one of those, right? There was like that first Billy PTP, right? That was like horrific. Like I think I've never been so depressed about the game
Oh.
as that PTB where I tried to back rev. Like I think I hit M2 3 times. I overheated, and I was
Yeah.
I thought I was gonna cry. I actually teared up because like I can't. My boy, he's dead.
Legit
like-
POV, they removed the flick.
He's dead. And so I remember being like he's unplayable, but then when the overheat first came to life, I was like, oh look, they actually fixed overheat to the point where it's a non-issue. This is great. And then they reversed and changed it down. I was like, okay, this is dumb now, but at least it's
Right.
playable. But like the first
Yeah.
was, like chef's kiss, like beautiful. Like you
Yeah.
never overheat ever.
I've never seen DBD Twitter so upset after that.
It's because Billy is really loved.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Billy,
some of my
people say the
most fun
Trapper.
chases.
Yeah, people
Mm.
say the Trapper is the poster boy, but I think Killbilly is. I've seen like
Really is like the amount
Yeah.
of like culture, right? There is around like what perks are acceptable for Billy to run. Like, are you a good Billy? Are you a Millie?
There's
Like, I
just so much behind
Yeah.
it.
Billy, there's so much you could like spend like hours talking about like the amount of feelings people have towards Billy. Like remember old school ruin Billies that was like disgusting, how dare you? And like
gross.
or, like it's the saw, how dare you? But crack Billy,
Billy. Yeah, it's like okay.
M2 only crack Billy, whatever, like it's kind of like the culture around Hillbilly is so strong. Yeah, I agree. I think he really is a poster child for DBD.
He really
I am.
is.
It's like,
And,
oh
like-
wow, nice trap, dude. And it's like no one's talking about trap.
Yeah. Hey, bro, this ain't 2016. No one cares.
Exactly. It's all about how you curve the tiles of Billy now. That's all it's all about.
Yeah, like you see somebody M2ing all game, you're like teardrop, tear goes.
It's like, oh yes, you
Nothing makes
M2
me
Billy,
happier.
yes.
Yeah.
I literally had
I
like
didn't get millied.
I had like a stream where I was just playing Survivor for like one day, and after seeing nothing but like Spirit, Pyramid Head, Doctor, Deathslinger, and Freddy, I found a Billy. And I was like, oh shit, it's a Billy! And then he started using his chainsaw, and I legitimately got so happy. And like when he like he was just actively trying to curve around pallets, and when he finally downed me, I've never been happier in my life.
Yeah, it's like I'm not even mad when I get curved on. I'm like, nice, like like I don't care. Like he's
So-
actually fun.
On a personal level, so how do you feel about a hag that knows what they're doing?
I feel like I'm
Gross.
dead.
Gross.
I mean, I think survivors with a lot of hours prefer the chase and looping, and the hag just isn't fundamentally built that way. So
Because she avoids the loop altogether or the chase.
yeah,
Like
I mean,
a
that's just-
hag kind of sets up in one area of the map, and well, maybe you
Waits
could
for you
like
to go there.
you could be more generous with like certain add-ons like dried cicada, which increases her range by like what 75%, something ridiculous like that. So like you could be more generous with certain add-ons, but for the most part, she's a very territorial killer. And now, I will say, seeing a good hag is interesting because of the fact that they had to have the knowledge of knowing where to trap, when they can actually lunge and actually hit someone with their attack. And I think it's interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, she's one of my least favorite killers to go against, but I will acknowledge the fact that it does require some kind of train of thought of knowing where to trap and to have a strategy in mind, because she's not a mechanically challenging killer, but she's a strategic killer. Although I still hate going against her, but I mean, Pyramid Head took the took like the top for like my least favorite killer to go against.
And I think on as a killer, I want survivors to be able to have fun, and I'm not as gentle as I should be sometimes, but there are
It's not your
times
job,
where there are times where
And honestly,
I've had somebody talk to me in Discord asking my opinion on what do I do if the team that they just went against is raging against them for playing Spirit or a killer that the survivor doesn't like, and it's kind of a sad thing to almost feel pressured to not play something you want to play.
I will say that it's important to realize that while there are things that are unfun, it's not the player's fault that they're playing something that's unfun. Because honestly, when Spirit first came out, she was like my favorite killer ever because I found her power to be so fun. Which, granted, I feel like that's a bad thing to say now, but back then, I had a blast. And like I think what's important to realize is that it's not your fault if you enjoy a power. It's on the devs to change it based off of the feedback they receive. But I think it's also important to realize that, people do have fun with these killers, and it's not really their fault if they play them.
No. It's not really a killer's responsibility to make sure survivors have fun either. Just
Exactly,
play
like,
the game how you want to play it, and the chips fall where they may.
absolutely. Like as much as like you want to like you can say that you should try to be nice to survivors. You really it's honestly it's up to you, right? Like ultimately you bought your game with your money. You play it how you want to play it, and if people get mad at you, you have to make the decision that it's you play the game you want and not give a shit, right? Like that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
With my build,
What-
right? People, even with how I play, people still get mad at me. They'll still be like, "Oh my god, you run nurses and whispers," and I'm like, "Okay," like
And you hit them with the okay and.
right? Like, you're terrible. You're so shit. Like, okay, bye.
Okay.
I mean, like,
Okay then.
You're
So
not
if you guys see
right?
me,
There's no way.
remember that.
Yeah. Now, like,
Hey, I may say something in the moment if I'm streaming, right? I'm like, well, this guy's kind of boring, but it's nothing
Absolutely.
personal.
yeah, like I
Like-
do that to survivors all the time.
Yeah.
Like if the Meg has sprint burst and I'm Legion, I go to use my power and they sprint burst away. I'm like, wow, this is literally just the best player to ever play the game, I
Yeah,
guess.
I will literally call survivors
I don't
bitches,
hate the
but I don't
person.
even know if like I'm just
Yeah, I
like,
don't hate the
bro.
player. I'm just
Yeah.
like, bro, this thing they did at this moment, I care about.
It's like you bitch, and it's like I
Yeah,
don't
like-
know if you're actually a bitch.
Like a Claudette that throws down every single pallet without even looking behind her. I'm like, wow, dude, this person's just so good at the game.
Yes.
Like, one thing I do is, like, I say a lot of things in the moment, but I never hate on the person. Like, what I
No.
say in the moment and what I actually reflect on later on down the line are two entirely different results. Like I can be like, wow, that match was incredibly boring. But like
Mhm.
if like that same person goes to talk to me, I'm not gonna say, wow, you're a boring person. I'm gonna be like, oh hey, good game, dude, and do you want to talk? Like I'll like talk to them about the game a little bit if they bring it up any further, because I'm not really someone who's like, wow, you're boring. Now I'm gonna call you boring if you show up. I just have in the moment things that I say.
Say
Yeah.
GG lol.
I think there's a difference between saying your playstyle is boring versus like you're boring as a person. Like I will have people come in and chat and like kind of be like cocky after like just a really boring game, like 4 BNPs, and I'm like, I mean, I'll be like, bro, that wasn't really a good game. That was kind of boring, but good luck and have fun in your future. I don't think there's an issue with like saying someone's playstyle is boring versus
Yeah, because as long as they're able to reflect on that and understand, like, why the game was played in that kind of a way, then at least there's that understanding later on. Like, you don't actually hate the person, and you're
Right.
able to reflect on that later.
100%.
Well, that's pretty much all I have to go over. Does anybody else have anything else they would like to bring up?
Negative.
no.
No, I think we're good.
Alright,
So-
awesome.
No, it was a good first one.
Yeah, no, I had a lot of fun with this one, so I guess I'll just go over to the whole outro here, which I'm going to mess up horrendously because it's not... I don't have this written down anywhere.
Oh
So-
yeah, Becca.
Hmm?
Completely unrelated, but I love your cat. So
Thank
much.
you. He was just chilling the whole stream.
So for the upcoming podcast, so the goal here is that every week I would like to do a podcast on Wednesday and Saturday. So going forward, I think the 6 guest format has actually worked out really well. So if you liked our guests today, which I believe the full list for today is Ceptz, SpaceCoconut, Zimnex, Sistakaren, Bbekahh, Siptonic, and HamdaN. If you liked hearing any of them talk and you would like to check them out, please type in !podcast and just drop them a follow, watch them, whatever you want to do. And going forward, next week we'll be selecting another group of 6 guests, and that's how we're going to do it going forward. So the next time we'll be doing this podcast will be on Wednesday. So let me see exactly what date that is. Okay, so that'll be on the 18th at 8 p.m. So I'll be setting that up over this weekend, but that'll be the next podcast. I'll be figuring out the topics from there. And with that being said, I appreciate everybody for stopping by. If anyone else wants to say anything else as well towards the end here, then that's totally fine. Which
Thank
I'll
you
give a
guys
moment.
thank you for having me, and thank you all for
Yeah, I love you
your
guys.
beautiful words and presence.
Thank
Yeah,
you
it's
for
awesome.
giving us the opportunity to come together and talk like this. It was a great idea.
Yeah, it was really fun. I had a good time for sure.
Yeah, today was good.
Yeah, this
and
is
hopefully
awesome.
it picks up so the devs hear us too.
Exactly, I'm gonna be reaching out to more people myself, and well, I can't really say who exactly I'll be reaching out to, but we will. Well, by we I mean I will be trying to reach out to more people myself. But if any of you have anyone you would recommend that you think would be interested in this, feel free to let me know, or otherwise, feel free to
Yeah.
contact me on Discord about it. But honestly, this is a blast, and I really want to do this again more often. I want to make this a twice a week occurrence because I think there's a lot of people that want to talk about this game that just sometimes simply can't because maybe they're distracted by the game that they're playing and they lose their train of thought. Whatever the reason is, I want people to be able to talk about this game and push it in the right direction. I want Dead by Daylight to be better than it is right now.
Agreed.
Yeah, honestly, this is a great opportunity for me because I don't really talk to that many streamers, so talking to 6 or 7 was great.
Exactly. And I got to meet quite a few people out of this as well, and I gotta say, it's been a very pleasant experience.
Yes, it has. Thank
Yeah.
you again.
Yeah.
And I
will-
think we actually need to make this group again at some point, because this is a group that I would actually like to have on again. I just don't know when that would be possible, but I like this lineup that we have.
Yeah.
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 That sounds good to me.
Yeah, we need to definitely.
And I still want to find a way to squeeze more people in at some point, but I know that's just, that's going to be way too
I
chaotic.
feel like there's too many.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
Well, I'm gonna dip and eat.
Yeah.
I'm starving.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
totally
No.
fair. I'm gonna go
Foodies.
ahead and end off the stream. So again, I appreciate everyone for stopping by, and
Thank you so much for letting Legion Boomer main talk.
Thank you.
we're all boomers in
Take
this
care.
game. And you too, I appreciate y'all stopping by. I'll have this uploaded on YouTube as soon as I get the VOD downloaded. Or I think I can directly upload it to YouTube, can't I?
Maybe.
I think that's an option on Twitch.
I think so.
I'll have to see, but yeah, this will be uploaded on YouTube. So again, if you're new here, we will have another podcast on Wednesday the 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern. And with that being said, I'm looking forward to the next podcast, and I hope everyone has a great night.
Same. Peace out.
You too. Bye.
Yeah. Later.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.